Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Luffy fanfics, back with the fanfiction. This is the third part of What If Godlike Luffy Ate Mythical Devil Fruit and Became the God. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. These signatures are concrete proof of whether you're against me or with me. Hodi picked a stack of signatures and made a showing of passing the papers between his fingers as his lust for killing darkened. Those who signed feared for their life. I'll execute each and every one of you personally. And lastly, the Straw Hat Pirates. Straw Hat Luffy with the 600 million bounty. I will take your head and make you an example to the humans on the surface. Now, it's time for the spring cleaning of the Old Kingdom to begin. In 3 hours this land will be reborn as the proud Fishman Island. No longer we will bow to the humans. No longer will we allow discrimination. No longer we will allow humans to live. The display then closed. XOX. In the forest you could see Ottoheim put her spear in the ground by her side and she prostrated herself on the ground. Her hands reached out and touched the ground open, showing no threat to Luffy. She cried and could not even look him in the eye. She was so ashamed of herself. Please, you can kill me, but don't take your anger out on my children or my people. It was my mistake. My emotions got the better of me, so take your anger out on me. Ottoheim said, resigned to her fate. She made a mistake and angered a true-to-life god. Remembering the prophecy, she made a bit for him to kill her and only her. There was no need for her people to die because of her. Please, Luffy-sama, please forgive my mother. She didn't mean any harm. Shuroshi implored in a gentle voice. Her baby blue eyes were fixed on him with love and worry. His eyes were still glowing as he looked down on the kneeling mermaid. He reached his hand for her head. Jinbei surged forward, however he was blocked by Zoro and Sora. You will not take another step, Jinbei. This is our captain's decision. Whatever he decides, you will not interfere, Zoro said, brandishing his shusui forward with one hand and pointing it to his neck. The moss head is right. The lady already resigned to her death. It is a bit frustrating, but I respect her wish. But I also trust our captain. He is not cruel. Believe in him. However, if you take another step, Jinbei. Sora stomped on a rock and it turned into dust. Jinbei sweat profusely with worry. He was more or less even with one of them, but if they attacked together, he would not last long, perhaps a few days if he didn't make any stupid moves, but that was beside the point. Luffy-sama, please. Shuroshi cried her heart out as the hand of death approached her mother. Even if Ottoheim was a neglectful parent, Shuroshi didn't wish for her death. Luffy's hand caressed Ottoheim's head gently and he grinned. Why would I kill you? If you know what you did was wrong, then you shouldn't worry. He smiled gently as she was forgiven. It lit an honest smile in everyone's faces as the matter was concluded. The turn from absolute fear to elation in both the princess and the queen made them fall in love again with Luffy as the roller coaster of emotions was addictive. Ottoheim jumped in his arms and sobbed silently, twitching in relief. He caressed her cheeks and leaned closer to her ear and started whispering. His conqueror, greedy and selfish side appeared for a second, and he roughly whispered in her ear, I've spared your life, and it belongs to me now. But you still must be properly punished later. He huskily said and he growled the word punishment, sending shivers of lust down her body. I will inflict the most pleasurable pain in you, so much that you'll become addicted to it. You'll become my hopeless masochist, always wanting to be punished by your master, and you'll take it like a good girl. She trembled as her body became cold. All the while the areas his body hugged her were unbelievably hot. He passed his hands on her body, warming her like a hot iron. It was addicting and orgasmic touch. She felt lost in lust as her heart imagined receiving pain and pleasure. Was I always a masochist? She asked herself as she became moist in her nether regions. I want him so badly. What is wrong with me? She grinned and a bit of saliva escaped her mouth as she had a mini orgasm from his voice and touch alone. He then separated her, leaving her behind, wanting more of his hot body on her cold, shivering one. However, eventually the sensation passed, and her body started to produce heat again and her body warmed naturally. Wait, when did my bounty raise again? It's 600 million now. He scratched his neck in embarrassment as Nami slapped his back in mock anger. Not to mention this time the photo was different. It had my hat on it, unlike last time. He put his hand on top of his head as he was lost in thought for an instant. This is no time to celebrate. Turn that happy grin off, Nami said with sharp teeth. This asshole Hodi is trying to pick a fight with us. Is he so foolish to think that he can win? Or does he have a death wish? Sora said, looking towards the sea above as she got lost in her thoughts. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Well, a battle might be entertaining to participate. Brook twirled his cane in excitement. In fact, the others were also anxious for a battle as well. No. They thought that a little exercise of their power on fodder was therapeutic. Beating them up sounds like a good idea. I don't like his condescending voice at all, Frankie said. Killing after so long might be good, Robin said, chuckling a bit darkly. Well, that man on the screen can't handle the might of Usopp-sama. Let's go beat the crap out of him already, Usopp said with false bravado. Now that this matter is closed, let's fight this Hodi guy. If it is a fight he is looking for, I'll give one he'll never forget even in the afterlife. He pissed me off," Luffy said as he punched his palm. The punch was so strong it pushed the wind on the back of his hand with extreme force, causing a temporary typhoon to their side. "Luffy, how strong have you truly become in these 2 years?" Jinbei asked in his thoughts. "I need a bit of stress relief as well," Luffy thought. Banboshi Nessen, Ryuboshi Nessen, Fukuboshi Oniasama. Shuroshi breathed those names with worry. She started stomping the ground with her giant tail. The force was enough to force a crater on the affected ground, and she continued stomping and deepening the crater behind her. Megalo. She jumped on Megalo as the shark made a sound of approval. I have to go help them," Shuroshi cried as Megalo started to swim away. However, "Wait, Princess Shuroshi." "Megalo, stop," Jinbei shouted. "Stop it. You are not allowed to go. What you are doing is foolish, my daughter." A shadow passed in front of the shark, blocking its way. It was Ottoheim as she admonished her daughter. Megalo came to a dead stop in the middle of the air. "No, I don't think the princess should go either. The people Hodi fears the most in the Ryugu kingdom is Ottoheim and Shuroshi. After all, it would be futile for him to build a kingdom of fishmen here into his ideal nation. If one can destroy his army and the other can summon sea kings to completely destroy his kingdom, holding the princes and the crown prince hostage is a way to prevent you both from doing that. No, Hodi wouldn't even think about taking the princess hostage in order to use her power for himself. No, he is too fearful of your power. He joined forces with Vander Deken because he can strike at her at any time. Hodi's way is to kill anything he disagrees with or gets in his way." Hachai said after careful consideration. Everyone had a thoughtful expression. "I've heard of this power of mine, but I've never spoken to a sea king before. I'm not sure if this power is real or not. Either way, the fear in Hodi's mind will be gnawing at him," Jinbei said. "Shark, take me to the whatever plaza. Let me kill the guy." Luffy stepped forward. "You guys take care of Shuroshi for me." "Wait, Luffy, I can't allow you and your crew to fight him. Because we are human," Chopper and Frankie replied. Oi. Usopp facepalmed at the irony. "Things get complicated if you say that," Sora said with shark teeth. "That's right, many fishmen and mermen still harbor a bit of hatred towards mankind. Let me handle this," Jinbei said. "Jinbei-san." Ottoheim looked at him in disapproval. "You'll handle this. You are even stronger than before. You have grown very strong after Ace's death. But you know what, Jinbei? One person cannot fight an army of thousands without overwhelming strength. Alone, you may be able to beat all of them eventually. But what about the princes captured? What about the population of the kingdom? Can you tell me that you alone can defeat all of them before they ravage this kingdom?" Jinbei was at a loss for words. Luffy-chin. "No, you can't say anything, huh?" Luffy put his hand on the straw hat in his head. It leaned over one of his eyes while the wind blew on his soft, silky raven hair. His one uncovered eye glared at Jinbei. It glowed tempestuously. "Let's see, by the time you take all of them down, perhaps 500, perhaps 1,000 deaths of civilians would be on your hands, Jinbei. A man cannot fight an army alone if he is protecting something. As someone who faced the same war, you should know this well. After all, how many pirates and prisoners died in Marineford? Our hand could not reach them. All of it was bigger than all of us. How many letters the Marines had to send to families whose husbands and sons died as proud Marines. There was little pride in that day. Instead of dying like heroes, they died like rabid dogs being put down swiftly. There was no heroism for those who didn't have the strength. Though Marines don't deserve to live, in my opinion." "Luffy," Nami said with her fist on her chest. Painful memories flooded Jinbei's heart. The War of the Best. It was a nightmare for all sides. It was the same in Alabasta, if you guys remember. While the Civil War there was small compared to what happened in Marineford. People still died. Vivi-chan wanted nobody hurt. She held on that idealistic dream that nobody needed to die, remember? Yes, only Frankie and Brook were not there even if they had been told about it. All of the others experienced it first. HRM. Even with all our strengths, there were people we could not reach. People that died in the dark where we did not look. People who died in the past because of the greed of Baroque works. 7 people alone trying to stop a civil war was a crazy endeavor. We couldn't be everywhere at once and save everybody. Vivi's ideal dream was cut short, Zoro said, crossing his arms in thought. Yes, eventually, she saw the truth, but in the aftermath, I said something to her. Luffy turned his back and tilted his head slightly to look at everyone. His eyes were distant. I said as I held her, crying form, even if you couldn't protect everybody. Your heart grasped the dream everybody so tightly that you wished and took every action possible to make it true. That drive made you work harder than anyone else, and we stopped this war with so little casualties. It's because of you and only you that the war stopped when it did. Because you've dreamt the unattainable, countless men and women will return safe to their homes. Because you've relied on others. Because you've inspired others with your foolish ideals, you can be proud. You are the princess of this kingdom. But tonight you are the hero that brought salvation to this country HRM. If it wasn't for that foolish ideal, perhaps thousands, perhaps tens of thousands would have died at the foot of the palace instead of the fewer casualties we. The 7 who participated in the conflict could only nod in agreement. This man was the future king of the pirates, and all present could see why he was ideal for the position. The overflowing charisma in his speech was off the charts. People are only that, people. We can never reach a perfect answer to all problems. All our achievements always fall short of the best outcome, because we are not and never will be perfect. There were many Marines who tried to save their comrades in arms, but they fell short. You've been a king of this land for a year if your story is to be true. And as a king, would you be willing to sacrifice 1,000 civilians for simple resentment? No, Jinbei whispered and confused. His own mind was jumbled after the speech. You alone going would end in tragedy, not to mention this is a trap. To save everyone by yourself you need overwhelming force. An example would be me going alone with Megalo. I would then drop down and I would brutally kill every fishman pirate there. This is one of the worst outcomes because it would be the most brutal and heart-rending things a person could witness. The plaza would run dry with rivers of blood after I'm done. However, the aftermath would not be pretty. The mindset of this kingdom has is this: humans are horrible. Nothing would change. Luffy said, humans are brutal creatures humans hate and despise fishmen. Ottoheim's voice cracked as she continued Luffy's speech. However, talking about this mentality cracked her voice with emotion as she teared up. What would happen if I were to kill all of Hodi's men right in front of the kingdom? You don't need me to tell you. You or I going alone are the worst possible outcomes. So let's sit down and think of a better plan. Luffy said as he sat down and crossed his legs. Luffy's right, Jinbei-san. You are probably thinking on the line that if we kill Hodi, he would only be another martyr, another fishman struck down because he rebelled against a human, right? History would only repeat itself. That's what they would believe. And down the line, another one would take his place. But you know what, Jinbei-san? We've got some great friends on this island. Sora looked at Shuroshi with a smile, then looked at Papagu and Kami and lastly Hachai. And if we don't do something, this beautiful kingdom will fall. My captain will not let that pass by. He likes this place too much, I see in his eyes. He goes to unbelievable lengths to protect what he likes and those he likes. That is a trait he will not discard. He is selfish and stubborn like that. Sora smiled as she said kindly. Jinbei looked at her with apprehension. Luffy-kun, you two are friends so you shouldn't fight. Sora-chan, you too. Robin approached with a teasing smile. HRM, I'm sorry, but I needed to tell this idiot how bad it is to go on alone. Luffy said. The pot calling the kettle black. Robin teased Luffy. Okay, I'm also dumb. I've spent minutes and minutes on a speech driving a hard point to his head, wasted everyone's time, went off topic in the middle of it and almost didn't get to the point. Gee, I'm stupid. Luffy threw his hands in the air in mock frustration. Although it was true, he was frustrated. He was out of touch with civilization. His social skills were still a bit stunted. Our captain, you were perhaps right on this point, but you were training in isolation in this past couple of years, only visiting the island of women, right? You're socially stunted, but it's nothing bad that can't be fixed. More importantly, your charisma pulled you through it all and it drove home for a lot of us. Robin said calmly as she sat beside him. Hey, Hachai, you've kept refusing to tell us who put you into this situation. But from what I've gathered, did they attack you because you sided with us? Sora asked gravely. Her question put a stop in all of the straw hats. Was it our fault? Usopp asked rhetorically. Chopper tried to hold his emotions for his friend. He was in this situation because he was friends with them. Hachai, Nami said as she ceased. Luffy stared at the injured octopus fishman. Jinbei, you are here too. You are a friend that Luffy holds in high regard. We have a reason to fight, Sora said seriously, and Jinbei's sweat rolled from his cheek. Jinbei-san, even if you are an outlaw right now, you are still my subject. You've wanted to resolve this conflict alone and conveniently forgot about my presence. Ottoheim said with a low voice. Even if you are a pirate, I am still your queen. You will follow with what I decide. Ottoheim said with authority. Jinbei, cornered, bowed, and offered an apology. Now let's come with a compromise and a solution. In fact, I have a good plan cooked up that relies on the strength of your crew as well as mine and Jinbei's. Jinbei, what about the Sun Pirates? Can they answer our call? Ottoheim asked. No, Aladdin and the others are on a mission for Big Mom. Even if they were to answer, they would arrive only in a few days. We don't have that time. I see, then here is the plan. Ottoheim gathered them around in preparation. XOX, Fishman District, 2 hours later. A lawless zone started as an orphanage. Grr, that bitch, that whore. Vander Deken walked unsteadily as he put countless more power pills on his mouth. How could I? This will not stand. The previous 6 feet man, transformed, his body reached 15 feet tall. Each of his 4 legs was muscled, his body ripping the clothes he was previously wearing. His eye turned a vibrant purple. He bulked up massively. His skin turned from brown to blood red. He walked forward to the district, Wadatsumi at his side. Vander was enveloped in a bubble to protect him from sea water. This lawless land had the population over 800,000 fishmen. How dare that whore? 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 He went on repeat as he imagined the face of Shuroshi. While clutching his wound with his massive arm, the wound was gone, healed. There were 3 punctured scars. However, the skin around it was aquamarine blue. It now even reached his face. The corruption. On this day, on this hour, there were less than half, approximately 368,031 inhabitants on the Fishman district, near the Great Arc Noah. I will not die. She is mine. 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 He continued walking as his body pumped even more strength and power inside. He kept eating the pills as he was addicted to it. Every executive in him had a stack of these. He didn't count, but there were more than hundreds of thousands inside the sacks as it was manufactured quite easily. Ho 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 ho. He kept laughing. Fishman district boasted 123,000 male adults right now, which meant the rest were only children of ages 0-18. If I die, then so does she. I will kill her even if I am dead. Nobody can have her but me. The power from the pills reached an unimaginable threshold of power and pushed beyond. The man known as Vander Deken started leaking unimaginable levels of killing intent. It blasted off and paralyzed everyone in the district. They could not move or made a peep. This was a large city, and yet the monstrous presence of Vander affected it all. He glared the underwater city. He unsheathed a rosy double axe from his back. He gripped the handle in rage and roared in pure hatred. The sound vibrations boomed across the ocean. He took a step forward. On this day, 2 events would be marked in history: the salvation of the Ryugu kingdom and the biggest genocide committed by the monster Vander Deken, who by his own hand wiped the Fishman district of life, killing hundreds of thousands of innocents and children. XOX, 1 kilometer above the Ryugu palace. 3 hours later, she opened her blurry eyes. She looked down at her body. 2 deep gashes in her abdomen leaked copious amounts of blood. She was being held by her daughter. Her memories were fuzzy, but even then she looked on towards the falling continental ship. On the deck of the country-sized ship was the man she's come to love and respect. He faced a white giant freak of nature, pure white skin and hair, blood-red eyes, purple lips, and rows of giant shark teeth. The monster was bruised and battered. It missed an arm, but it didn't care as his killing intent was felt kilometers away. The monster's laugh haunted her mind as she trembled in rage. Bleeding even more in the hands of her daughter, she could no longer fight. Not with these wounds. Then, the man she loved closed his fist, and he grasped the sun with his hand. She could not believe what she was seeing. Soon a blinding white light enveloped the Ryugu kingdom as the sun in the man's hand illuminated the seafloor. She could no longer bear to see the light, and before she closed her eyes she saw the monster rushing forward fearlessly to his demise. No, that wasn't the correct word. The monster no longer had thoughts. He was insane, off the bent. He did not have a conscience any longer, so he didn't have fears or courage anymore, only a single overwhelming drive. The blinding light reached a peak, and then all she saw was black. All around was the void. Is this death? How did it come to this? Ottoheim thought as her fuzzy head thought back on the last 5 hours. As his red hands picked his double-edged axe, his hands stretching inside of the personal bubble around him, his bloodlust waged all over the dark seafloor, and soon all inhabitants that dwelled in the district felt their hearts stop with fear. All of their muscles that were related to the movement of the body froze, unresponsive. They couldn't feel a muscle, and they almost couldn't breathe as their pores started producing more sweat. Only a lone insane man approached. The lone Yumabazu stayed by the edge of town while fearful of his captain and frozen in his tracks as he watched his captain with dread. Die, 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 die. Vander was holding an axe, swinging like a lunatic on the open streets, hitting young and old folk. The axe was sharp and could cut through even the hardest bone in one's body, and the strength of the pill-enhanced pirate known as Vander Deken was too much for a normal fishman to bear. Die, 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 die. Soon streets were filled with crimson viscous liquid in the water as he cut all of them apart and made a killing gallery of dead bodies on his wake. He sliced a man right in his eyes, separating the skull in half. Die, 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 die. He carved with violence another man with an upward slash, cutting his crotch all the way to the head. Die, die, Shuroshi. He punched another in the face, dragging and breaking the spine and the neck and caving the skull. The skull pierced the brain as it gushed blood from the gashes formed near the cheek and the forehead. Another, he bit right in the face, gulping down part of an eyeball and leaving half of the gory and bleeding eye still in the socket as the uneven wound spurted blood and filled the socket to full as it leaked. However, that wasn't the end of it when the teeth pulled a bit of the skull open, leaving the brain exposed while the organ spilled out from the body. Deken swung his axe and cleaved one of the legs of the man, leaving the poor fishman to bleed to death from the head and the leg. Ha-ha-ha-ba-ho-ba-ho-ho-ha. The genocide continued as Vander's rage and insanity reached new heights fueled by the pills consumed. Soon he opened houses as all of his victims stuck in place, and while their eyes turned to him, they couldn't even move. Even when faced with brutal death, their flight or fight instinct fizzled out because of this monster's overwhelming bloodlust. Their only bodily instinct was to freeze in face of danger as the man cut down their family, friends, and enemies indiscriminately. Die, 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 die. Quickly, most of the houses and all of the streets were empty of intelligent life, and the only buildings remaining were orphanages. However, the monster did not care. He put more and more pills in his mouth, each increasing his strength tenfold. They soothed his corrupted wound, and they were so addictive. He felt powerful. He felt he was better than anyone. He felt murderous. The drugs caused extreme insanity and dementia. Dead, dead, more. He entered the orphanages, each containing newborns to young adults, and yet he did not care about their age, how they were innocent, or how their lives had just started as he cleaved their bodies in half, as he cleaved their heads off at weird angles for his enjoyment, as he approached innocent children of 8 years of age and dropped his axe on top of their heads, as it carved their heads until the jaw or the nose. Dead, dead, more, 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 more. Picking his axe and withdrawing from their young skull produced a sickening squelch that was music to his ears. As he approached nurseries full of newborns and babies that could not even walk, he played a fun game using his massive strength. He pressed his open palms on their chests and watched it as he caved their little chests, smashing their internal organs, almost as if he were pressing a softball. It was so fun he did it again and again, either in the chest or their head, and watched as he caved their little heads, crushing their forming and soft skulls, until they were all dead. More, more, more. After a long time, the genocide finally ended. Only he and Wadatsumi remained alive. Some survivors had escaped, and he could not find them now. The insane Deken approached his subordinate, with his body full of gore and blood. Fluids belonging to ripped organs and pieces of shattered bone were all over his clothes. It wasn't washed away by the water since he was still in a bubble of air. Iyumabazu seemed in shock. The water swallowed all the blood on the district, and the blood was only seen by the light shining from the lamps in the district, as the district was not illuminated by the word tree. No, it was covered by the eternal darkness of the sea floor 10 kilometers deep. Soon the monster walked towards Noah, the promised ship. The ship who witnessed this tragedy, this full-blown genocide. He dragged the now bloody axe lazily on the floor as it produced sparks from the friction. He gazed at the ship with an insane smile. You are dead, Shuroshi, XOX. The army in service of the ministers did guerrilla warfare against the new fishermen pirates. However, their efforts were not good. The executives with the power of the pills counterattacked and wrecked their forces. Even now, embers of destruction could be seen all over the place, more notably the destruction of the factory of candies in Fisherly Hills. And now the rest of the forces were beaten. Can't we do anything against that? A soldier stood up, his body being supported by his spear. Fresh blood spurted from a gash in his forehead with a frustrated look and creased forehead from the pain. Blast, this thing doesn't go down. The minister of the right said, his body kneeling as he tended his bruises and cuts. We're helpless against a single sea beast. That thing is not normal. The minister of the left said, holding a bloody wound on his stomach. The white bear sea beast roared as it crushed rubble on its jaws. His eyes were red with rage as it had consumed a pill of power, and shortly, the soldiers looked up and surely another beast approached from the sky. There was a 20 feet tall monster riding it. His skin was pale white as was his hair. In addition, his irises were crimson as he unleashed his bloodlust on them. The sea beast stopped rampaging and looked towards the sky where the monster was. The soldiers could barely breathe as the minister of the left saw the visage of the terrible monster. Is that Hodi? The minister saw the man who started this revolt. He was completely different as he was several times stronger and taller. Hodi glared at them and ate another batch of pills like he was eating popcorn. His transformation happened after the speech, and his wound, given to him by Prince Fukuboshi, bothered him so much that he kept eating more and more of those pills until it gave him this new power. Hodi laughed. He was now in a new stage, as he was better, faster, and stronger than all of them. Besides, now it was time to show why opposing him was insanity itself. Hodi moved his hand as a water bubble surged from his pores. He frowned at the gathering of the Neptune's army and launched the bubble. Then in less than a second, the whole area exploded, dismembered bodies thrown around by it like trash as Hodi admired his new powers. Soon he went to other pockets of resistance and did the same thing. There was nothing better than seeing ants get stomped on, especially when it was him who held the foot over these insignificant traitors to his cause. Hodi told all of his executives to gather in the plaza for the show. It was almost time to execute the royal princes. The minister of the right who survived the blast cried. His tears marred his bruised and bloody face. So close, we were so close. Your dream is finally coming true with this year's reverie. What can we do? Queen Ottoheim. Please come to save this kingdom or else the princes will be dead. Please, save the crown prince. Those were his last words as he passed out. XOX. We can't get in. The entrance is blocked. A citizen cried as he punched the gate leading to the plaza. Prince Fukuboshi, a woman murmured as her tears fell. I hear pirates roaring. Let's climb up. We should be able to look in, one said as he started climbing the reef wall surrounding the plaza. The citizens all climbed the corals leading to the top. There they saw the entirety of the new fishermen pirates, all of the sea beasts, and even the kraken. All of them were menacing in appearance. Having consumed the pills, most of the beasts had red sclera showing their rage. There on the ground lay the Neptune's army along with the princes raised and chained to stakes made out of wood, defeated and ready to be executed. Ha ha, they tried to save their country and look at them now. The pirates jeered and laughed at the fallen soldiers and the royal family. A soldier of the army stood up swaying his legs due to injuries. He glared at them in rage. The pirates all looked with confusion. Hodi, the soldiers murmured, huffed between his sharp teeth. He glared at the leader sitting on a leather chair. The soldier's eyes were as if he accepted death. The soldier grasped several explosives in his hand. They were close to TNT in appearance. That soldier is trying to do something. Zio, the wavy light blue and indigo stripes fishman, noted with boredom. Haya haya. Where? Daruma, the tiny red shark, jumped. He clashed his teeth together with excitement. Oaze, heck, were the drunken slurs that weren't entirely understandable by Hayuzu's mouth as he gulped his liquor and gulped even more pills with it to dull the pain from Luffy's powerful and deadly attack. His hair turned white. His body was more muscular as he gripped his sword with a murderous drunken smile. He probably wants to blow us up with that dynamite. Gabon. I'll turn him into dry squid. Much. Ikaros gripped his squid spears with a look of terrible rage as the spears moved, as if alive. Again Hodi held his hand outward as a small bubble of water was formed in his palm. He lazily gazed at the soldier. If I can take any of them with me, before my queen arrives, I will have done my duty, the soldier said as he tried to light the fuse. And yet all he heard was screams of worry from the civilians watching. He snapped into attention. Water shot, Hodi said with a powerful voice. Hodi threw the water shot and it pierced the soldier's body, dropping the unlit explosive on the ground as the shot traveled through untold distances as it hit a mountain and then hit a house, hit another mountain and kept going at full speed until it stopped near the sea. Then it dropped like a normal water ball, affected by gravity, and the water mingled with the sea. Amazingly, it traveled the whole country, destroying everything in its path as if it were an arrow sent by a god of hatred. I thought a water shot was as strong as a normal punch, the pirate said in awe. You were rolling on the ground in pain from taking too many steroids earlier? Much, Ikaros said as he played with a pill. He glanced at the captain with worry. Hodi stood in silence. Your hair is all white and your body has completely changed too. How do you feel, Captain? Zio said, also playing with a pill. Hodi looked at his hand in wonder and pride. Perfect, Hodi replied with a very stern but surprised expression. XOX, hurry, Megalo, Ottoheim said as she gripped her trident as purple tentacles shot out of where she was gripping it, and soon the spear completely disappeared, or retracted to her hand. Only a corrupted eye remained in her palm. Soon the tentacles retracted to the eyeball, and then the eye turned into a purple substance, sinking into her arm. The trident completely disappeared. The shark cried in confidence. Fukuboshi ne-sama, Ruboshi ne-sama, Mamboshi ne-sama, please be all right, Shuroshi said with worry. Her hands in a small prayer. Don't worry, my daughter, we shall not fail. Look, there is the trap, Ottoheim said with a grin. XOX. A few minutes later both were captured, all according to the plan. Both had chains around their body as they crashed in the plaza. Hodi gloated about capturing both his targets at the same time. Jones thought it was his lucky day as the two he wanted to kill the most have fallen right in front of him. Shuroshi apologized for falling into such an obvious trap, but Ottoheim calmed her down. The acting must have felt real to everyone else now that anxiety reached a new maximum as the citizens saw their queen in chains. Their all-powerful queen, just like that. The princes who were captured and held by a stake were shocked and furious. Fukuboshi watched with regret. This was easier than expected. The only ones left are the Straw Hats, but they have no reason to come here. The Sun Pirates are away and weak, Hodi said mockingly. Soon swarms of fishmen gathered around the plaza. We don't need to fear Straw Hat Luffy any longer. Weapons-trained fishmen 500,000 strong. Hodi gloated, motioning to the outlaws that left the Fishman district earlier today. The pirates gathered smirked at the numbers as they gathered in droves to fill the plaza. Human slaves captured over the course of 2 years, 200,000 strong. Hodi motioned to the beaten-down slaves he captured. They were bruised, bloody, and slouched. However, their eyes were dangerous, as they wanted freedom by any means, and having accepted the deal with Hodi, they were promised freedom, and a few traitorous mermaids for their pleasure after all of this. Ottoheim looked at the numbers with worry and affirmation, as expected of the young god. He knew this would happen. Jinbei-san could destroy everyone here in the plaza, but by the time he'd finished, the kingdom would be in ruins. To fight an army without such repercussions, they needed another army of even greater strength or a group of army killers. Ottoheim calmly closed her eyes as she heard the roars from the outlaws. She focused on Hodi, trying to see his emotions, but she couldn't. Just like Shuroshi and Luffy, she couldn't read him. Shuroshi was like there was nothing there to see. She drew a complete blank. Luffy's was an infinite black mist or miasma. There was no way to go. She would be forever lost. But Hodi was like a red-black storm of rage. Ottoheim closed her eyes in disappointment in herself. She couldn't read someone again as her observation failed again. The ability she was born with that made her think she was infallible failed time and time again. It was almost enough to make her cry. One thing hadn't changed about her, as she would always be such a crybaby. We'll get more human slaves soon. But for now, we are 700,000 strong. Hodi glared at the citizens perched up in the coral walls watching the spectacle. You people are the shame of my country. Either run away or die. Decide now. Hodi yelled in rage, creating a commotion in a public plaza. You boys have no grace. You are so vulgar. Aren't you getting a bit carried away? Don't be so cocky, Hodi Jones. Hodi looked at the sky. The speaker was an awfully familiar mermaid. That's much. Ikaros was shocked for an instant as a familiar woman graced their presence. Well, how nostalgic. Long time no see, big sis. What the hell do you want with us? Hodi asked the woman with a snarky tone. Madam Charlie, the group of citizens near her exclaimed. The woman was the madam from the Mermaid Cafe. She smoked from her pipe as she looked on the plaza. She sat neatly on a bubble with a high and mighty attitude. Since you are here acting like a big boy in control, I figured I needed to tell you something. You are way in over your head, Charlie said with a smug face. Charlie-chan, Ottoheim murmured, worried. I once made a prediction a man will come and destroy or save Fishman Island. Charlie continued, in a matter-of-fact tone. Well, in essence, I'm destroying this kingdom and saving our people, so is it me you saw in those visions? Hodi sneered in scorn. No, the man who will save or destroy Fishman Island is Straw Hat Luffy. Shirley raised her voice. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Hodi exclaimed. The only thing I know that it will definitely not be you. Charlie exclaimed condescendingly. I know Charlie's predictions are never wrong. The citizens agreed with her nervously. Hodi, you were never destined to rule this kingdom. The madam exclaimed. Hodi gritted his teeth as a water shot pierced Madame Charlie's torso. Shuroshi cried at the spectacle. Seeing the blood flow from Shirley's wound wasn't pleasant to watch. Charlie is still alive, my daughter, Ottoheim said as her observation picked the health of Shirley. Kaya, a mermaid screamed in fear. Arg, Shirley crashed into the ground, bleeding. Madam Shirley, the crowd near her rushed to help. This is nonsense. Did you say that to spite me, Charlie? What did you want to accomplish with this spiel? Is this your poor idea of revenge? Madam, I'm different than your older brother. When I was a kid, Arlong was admired by all of us in the district, but we obtained power. We surpassed your brother Shirley. Now the name Arlong Pirates is nothing more than an empty symbol to unite under. Look at what we can do. Just look at our true strength. My plan was put into action 10 years ago. And shall I tell you how I started? Hodi smirked. He was but a soldier at the service of the Neptune's army. But even so, he was the one who burned the signatures and caused the greatest incident this country had ever saw, the assassination of 2 royals. I was the one who shot Ottoheim. And I was the one who killed your beloved sea god, the one who you love so dearly, King Neptune. All of the princes looked on with rage towards Hodi. Ottoheim looked at him shocked and started to cry. Her heart tore to pieces. Shuroshi closed her eyes with sorrow. Her fears were confirmed. It was simple. I just paid a human pirate to snipe the box holding the signatures, setting it ablaze. While everyone was busy, I shot Ottoheim in the chest, and I was the one who shot the spear I had crafted towards the crown prince. The same spear you now wield, Ottoheim. The pirate pansy, I shot him dead. But Jinbei arrived and retrieved the wounded man before I could finish him. But it was okay. I had set him up as the assassin. The blame fell on him. Ottoheim felt even worse. She had killed the wrong man. And so brutally too, she cried for her loss of innocence, that in her moment of deadly rage has led her to flee the country with shame. And yet she killed the wrong man all along. It was a pity that you, Ottoheim, and the prince survived. But I got Neptune instead, the biggest warrior this land had ever seen. Lucky me. Hodi approached the queen in chains, grabbed her hair and pierced her stomach with his hand. His strength was multiplied hundreds of times due to the drug, with the price being his lifespan. Ottoheim coughed blood, spraying Hodi's cheek as Shuroshi flinched. Hodi, still gripping her hair, pulled her body with him and showed the queen's shivering body to everyone, like a sick prize he won or a game that he hunted. Soon he showed the queen's crying face to Shuroshi. The reason I targeted this bitch was simple. She was in the way, Shuroshi. She made everyone think it was wrong to seek revenge against the humans. She tried to persuade the citizens of this country to make peace with their oppressors. And she almost succeeded. Your mother and father deserve to die. That's why I tried to kill them all. I'm the assassin. I knew that, Shuroshi said between tears. Ottoheim looked at her daughter in shock. Her hair was still being pulled as she sobbed in pain. XOX. Vander Deken walked towards the ship. He carried his bloody axe with his left hand as he approached the continental ship Noah. Behind him was a scared Yumabazu. Wadatsumi saw all the death Vander Deken caused and could only cry. See Wadatsumi. I touched it. Noah, the ship made long ago by the people of the Ryugu kingdom. I touched it with my right hand. You know what this means, right? Right. The No answer was given. Oh, I see. I see. I see. I see. I see. Bahoho, I guess I need to explain it better. In other words, this ship is going straight to Shuroshi. That's right, I threw it. Baho. Baho-ho-ho. Noah is as big as half of Fishman Island. There is nowhere to run, and no way to stop it. Soon it will be farewell to my beloved Shuroshi, and farewell Fishman Island, and farewell again Shuroshi. Shuroshi Farewell. Fare thee well. BWHAHAHAHAHA. He spoke with such insanity. He laughed at the deaths that would occur. The corruption from the spear turned a beautiful aquamarine into an ugly purple contrasting his red skin. Only 2 hours left of life in him as he jumped on the ship, and Wadatsumi followed as he had no other choice. XOX. What do you mean? You knew I killed your father, Shuroshi? Hodi asked, incredulous. Shuroshi held her tears in. Ottoheim coughed more blood as Hodi let go of her golden hair. She crashed again on the floor, hitting her chin in the hard concrete. Shuroshi, my daughter. Ottoheim raised her head, gazing at her daughter. Ottoheim looked at her daughter, feeling betrayed. She knew and did not tell me. Those thoughts permeated Ottoheim's mind. A few years after the incident, Shuroshi started telling her tale as a few drops dripped from her cheek. A few years after the incident, Hodi glared at Shuroshi. Megalo told me the truth. He used to be the Neptune's army mascot, and he saw everything that happened that day. Megalo roared at Hodi with vicious rage. Megalo, Ottoheim said. Why didn't you tell me, Shuroshi, if you had? Ottoheim said, feeling betrayed. If I had. Shuroshi tears fell freely. You would have killed Sir Hodi in revenge just like you executed that human pirate that day. And that would have made father even sadder. Shuroshi said, crying. What? Ottoheim said. It was the last promise you made with me. When I held your body in my hands and tried my best to hold your wounded chest, you said that no matter who killed you, I wouldn't hate them. Shuroshi cried. But you are different now, mother, you've changed ... and I understand it, but I will still uphold your old values. You refused to hate this man that almost killed me. That killed my husband, that almost killed my son ... You followed my wish to not hate the culprit, even when I brutally killed the man I thought responsible ... You are. Ottoheim thought with a grimace. Shame filled her mind again. Fukuboshi looked on shocked and said, You've been faithful to mother's wish. All of these years ... You knew this fact ... And you held it inside of you all this time, all alone in Shell Tower. Yes, I've been alone ... All this time. Ottoheim couldn't feel anger towards her daughter any longer. She accepted her reasons, and it was true she had changed her core values ... But this was the furthest thought she had on her mind. Ottoheim's mind froze when she heard that her daughter had been alone. Her heart sank as she tried to remember the times she spent with her daughter. They were only a few instances every year. Shuroshi was almost never let out. Only when she wasn't politicking or spending times with her sons did the queen manage to spend time with her. Self-loathing started to fill Ottoheim's heart as she basically let her daughter stew in isolation. Jahaha, Megalo, I'm so glad you picked this stupid little girl to talk to. If you'd told anyone else, Jahaha, my plans would be in ruins. Jahaha. The bloodthirsty grin Hodi had when he said it permeated throughout the plaza. Listen, Shuroshi, in this world, we call that stupidity, because you wouldn't allow yourself to hate me. This kingdom is finished. Jahaha. If you only told your mother, she would have hunted me like a hound, and the ending wouldn't be pretty for me, would it? However, because of your stupidity, I will now execute your brothers ... and then your mother. After that, I'll kill all of your subjects for good measure. Shuroshi sat still as Hodi continued his speech, demeaning her and her decision. However, she was not wrong. She never felt that way. The reason she sat frozen was because a minor twitch of her arm cracked a part of the metal chains behind her, holding her down. She wouldn't move in fear of the plan going awry because of her natural strength. Her tears that fell down were now tears of pity for the insane man standing in front of her. Hodi, in his sadistic glee, threw a volley of shark arrows made out of water at the brothers, chained to a stake. The force of thrust was so strong that they fell down, crashing into the floor, stake and all. Soon Hodi approached Fukuboshi, the crown prince. XOX. This is terrible. The crown prince is about to be executed. There are no warriors left in the Neptune's army, and the enemy has over 700,000 criminals. Madam Charlie, when will the pirate with the hat come to save the island? A child asked her. What? I don't know. I can only see what happens. I don't know if it will be tomorrow or a year from now. Charlie responded. I hope he comes now. The same child answered. A group of kids behind her also agreed. If he saves the island, then he will beat the bad guys, won't he? A girl said, smiling behind tears. I want him to come now. I don't want the prince to die. A small boy said his wishes. Soon the crowd started wanting the Straw Hats to appear too. Me too. Me too. You're right. I want him to do it now too. Straw Hat Luffy. If you are going to save the island, do it now. Straw Hat. Straw Hat. Straw Hat. The people pleaded for him to come. XOX. The Straw Hats were making preparations for the battle. The ship was almost ready for launch. However, Luffy jumped off the ship, landing on the surface off the water. The surface waved from his bare feet as he stood on water. Oi, Luffy, what are you doing? Zoro asked, leaning on the rails of the ship. I'm going ahead. Seems there is unforeseen trouble, Luffy said, stretching his legs. He never sank. He lowered his 6'8" form. He had a bare torso, as he didn't have clothes fit for fighting and only dressed beige pants ending in the middle of his shin. The hat was tucked in behind his pants, held by a string. Later, Luffy jumped forward, dragging the wind around him as he formed a column of water 10 feet up and discharging a 12-foot tsunami around the area that he jumped. He traveled faster than sound. Missiles could not compete with his speed as he traveled right to the plaza. XOX. Are they all imbeciles? I've heard of grasping straws. But this is pitiable. In the first place, the Straw Hats have no reason to be here in the first place, Hodi said, pitying them all, forgetting that he challenged the Straw Hats to a fight a few hours earlier. Big Sis prophecy has to be wrong this time. What futile cries for help, Zio said with contempt, hearing them chanting Straw Hat. Have you all gone insane? Jahaha. Well, I'll bring you back to reality. Hodi yelled with rage. He was the true insane one. As he grabbed Fukuboshi's head, he charged water onto his hand as he prepared to execute the crown prince. Now, watch, as I blow the head of your crown prince, the future of this kingdom. Jahaha. Ah, my prince, Luffy-sama, please save my brother. Shuroshi cried to the heavens for Luffy to come. Her feelings of love reached the peak of normal love. Please, Luffy, save my son. Ottoheim prayed in her mind. This is the start of the end of your disgraceful kingdom. Hodi's hand swiped down, bringing forth his attack, strong enough to completely obliterate the head of one of the strongest warriors of the sea, the Crown Prince. However, the wind blew, a gust so powerful it affected all of the plaza. A strong boom as Luffy arrived from the heavens. Like a missile, he closed his fist, faster than the eye could see, and pummeled Hodi's arm, going for the execution. All Hodi felt was pain as his arm contorted, caved, and turned. The force was so strong it ripped the skin muscle, dislocated the shoulder, and finally the arm ripped out of its socket as the bone was shattered in a million pieces. The arm flew away in a bloody mess. However, Luffy's fist did not stop there. It traveled, a bit deviated from its course, hitting Hodi's right side. It blew off a round chunk off of his lower ribs. The hit was so hard it imploded Hodi's liver out of his body. TCH, I wanted to blow his heart out, but the arm got in the way, Luffy thought, with excitement running through his veins, the straw hat billowing on the back of his pants, being held by a string. His arrival and his initial punch lasted less than a second until physics caught on what was happening. The force launched Hodi's body back into the wall of the plaza, crushing the reef without mercy as a cloud of dirt invaded the plaza. Hundreds of criminals gathered as the army of the new fishermen pirates were blown away by the air boom and funnel of the punch. Yet they didn't incur major injuries. The force rebounded to Luffy as he countered the backlash by stomping his feet on the ground, forming a crater. The hard and pointy rocks pressed on his skin. Yet they weren't hard enough to pierce the skin of his feet, nor even hurt him with their sharpness. HRM, since the liver handles such diverse processes as glucose metabolism, protein synthesis, bile circulation, and excretion of a variety of waste products, there will be a massive buildup of ammonia from ingested protein. It will eventually lead to coma, a loss of clotting proteins, eventually leading to life-threatening bleeding, and eventual vascular collapse due to an absence of albumin. For a human, hypovolemic shock would settle in 5 minutes, yet this guy's constitution, he is going to last several days. Say what you will about Luffy's intelligence. However, from his lessons given by Ray, he was a prodigy in the fields of politics and biology, especially animal biology. And even more specifically, how to kill someone. He was a pure genius. He knew countless ways to kill someone, quickly or otherwise. Straw Hat Luffy really showed up. Soon, surprised and relieved cries were heard from the public. As the arm that was ripped off got hidden under the rubble, hiding the gore, Luffy was somewhat relieved. As promised by the queen, they couldn't show much brutality. After all, this was a spectacle needed to save the country, and not further alienate humans from the common fishman's mind. To that end, he couldn't kill the criminals gathered here. Even though he could kill everyone here in a few minutes, he had the ability and might to make it so, but he needed to restrain his strength and disable or knock them out. It was fortunate that they were 10 times stronger than an average person. That means their endurance was amplified and they wouldn't die quickly. Even if he couldn't kill the army, he could kill their commanders, such as Hodi, and even if these outlaws wouldn't be killed now, they would be captured and summarily executed later on in secret. He saved Fukuboshi-sama. Princess Shuroshi asked for his help. He came out of the sky, Zio said, a bit nervous. However, his bravado won over. Thank you, Luffy, Ottoheim thought with a smile. Darling, Shuroshi cried his name in relief, showing her true feelings. It shocked her mother as she heard the endearing term. Luffy looked at her, a bit confused, but gave a confident smile. It was all right now, he was here. Nami, Luffy called, with a commanding tone. Right here. Nami appeared beside him with a swipe of her staff, revealing her body. Mirage cancel, she called out with a smile as her invisibility was cancelled. On her hand was the documentation from the Celestial Dragon. Is this what you've wanted, Ottoheim-chan? I've already given Robin the keys, Nami said, smiling at them, as Luffy pet her head, as a job well done. Soon petals appeared out of nowhere and hands sprouted from the chains, each holding a key, breaking free the royal family. A ship fell out of the sky, crushing the ground, giving the outlaws that were gathered there a great fright as they were almost pasted to the ground. It was a relief that nobody got squished by the weight of the ship. All of the Straw Hats jumped out of the ship, organizing closely to their captain. The Straw Hats. They are all here. The people cheered as the saviors from the prophecy arrived, completely forgetting that the prophecy could lead to destruction or salvation. Ottoheim raised herself as Jinbei joined her side. She put a hand on the hole in her belly, then looked at her palm, bloody. She closed her fist as she whistled. Soon a goldfish the size of a building came flying down, picking the princes, who were terribly hurt, but nothing serious. Soon the fish left the plaza with the princes. Soon Chopper approached her, getting the medical equipment necessary to treat her wound. Ottoheim did not care much for the wound. Her body was a duality. She was frail, receiving wounds very fast. A jagged rock could rip her skin easily. However, it took a lot to actually kill her. Even if she would be a bloody mess after the battle, she would still press on as if she didn't receive a wound. She had the lowest endurance, but she had amazing vitality. It was like a character in an RPG with maximum vitality and no defense. XOX. A few hours earlier. Luffy, I shall be captured along with my daughter, giving hope to the new fishermen pirates, and despair to my people. Then you and your crew shall arrive to save me from being executed. After all, I am probably the most hated and despised person on their list. This will turn despair into hope for my people. What about the new fishermen pirates? Can we kill them? Or Luffy asked for all of them. Chopper and Usopp gulped. Ottoheim shook her head in denial. It's best if we don't resort to killing. This time our fight shall be displayed to the kingdom, to children. I hope to tone down the brutality if possible. But still, there is a lot of enemies, aren't there? You can't hope to shackle them all after this. A little jail time won't give any results. Zoro tended to his swords. I concur, they will not learn their lesson that way. Just beating them down will not change much, Robin said after careful consideration. Sora, also in a rare mood, agreed with the moss head for a change. Yes, will you exile them or execute them? Sora asked. Jinbei and the others had no answer. Shuroshi felt uneasy talking about death, and the other Straw Hats stayed silent. They weren't against a killing, but they weren't pro to it as well. But whatever their captain decided, they would follow through the decision. It's just that they weren't as bloodthirsty as Zoro or Robin. Sora was exceedingly kind and disliked killing. However, she also held pragmatic ideals. Her mind and heart were in eternal conflict between her empathic side and pragmatic side, creating an extraordinarily strong duality and hypocrisy. Luffy knew all about and loved her for it. As for Luffy, killing was a given for his life. The road to being Pirate King was bloody and he knew it. He didn't care for fodder. In all his fights, against Crocodile, against Enel, and against Lucci, he really aimed to kill them. Luffy attacked them with his all. They survived by their incredible endurance. A normal man would be dead in their place. There was no doubt about it. Punches that can crack stone walls, punches that make the air itself tremble. A normal man would not have survived. After Ace's death, Luffy became very bloodthirsty. Perhaps it was a side effect of going through puberty, but he found that he liked killing very much. Battling and crushing opponents with just his body was very satisfying. And Luffy knew that this love for combat, for conflict, came from his blood. His own grandfather, Monkey D. Garp, was a great example. The hero of the Marines. His grandfather's hobby was bringing captured pirates and other fodder and executing them in front of his 5-year-old grandson. The old man drew much enjoyment from that. That psychopathic old man, Daten, kind and irritable Daten. Daten, who took on the duties of a mother for Luffy, wasn't a great role model either, as she frequently kidnapped people from the Goa Kingdom for ransom. The corrupt nobles often went back on their accord, not wanting to pay money to release the hostages. and it often led to the deaths of officials, the kidnapped, and the family involved. So yeah, his childhood was filled with bad role models, and the only good ones were Makino, who had taken the role of his older sister, and a pirate who had arrived and stayed there for a month. An emperor of all things is a good role model. It was comical. Did Luffy care about all the killings his dysfunctional family committed? Of course not. He did not care for the lives of fodder, of unrelated people, even if they screamed for his help, like that little noble girl Daden kidnapped that one time. He did not care one bit when Daden bashed her little head in rage. He did not care when she cried, bleeding with her skull deformed. He continued eating the precious meat from the tiger he had hunted while she crawled towards him, stopping midway as she died. He only protected the things he liked and destroyed things he hated. He was selfish like that, and perhaps the most selfish person in this world. Yet people loved him for his selfishness, his charisma hiding his ugly side. He agreed to protect and save this country because he liked it. He liked the people, he liked the queen and princess, he liked how the island looked, he liked the mermaids and the kinky sex he had performed with that group. Inside his own mind, this kingdom was already his land, as well as any other land in the sea. After all, he would be the future pirate king. That possessive behavior, viewing everything as his, came from his biological mother. She too viewed everything as hers, at least from the report he read. He couldn't blame her, because of her circumstances of blood and birth. We shall execute them. As per laws, they attacked and kidnapped royal family members. There is only one punishment. However, there is no way to execute all of them. We shall banish most of the humans involved, as well as some fishmen. The rest shall have their heads lopped off in a secret location. Making a public execution of hundreds of thousands of criminals isn't great for the government after all, Ottoheim said with pity in her tone, her harsh side appearing. Luffy, you shall be this island's hero. For that goal to be achieved, you shouldn't show too much brutality, do you understand? Ottoheim asked. Luffy nodded, however, he sighed. Hero, I don't want to be one. Luffy complained. Why not? Jinbei asked. We are pirates, you know. I love heroes, but I don't want to be one. Ottoheim was confused. For example, you have some meat, right? Pirates will feast on all the meat, but heroes will share the meat among the people. I want to eat all the meat. What with his strange standards? Nami said, sweat dropping, but in the end, she looked over Luffy caringly. Robin giggled at his antics. Frankie, Usopp, and Zoro nodded in agreement, somehow understanding his logic. Chopper mumbled about wanting all of the cotton candy, and Sora was mumbling all of the meat recipes for the next feast. I will give you all the meat, so just listen to the rest of my plan, Luffy, Ottoheim said. Got it, Luffy responded without delay. Gosh, Ottoheim cheered and grinned at him. Just like that, Chopper said, shocked. I want you to infiltrate the plaza to retrieve the document of St. Mjos's guard, which was stolen a few days ago. No doubt it was them. They will also have the key to the bindings of my 3 sons. I want you to steal both of these. Nami, can you do it? You are the only one who can turn invisible after all, and you are a stealing genius, Luffy said with a praise, in the end, making her feel a little bashful. Don't worry, you will not be hurt while I'm around, Luffy affirmed her. I can do it. Leave the stealing to me, Captain. And if Robin comes along too, it will be fine, Nami said, smiling. Robin by her side nodded. When my precious sons are released, Shuroshi shall call for your help. Luffy, you will then make a showy entrance. This will shift the public's opinion favorably by your side. Morale will be high as you aid me and Jinbei deal with the threat, Ottoheim said, grinning, leaning her 12-feet form in a friendly and charismatic manner. I'm only doing this because I like this place, but I'm telling this up front, if anyone cheers me on, it will be a turn-off, Luffy said with a fake reprimanding tone. If those busty, sexy mermaids cheer me on, I'll even take on the Demon King, Sora said as she lustfully dreamed of a night of pure debauchery with the mermaids. Heart symbols comically appeared around her head as a pink aura surged forth. Everyone, you have my sincere thanks. Ottoheim, unbefitting of her position, bowed to them. The crew became bashful at the thanks. Like always, they were weak to praise. Luffy got into a thoughtful pose. Still worried about something? Jinbei asked. A strategy name is important. Like we need that. Hurry it up, Nami cried as they made preparations. XOX. Hodi looked at the sky as he chugged fistful of pills rapidly. He put his remaining arm on the ground and raised himself up, cracking the ground. He glared in hatred. XOX. Straw Hat, Luffy might be a pirate and a human, but he is on our side, right? He is our ally, right? A citizen asked, with relief on his tone. Shuroshi-sama asked him to save us. They've come to save the country with Boss Jinbei. Straw Hat, Straw Hat, Straw Hat, Straw Hat, Straw Hat, Straw Hat. The public cheered, eating up the immensely abrupt and catastrophic entry, as Luffy saved the royal family from being killed. XOX. Zio heard those cheers and got irritated. Phew. Quite the popularity you have there, Zio said with a high and mighty attitude. Don't get carried away just because you took back the royal family for now. You human trash, Zio said with pride. Okay, at least I arrived on time, Luffy said, putting his hat on top of his head. Oi Luffy, don't go ahead, we need to follow the plan, Zoro said. I guess there is no helping it now, Jinbei said. Oi, Hoshi-chan, are you okay? Luffy asked. Wannabe pirates, Zio screamed, continuing his spiel, but was ignored completely. What's with the goldfish just now? Frankie asked. I am alright, Luffy-sama, Shuroshi answered, a little bashful as she smiled lovingly at him. It was the same goldfish that led us to the palace along with the shark. Usopp answered Frankie's question. It belonged to the queen as a sort of pet and transportation. Since the queen was a goldfish mermaid, communicating with goldfishes was a natural-born talent. Luffy, Nami came close to him, grabbed his wrists, and pulled the muscular arm with all of her strength. How dare you do such an attack? What if it hit me when I was invisible? Nami ranted with sharp teeth. She was in the plaza when the giant gust of wind blew and Luffy punched Hodi, so she was undeniably frightened that she would have been caught in the attack. Don't worry, I knew where you were, and I'll never hit you, Nami. You're too beautiful to be hurt, Luffy answered, petting her orange hair with care. Soon Nami blushed and looked down, hiding her eyes and entering her little world. Hey, we got 2 new weapons. Anyone wants to ride? Frankie asked, drawing some attention from the crew. What? New weapons? Usopp asked with stars in his eyes. Soon they started chatting like normal day-to-day life, ignoring the 700,000 strong and menacing army around them. We saw Luffy talking to Nami, Sora and Zoro, with Shuroshi shyly interjecting their conversation. She was so isolated that she didn't know how to interact well with people. Jinbei was conversing with Brook and Robin and the queen, who was still in a bit of a shock while Chopper was caught entreating her and salivating at the prospects of a new weapon. Zio tried to interrupt their conversation by yelling louder and louder but was summarily ignored. They've ignored us. Kaya, Daruma said, clenching his teeth. That's because I said it quietly on purpose, Zio said with a strong voice and a glare, crossing his arms in pride. Nami gave the letter to Queen Ottoheim with a smile, who snapped back into attention. Ottoheim picked up the documents with her non-bloody hands. The queen thanked the red-haired, big-breasted navigator of the Straw Hats. The queen's smile was genuine despite the circumstances. My daughter, Shuroshi, did I neglect you? Ottoheim asked the hardest question she had to ask in her life. A lump was caught in her throat, her heart seized. Shuroshi couldn't answer, so she turned her face to the side, completely averting her eyes so that she did not have to look at her mother. Luffy grabbed his hat in silence as his crew didn't know what to say. I see. Ottoheim closed her eyes. XOX. Vander Deken was useless, Hodi said, approaching the plaza once again. His wounds were steaming as the hole in his right side healed. The bleeding of his dismembered arm stopped. He was without his right arm, imbalanced. He walked, not caring. Captain Hodi, I need Shuroshi to be taken care of as soon as possible. I fell right into your trap, right, Ottoheim? I should have noticed when you let yourself get caught so obediently, Hodi said. It was obvious in hindsight. Hodi looked at Jinbei in loathing. The legendary first son of the sea mingling with the humans so casually it was revolting. You sure are friendly with humans, huh? Jinbei, I can't stand your sort the most. Traitors like you need to die, Hodi said as Jinbei faced him. You grew up in the Fishman district with Fisher Tiger and your oath brother Arlong, and they were both taken down by humans. And to choose to side with humans instead of avenging your brethren. You are a coward worse than the late Neptune, Hodi said with rage in his eyes. But when I become king, everything will change. The revelry that will be held this year is the perfect opportunity. I'll murder all the kings of the world at Marigiois, and the legend of the Undersea Kingdom will be born. Humans all over the world will be dragged down to the bottom of the sea and made into slaves. And before long, no one will be able to oppose my kingdom anymore. Look at these human pirates under my hold. Hodi motioned to the defeated-looking humans with collars on their neck. This is your future, Straw Hat, Hodi said, and after a pause, he continued with the wrong declaration. I'll be the true Pirate King, Hodi said to the most selfish person in the world. Pirate King, Luffy said in a deadly serious tone. His eyes were shadowed by the hat. Jahaha, what can 10 measly pirates and an injured queen do? I have 700,000 people here. Have a look at them. My new fishman pirates. UWOOL. The pirates raised their arms, carrying all manners of weapons, and charged forward, encircling the ship. How does the Straw Hats and Boss Jinbei plan to win with just 10 people? A citizen asked worriedly. It doesn't matter. They need to win. For the future of our country, a reasonable person watching commented. Kill them all. Hodi gave out his orders. XOX. Chopper screamed in fright of the numbers, crying rivers in fear as he finished the gauze around the queen's stomach. Soon she lifted off the ground, completely shrugging of her wounds, and transformed her tail into scaly legs. She extended her right hand as purple tentacles shot out from her hand. Soon an eye was formed, and there her corrupted trident surged forward. However, the 3-pointed tongues retracted, leaving the trident as a staff. She maneuvered the staff It looks like we will be crushed before we even get the chance to fight. Robin aloofly crossed her arms ready to attack. Crushed. Scary. Usopp leaned his body as he cried in fear. So 700,000 enemies. It is certainly an astonishing amount. It almost makes your eye pop out. But then again, I don't have eyes to pop out. Yo-ho-ho. Brook said, unsheathing his blade as a frosty air came about. He narrowed his eyes, ready to battle. It seems my time has finally come, Frankie said, posing hard. Superior. Armored me. Almost immediately a tiny yellow hand came out of his larger blue and red one. It mentioned for all enemies to come at him. He taunted them. Now, come at me wherever you want. Frankie glared at them. 700,000 This is going to take a while. I can't kill them. Sora sighed in exasperation. However, she gazed at the kraken perched on top of the wall. Her captain ordered her to capture it for his feast. A rivebella, perhaps a takoyaki, sashimi, sushi. Dish ideas burst forth from her imagination. Numbers don't matter, they aren't the marine elites or anything. Zoro gripped his Wado Ikemanji. However, as their numbers approached, there was someone here that wasn't that concerned. Luffy wasn't amused in the slightest that the enemy was sending pure trash on their way to him. He walked forward without a care in the world and ignoring the calls of his crew, ignoring the men wielding swords, axes, and daggers aimed at his direction. Luffy frowned as his gray eyes turned pure glowing white for a second, as a wave of black lightning with red outlines boomed in the plaza. The lightning dispersed a huge shockwave that trembled the earth itself, as all men facing him fell by his will. Their eyes widened in fear, dropping their blades, and almost immediately their bodies crashed into the ground unconscious, their mouth frothing blood. Their eyes rolled to the back of their skull. This was his terrifying will. His conqueror's haki. The enemies crashed unconscious in droves. Shortly enough, Luffy could only detect more than 100,000 pirates still conscious, including the main leaders of the enemies. Luffy caressed the 3 metal bracelets in his arm. They blocked the use of most of his powers over exponentials, as well as his power over God, Model Indra, as well as a good portion of his physical prowess and haki. Luffy wanted to take down every fodder here, but this was his limit, being chained down. It was a good thing his haki was chained down. After all, his haki of the Supreme King was quite dangerous. In full force, it could kill a person of fright. Literally. Their heart starts to beat erratically and then it starts quivering instead of beating. Adrenaline pumps too fast, causing death. While he hadn't tested his strongest haki on humans yet, instead testing on animals who were a lot stronger than a normal human proved that it was deadly. He smirked. It was time to see the growth of his comrades. He did not feel any pity for the enemy. They were only stepping stones to the dreams of his crew. Only silence remained as the whole kingdom watched as 600,000 criminals dropped unconscious just like that. The citizens' eyes lit up as they picked up their jaws from the ground. The children could only cheer. Hodi widened his eyes in dread. Soon the remaining troops started screaming and blaming each other. The public was very confused, but also happy. You can do it if you want to, can't you, young god? Madame Charlie said, smiling. This is haki, Robin said as the Straw Hats had their jaw dropped. He got this far in just 2 years, Jinbei exclaimed. So he had the haki of the Supreme King after all, Sora said, smiling. If he couldn't do this much, then we'd have to get a new captain, Zoro said to her with a smirk. Amazing, Luffy-sama, Shuroshi said, surprised. He has the same power as me, Ottoheim thought. In hindsight, it was obvious. He is a young god. After all, a god's ambitions are stronger than a king's. Ottoheim closed her eyes. She faced her daughter again, showing a bit of sadness. Her daughter was strong, but she had to mend their relationship. Hodi or whatever it was, I don't really care either way. You can play kingdom all you want by yourself. However, there is no need for more than one king of pirates. There is just one seat and it's already filled by me, Luffy said, frowning at him. His eyes returned to the stormy glowing gray it was before. Luffy jumped, disappearing from the enemy view. His jump leads him to a cluster of enemies. The pirates looked up at his menacing form, shadowed by the light as he descended like a catapult. Here he comes. A pirate screamed with fright. Luffy landed on the ground, splitting it apart in a huge boom, knocking many people like an earthquake. His left heel was trapped to the floor, but a quick lift and the leg was free from the crater formed. As many as 200 soldiers were knocked out. HMPH, 700,000, a million, a billion, bring as many as you want. It will not change the result in the slightest, Luffy's hard voice boomed across, terrifying the enemies. XOX. Okay, let's go, Jinbei said, adjusting his stance. Yes, Ottoheim said, spinning her staff, causing a large gust of wind. Will they surrender first or be annihilated before that? Zoro said, excited, smirking. I won't let you destroy the mermaid's paradise. I still have to bed as many mermaids as I can, Sora said, buttoning her formal red shirt and adjusting her tiny tie to her bust. She lifted her long legs as she prepared to destroy these fools. There are many priceless artifacts and treasures that lie here. I will not allow you to destroy them, Robin said with a smiling. It's getting so hot. The ideal day for a concert. Are we ready, baby? Hoye. Brooke swiped his blade as a chilly air overtook his presence. Inside the Sunny, Frankie tinkered with the new weapons. Let's go, Sunny. The new weapon of the soldier dock system. Now I'm getting excited, Nami said, pressing her shoulder on Usopp's face, unintentionally making it hard to breathe for him. I'm the pilot, Chopper said as stars blinked behind him. It's showtime, Frankie said. XOX, 600,000 may have fallen. But don't fear, 100,000 still remain. The enemy commanders did their hardest to regain morale. Luffy stepped on a mountain of bodies as the crew gathered around it. 600,000. Are you serious, Luffy? Let some of them for us, Zoro said, removing the top of his green kimono and putting his bandana on. Oh, right, sorry. Luffy stepped on someone's toe and crushing it. The Straw Hat Pirates are the greatest obstacles to our proud ambitions. Jinbei is the biggest traitor of all. He betrayed both his brothers and searched to mingle with the disgusting human. Zio continued, being ignored by the Straw Hats. And Ottoheim, she is destined to lead this kingdom to ruin. Don't falter now, soldiers. Our dreams are almost complete, Zio said with pride. HHHHH. The crowd of pirates cheered. Hey, leave at least 70,000 for me. I'll also kill that Kraken. We need a feast after all, Sora said. Her gray low-heeled shoes stepped on a man's balls as she walked among the unconscious bodies. Shut up, shitty cook, Zoro said. Say that again, Mosshead, and it will be your head flying off, Sora said. So, you think you can protect that huge princess? Right in the middle of the plaza, Hodi lifted his left arm, the only remaining arm, and prepared a water shot, the same that pierced through the country earlier. Then go ahead and try. Hodi winded and threw the shot, aimed at the princess. Water shot. Luffy smiled. The bubble traveled at extreme speeds. Jinbei wanted to intervene, but Luffy stopped Jinbei's hand, who was holding his own water shot. Oh, Shuroshi watched the bubble of water travel towards her and extended a hand. The water shot splashed into her open palm and did nothing. No wounds at all. It was like a drop of cool water fell into her hands. Hodi's jaw dropped. Shuroshi was also a natural-born monster. She was born as a world destroyer. A simple water bubble wouldn't do a thing to her. She is not that weak, Jinbei. Luffy jumped towards another cluster of enemies, grappling their arms or legs, crushing their bones, and punching their stomach as weakly as possible. He danced around the enemies, as his 6'8" muscled lean frame avoided any and all attacks, while his own attacks, not meant to kill, crippled every enemy he encountered. After all, why need arms, legs, or spine if you are going to be executed later on? Brooke rushed towards a group of enemy shooters and slashed them all before they could even see. Santoryu, Kokuju, Wadatsumi. Zoro made whirlwinds with his blade, reverse gripped so it wouldn't kill them. The 3 whirlwinds traveled across the plaza, seeking enemies and swallowing them. They didn't stop, continuously hunting enemies to oblivion. Sora had the same idea as Luffy. She kicked the enemy's arms or legs, dislocation and crushing their bones. Sometimes she would hit the small of the back, severing the spine. They were all debilitating hits that made them scream into unconsciousness. However, soon she was surrounded by spiky fishmen. She did a small jump, waving her long and thick left leg in 360 fashion. A slice of wind took them all out. This was Rankyaku, or at least her bastardized version of it. Sora also managed to hold back. A full force would just slice them in half, as well as the whole kingdom. Her weakest Rankyaku was just enough to cut their stomach and put them into unconscious. They would survive a few days without care, but they would eventually bleed out. While the men fell bleeding, she graciously touched the ground with her pretty shoes and jumped again. This time was not a light jump. No, she went 20 feet into the air and kicked the air again, making a foothold because of the force. She eventually faced the mermen with bubbles and spears coming to attack the princess. And then she kicked the air in front of her, causing an air cannon that popped their bubbles and crushed their spine and tailbone as they fell towards the ground 60 feet up. That was to their deaths. A comical dust cloud hid their bodies as they crashed. And to be honest, they weren't prohibited to kill. They were only prohibited of showing brutality, and since the crowd was so far away, they could still kill a few of them if absolutely necessary. She waved at Shuroshi and the princess waved back, calling her name. Robin chanted with her power over flowers as 2 hands appeared in every soldier in a cluster of 1,000 of them. They choked them into unconsciousness, or broke their backs, or even pulled their arm, dislocating their shoulder. Soon she took 1,000, all by herself, then continued producing more hands without stopping. Then it was time to unveil new weapons of the Sunny. A large motorbike and a huge tank. Both were incredibly efficient at destroying the enemy crowd. The bike was being manned by Frankie as he ran over a lot of them. The tank was being manned by Chopper, Usopp, and Nami. Chopper in command and Usopp aiming, while Nami shot thunderstorms across the field. Jinbei and the Queen joined the fray. The Queen's incredible speed as well as grace with the staff made short work out of everyone who approached her daughter, while Jinbei's crowd control and water manipulation were superb as always. Sea beasts go. Hodi ordered the 11 sea beasts that he kept as pets. Among them was the white bearfish monstrosity that destroyed Neptune's forces. They all roared and rushed forward, but Luffy stopped his rampage. Seeing the animals, he could use Haki again to take them down. But he had a more fun idea. He put his fingers on the floor, pushed the fingers into the stone ground, piercing it. Soon he had 5 fingers dug into the ground. He then dragged the fingers on across as if he was dragging his fingers across sand instead of hard rock. That's how strong his fingers were, breaking the earth and forming gravel and small stones in his hands. He grasped a handful of gravel and closed his fist. He raised himself up and looked at each of the beasts. Luffy used the power over exponentials and he threw the gravel at the beasts. And in the middle of the travel they expanded to be the size of small meteorites which hit all of the beasts and crushed them to death as each formed a crater on the ground. The way his fruit worked was that he picked a value of the way he perceived nature, and then exponentially rise it to whatever value he wanted, be it 2, be it 6, be it a 1000, and then adding it to the original value. For example, the small rocks he formed on the ground were only 5 cubic centimeters. He put this value to the exponential value of 6, calculating it to a little more than 15 cubic meters, transforming small pebbles into truck-sized meteorites that rained down on the unfortunate beasts. Well, it at least killed them instantly. XOX. They are incredible. They really are. They are only above 10 people and taking on 700,000 enemies without breaking a sweat. A mermaid said as she watched Luffy fight more cluster of enemies. More and more statements of awe were spoken as they watched the spectacle. The distance helped mask the more brutal strikes that the Straw Hats gave to the enemy, leaving only the spectacular combat that the Straw Hat crew gave them. Their theatrics in combat was entertaining to watch. Their antics made them laugh. It was all to mask the brutality occurring in the battlefield. Straw Hat, Queen Ottoheim, Big Boss Jimbei, XOX, ignorant fools. Hodi became ever impatient with his decreasing numbers. Kraken entered the plaza, crushed them underfoot. Put an end this farce. Hodi ordered. His frustration was made clear with his expression as he periodically put more pills in his mouth. It was his newly found addiction. Luffy tore through the army like a bullet, picking up 2 people by their shins with one hand and throwing them like ragdolls across from the plaza. He kicked a person in the knees, making the leg bend until the feet touched the hip. He elbowed another in the back and focused his attention on the Kraken. That octopus. Luffy drooled. Sora saw the octopus approaching, and just like before, she jumped towards it so fast that she raised a white wind cloud behind her. As she instantly approached the Kraken and hit its head with a concassor, the Kraken once again fainted from the blow, as Sora wanted to kill it before cooking so that the meat remained fresh for serving. Dropping gracefully near the unconscious octopus, she picked one of its 8 tentacles full of sharp hooks, and dragged its body to the center of the plaza, near Shuroshi and the ship. When it was done, she returned to the battle. To CH. Hodi glowered at them. As his troops took massive hits after massive hits, he put his one remaining hand on the healed stump in his arm. His rage started to peak. Damn. The Kraken that was controlled by Captain Hodi. A fishman pointing his blade forward sweat bullets. It was defeated that easily. Another pirate next to him said. However, their attention was suddenly grabbed by the dark shadow approaching them at extreme speeds. Their hearts sank as they saw the raven hair, the gray eyes. It was Luffy coming at them. He smirked as he kicked one in the hips, breaking all of the lower bones as well as the spine. One he punched in the shoulder, turning muscle and bone into dust. One he grabbed in the midsection and kicked his thighs, bending the leg by the femur. Another he threw like a cannonball towards another group. Then in a show he picked one by the neck, lifted his body and dropped him on his head. This one was dead. One came with a huge sword. Finally this group started to fight back. Luffy easily avoided the sword thrust and punched the elbow of the extended arm. Finally he swiped his feet, dislocating the ankles as the enemy fell. It was unfortunate that he couldn't kill here. It wouldn't be such a labor to hold back. His lightning powers were so strong that even a small discharge from his fingers could stop a man's heart as well as burn their bodies to ash depending on the heat he would output. Truly his whole body was a death machine that could barely hold back. Huh, what? Everyone's avoiding us. Chopper looked around as the cannon shot again, blasting another group into oblivion. So you must hold fear for the might of our fleet, Chopper said in a serious commander voice, or tried to. HMPH. Comrades, we shall use this chance to attack the enemy leaders. Forward, full throttle, Chopper ordered as the tank moved. Huh, Commander Chopper, the tank is trembling for some reason, Usopp said. Nami was lying down in the back. Soon a pitfall appeared right under them and swallowed the tank. Daruma, the tiny fishman, dug his way out of the ground. He explained that he dug tunnels on the ground with his teeth to booby-trap the area. He then focused his attention on the giant bike Frankie was piloting. However, Frankie saw that the crew inside the tank were having some trouble and rode there, and he fell in the same pitfall, bike and all. Daruma was shocked by the sheer stupidity. However, soon Frankie threw Usopp, Chopper, and Nami out of the hole. Disregarding their complaints, Frankie fired up both machine as they combined in spectacular. Now it's time, Iron Pirate, Frankie Shogun. Frankie yelled as the giant machine was unveiled. The metal shined in the sunlight. Frankie Shogun was a giant robot 40 feet in height modeled after Frankie. It was made by combining the Bike Kurosai FRUIV and the Brachio Tank V, though several times the size of the average person. It was built out of Wapontal. It bore the BF-38 on its left collar and a black straw hat Jolly Roger in the middle of its golden chest. The head, legs, and torso were wide. The torso was cylindrical, while the arms were thick. The giant robot made machine and piston sounds as it moved. The steam genius, Vegapunk. Your dream has come true. I succeeded in developing a shape memory alloy. Wapontal. What's that? The enemies screamed in shock. Awesome, Luffy said. His eyes turned into stars as he kicked someone in the waist and threw another corpse at another crowd. Luffy was so taken by the robot he forgot he was combating fodder. A spear came at his neck aiming to skewer him, but the spear shattered on impact. The man was so shocked he didn't pay attention to Luffy colliding with him. The sheer force and speed, as well as Luffy's weight and muscle, crushed the man. It was like a person getting run over by a bullet train, really. The guy just flew off in a comical bloody mess. The combined robot of our dreams. Usopp and Chopper. Nami stared at it with a bored face. The Marauder's sword. Ken. Frankie Shogun drew its blade. It was as big as its body. The giant mech slashed the giant blade and split the plaza in half. The shockwave lifted thousands upon thousands of enemies in the air. The pirates hadn't the time to be shocked at the massive metal jumped so fast like it didn't weigh 100 tons. It rushed towards the battlefield, rolling around and jumping, flattening the enemies under its weight. The sheer comical sight of it steamrolling the enemy retracted from the gore it produced, and while jumping around, holes opened in his shoulder and body. The ones in the shoulder had missiles, and in the body there were many cannons aimed at the outlaws. And now you had a metal construct steamrolling the enemy, jumping around effortlessly while it launched guided missiles as well as shooting cannonballs and exploding in the enemy's face. Cannon from the body and missiles from the shoulders. Luffy looked on. Stars blinked behind him, showing his excitement that betrayed his stern look. That thing is pretty destructive. You've built yourself a weapon of war, didn't you, Frankie? Luffy assumed an extravagant art critic pose as he examined the Frankie Shogun. What did I say about holding back and not killing? Ottoheim looked at the death and destruction it caused, and then looked at her citizens. They were still cheering like it was an action performed on a theater. The good guys beat down the bad guy and win. They were eating it up. The cool explosions were also a huge bonus for them, or so Ottoheim thought. Well, I'll let it slide. Ottoheim bashed the next group of enemies. They were becoming increasingly sparse. That's so cool. Too cool, man. Usopp praised as Chopper jumped around in excitement. Robin stared at it dispassionately. More flowers appeared near the enemies, creating hands and crushing them. A group approached Nami as one slashed his blade. She sidestepped the blow, bashing his head with her climb attack. He dropped to the ground as she split the staff into 3 parts. Pointing one part at the group, she smiled. Gust's sword. A giant spear of wind traveled across the battlefield, piercing everything under the power of wind. Crap, I ended up outside, Usopp said as he saw an army full of soldiers rushing at him. They closed their distance rather fast. But stand your ground, Usopp. You're not like you used to be, Usopp said as he psyched up. Usopp also joined the fray. He threw pop greens into the battlefield with the help of his sling. The plants that surged forward were poisonous in nature, with a knockout gas effect, as well as carnivorous plants with grassy tentacles and a strong acidic substance in their mouth. That did not cause death, but it would hurt like hell as your skin would melt, so much that it would make the strongest of persons faint. Heracle's unsensei. Those death-defying years in the bandit forest are something that I'll never forget. The prologue on the great adventures of the mythical warrior of the sea Usopp is over. It's time for the first chapter on this man's adventure, full of tales of sorrow and loss, full of tales of happiness and adventure. Usopp screamed to the heavens. XOX. Those pirates fight with such fervor, a citizen said, completely eating up the action. It's like they are addicted to battle. Another said, cheering. XOX. Daruma was digging tunnels upon tunnels underneath. He thought he was safe, however he was suddenly impaled and forced out by a huge horn. He was still fine despite a hole in his shoulder that was bleeding profusely. Soon a creature got out of the hole. It was Chopper, transformed into a horned form. He approached Daruma faster than he could react, instantly transforming into Arm Point. His biceps, triceps, and shoulders became extremely muscular in a human-esque form, and he retained his hooves. Arm Point, Kokide Rosio. Chopper punched the opponent with such a force that his hoof left an imprint on Daruma's caved chest that looked like a cherry petal. The fishman flew in the air until a bamboo shoot grew on where he would land, impaling him by under the jaw until the head, killing Daruma. Pop green, bamboo javelin, Usopp said, smirking. Nice, Usopp. Now to kill the other enemy leaders, Chopper said, transforming into Walk Point, his four-legged deer form. Soon most of the conflict was resolved. Most of the enemy grunts were defeated or dead. As the excitement grew, their imposed self-control waned as they started to kill more and more. However, it was of no concern as the public, in general, was eating it up and not focusing enough on the gory parts. They were also far away, so it helped a lot in that regard. In total, Frankie Shogun won in the contest of defeating more people if you don't count Luffy instantly defeating 600,000 enemies in one go, as he defeated more than 19,000 and killed more than 120,000. As it steamrolled through the already defeated enemies. Second was Zoro defeating 15,000, followed closely by Sora and Luffy, each with 14,000. Zoro pulled ahead, despite lazing around because his reverse grip allowed for non-deadly attacks and he had a better grasp at crowd control than the other two. Luffy's and Sora's skill relied on very deadly blows because of their immense physical prowess. While true Zoro, who had an equal physical prowess, he also boasted of a finesse while handling his blades that made him control his strength so as not to kill many of them. Luffy, Zoro, and Sora killed very little. Their total body count didn't reach 100 combined. Brook came in fourth due to his unbelievable speed. His nimbleness and little weight made him faster than the eye could perceive. He defeated 12,000, and 9,000 died from his strikes, while the rest lay bleeding, waiting for death. He mostly disregarded the order of not to kill early on. Robin came fifth. Her abilities made short work of everyone, defeating 11,000 enemies. She mostly observed. Usopp, Nami, and Chopper combined efforts with the Brachio tank. Usopp's Pop Green and Nami's Thunderclouds landed them in 6th place with 9,000 defeated, and very few were actually killed by them, but they were more than 1,000 dead or dying because of the Brachio tank. Ottoheim, who mainly protected her daughter and didn't participate much in the conflict, defeated 6,000. Luffy calmly walked, shrugging off his rampage, closed the distance between him and Hodi. Hodi stared at him. A bit of sanity left, as most of his troops lay defeated. The only remaining grunts numbered in the hundreds. Some tried to flee, but he hit them with some shark arrows. Here he comes. Monkey D. Luffy, Hodi said, passing his hand on the healed hole in his right side. It was healed, but the skin was purple-black. Contrasting to his white skin, he still missed a liver and a few ribs from his body, never to heal. Kill him. A few men tried to rush forward, but they were stopped by Dawson. You guys can't, Cabin, Dawson said, winding his hammer. Leave it to you, Much, Ikaros said, preparing to skewer Luffy as he passed them by. They struck, but both were blocked by Zoro and Sora. Dawson's giant hammer shattered in contact with Zoro's blades, and Ikaros had his jaw kicked so hard it fell off his head, bleeding profusely as the lower part of the skull fell on the ground with a wet sound. Zoro and Sora sidestepped as a big bowl of storm produced by Nami hit Ikaros, and at the same time a feminine leg sprouted from the ground by Robin, bigger than any giant, hit Dawson. Both were launched into the air, and as a final execution, both were hit by a homing missile from Frankie Shogun, ending them completely. He's coming, Hodi said, not paying attention to his subordinate's death. Soon Luffy disappeared from view, kicking him hard in the lower stomach, causing another hole in the wall behind Hodi as his body was buried by the rubble produced. Luffy then looked back. His focus was on the horizon. His eyes sharpened as his body was filled with rage. His wrath turned the world black and white, literally. Ottoheim also looked back. As a shadow approached from the horizon, a giant mountain of a ship made its way to the island. That's the Ark of the Promise, Noah, Ottoheim said between gasps of surprise, as the continental-sized ship encroached the island, with no signs of stopping. Strongest to weakest straw hat in my fic. Luffy, a freak of nature, with unbelievable healing factor, a body strong enough to break mountain ranges, has 2 fruits, each capable of destroying the world. His Zoan fruit is capable of turning him into an avatar state, and a god form. His body cannot be hurt normally as he trained armament to be passive and on at all times. His observation has very far reach and it is precise to a fault. His conquerors in full force can kill instead of faint people. He is also a born battle genius, as well as mastery over 100 martial arts, learned from combating his master, Rayleigh, every day. Very selfish and mostly oblivious. He has a strong personality and charisma needed for a leader. Zoro. He trained under the most powerful warlord for 2 years. His physical prowess is only a bit inferior to his captain. His fitness with a blade is among the best in the world. He is no nonsense and very bloodthirsty in battle. A genius with a blade able to slice countries in half. Has a rivalry with Sora, but they often tie, making unclear who the strongest actually is. Very stern, likes to sleep a lot, and he is a person who gets lost even in a one-way tunnel. Sora, turned into a woman by Ivankov for her training. For unknown reasons she remained in that form even after Ivankov offered to turn her back. She mastered the new kama, as well as self-taught many different leg stances and attacks. Her physical prowess almost matches with her captain, being able to turn mountain ranges into dust with a kick. Her cooking is to die for. Famous for bringing her captain, Monkey D. Luffy, down with foodgasms. She enjoys cooking for her friends. She loves cooking for women even more, and she is in true bliss every time she feeds Luffy and he praises her. She is very kind. However, her pragmatic mentality often fights with her merciful heart. It leads to a conflict and duality inside her. She loves women and isn't afraid to show it, betting many along the way. However, she also harbors confused feelings for her captain, making her wonder if she was bisexual all along and not a lesbian. Franky Shogun. Franky Shogun, a war machine created from the blueprints of Vegapunk as well as Franky's innovative mind for building weapons. The design was modified to fit Franky's taste. It offers a lot of protection from the memory shape alloy Wapuntal as well as concentrations of sea stone, making it a huge enemy for devil fruit users. It is terrifyingly agile for its size, able to traverse the battlefield in seconds. It can be used on air and the sea, is able to fly, and has a self-sustaining guiding missiles and turret system as well as cannons all over its body. Truly a weapon of mass destruction that very few can ever stop. And it's even harder to destroy. Robin Brooke Franky. Robin. Her powers make it too easy to kill people, being able to sprout limbs everywhere she wants and with enough force to kill people. Her power is extremely versatile. Her intelligence is second to none and she is very bloodthirsty sometimes. She likes her friends and wouldn't give them up for the world. She loves her captain romantically as well. She is clumsy in that area and doesn't know how to approach Luffy about her feelings, as her life of constant running never left time for a love life before. So approaching 30 years of age and she is still a virgin that knows very little about romance besides the saucy books she reads. In Brooke, Undying, he is all bones. And that is a plus in his book. It makes him extremely agile, faster than sound, faster than the naked eye can perceive. He plows through enemies extremely fast. His fruit allows him to have powers from the soul. Fight against him and you'll find yourself in the cold embrace of death. The oldest Straw Hat, in his 90s. He was very lonely before. However, he finds solace in company between his newfound friends. He has a lot of loyalty towards Luffy as well as respect. Franky, shipwright and maker of weapons. His armored android body has many weapons perfect for killing. Like any other Straw Hat, he has an eccentric personality. He is very grateful to Luffy and will follow them to the ends of the earth as the shipwright to the Sunny, the best ship in the world. Usopp, Nami, Chopper. Usopp, surviving the training with Heraclesson Sensei. He is now changed. Having a new weapon Pop Green at his disposition makes him a dangerous threat, and his diverse arsenal has everything needed for every situation. His sniping skills are second to none. Is very loyal to the crew and wants to prove himself to be a brave warrior of the sea. Currently, he has romantic thought about his childhood friend Kaya. He thought that his friendship with Luffy would wane since the captain seemed more mature and wouldn't put up with his childish. However, he found himself enjoying Luffy's newfound sarcastic conversations. He had nothing to worry about. Both he and Luffy were growing up. Nami, master of weather. Her knowledge of geography and cartographic are second to none. Her skills with a staff are very dangerous, and her scientist mind can change weathers with the help of her climattack to attack enemies and to aid comrades. She would go to hell and back for her friends, even if they frustrate her sometimes. She is in love with Luffy, and has been for a long time now, and want to be by his side, helping him everywhere she can. Chopper, an accomplished doctor searching for the cure for all diseases. He specializes in turning into different points for combat, each form being deadlier than the last. He is very loyal to his friends and currently has a pet and master relationship with Luffy, although both are not aware of it. Captain Hodi, the remaining pirates, still lucky not to be hit by the unbelievable speedy match that Franky had built. Even after swallowing all those energy steroids and becoming a total monster, how could he lose like this? A criminal said, putting his hands on his head in desperation. No, wait, look, his body has become really tough. He can handle this kind of attack. One said, pointing at the direction Hodi was thrown by the kick. Hodi lifted the stone blocks that were on him like nothing. He launched them across the battlefield in rage, creating a bit of wind that reached Luffy, blowing the hat, his hair and his clothes a bit. Hodi roared in rage, glaring at him behind the shadows. That ship is approaching the island fast. I need to do something about it. Luffy thought with a tiny bit of worry. This guy is built like a tank. To think he could handle 2 blows from me. He seemed as weak as Arlong at first, so Luffy thought, trying to figure Hodi out. Hodi picked more pills and gulped them down. Luffy saw it as the shark fishman grown even more in strength. Luffy sighed. So that's it. Those pills make him stronger every time. It feels a bit familiar with one application of my power over exponentials. However, it seems a bit weaker, so instead of potentializing it is multiplying. It multiplies his body's potential, strength, speed, endurance, and other things as well. However, it seems to be costing his sanity. Luffy thought while watching the huffing Hodi getting rid of the rubble. His body had some blood marks and bruises. The stump that was previously his right arm had healed, so it stopped bleeding. The area that he was hit with the kick had a large purple swelling and bruise around it, signs of trauma and inflammation all over it. Abdominal, spleen, pancreas, gallbladder, ribs, intestine, all of them had received some sort of damage and internal hemorrhaging. Luffy could bet on that. But no amount of organ damage would stop this guy. His endurance seemed unbelievable. Straw Hat, do you know what fishman karate is? Hodi said, huffing as his bruises bled. And his mouth spat blood. Most of his skin was marred by some kind of injury by this point. Hodi closed the distance between them in an instant, arming his remaining arm into a palm strike. With overwhelming force he struck, making a whiplash. A ring blast of air surged around his palm as it hit Luffy, however. Hodi made a throaty sound of surprise as he saw the palm strike being blocked by Luffy's fist. Hodi couldn't even move Luffy an inch of where he was standing. That's not going to work on me, Luffy said as they both lowered their hands. Fishman karate. Ray used that against me in a week. I saw everything, its strengths and weakness. Hodi, if you can't match the skill that Ray had with it, then you can't hope to hurt me. You aren't at his level, and he had shoddy knowledge of it at best. He wasn't skilled enough in that area to battle someone like Jinbei who excels at it, although Ray is stronger than Jinbei in everything else. Luffy thought as he prepared for an attack slowly as possible. Luffy aimed his right fist, as a black obsidian color permeated his knuckles like a black ink, just a tiny bit portion. It was Luffy's quirk with armament. He rarely used it to cover limbs, and even rarely to cover his entire body. Instead, he made small applications of it that were hard to see and very difficult to control. The armament was also incredibly uneven, making it harder to maintain. He liked it this way. It made using armament more fun and challenging. He also hardly used the second level of armament that he discovered. It was just too strong to use it casually. Iron Shell Squad, Hodi yelled as Luffy aimed the attack. His soldiers came to his protection using iron shields or shells. Yet Luffy didn't stop the attack. Fool, you'll split open your fist on these shells. The men laughed behind cover. However, their laugh didn't last as the previous slow punch snapped like lightning and hit them with incredible force, so much so that their shields smashed and broke into a tiny million pieces. The metal produced such a horrible and loud sound that it completely muffled the screams of those behind the shields who were unfortunately impaled by the shards, making them bleed fiercely. However, that was not all. Their last view of their life, for those lucky enough not to be pierced in the eye by their own shields, was Luffy's fist coming straight at them with no sign of stopping. It reached flesh, organs, and bones, as it traveled without remorse as his enemies were ripped to mush. Their insides burned as the fist was so hot because of friction, vaporizing even blood along with it, as the blast wave was felt miles away. The so-called Iron Shield Squad was irreparably dead. The Iron Shield formation was destroyed in a single punch. The remaining outlaws said in shock. However, from the dust cloud created by the punch, Hodi emerged behind Luffy, intent on hitting him with a heavy kick to the face. However, he was blocked by Luffy's forearm. The little part where it was affected was covered in the black ink of armament. It wasn't to protect Luffy, instead it was to hurt Hodi even more. It worked as Hodi felt it even on his bones. Luffy, in a display of power, grabbed him by the right calf, clawing the muscles with his fingers and swinging the 15 feet Hodi around faster than the eye could follow, and then threw him against the same wall, completely collapsing it on top of Hodi. Luffy dropped the whole calf muscle that was clawed out with his grip. His right hand was red as the blood from Hodi dropped from his palm. XOX. All of the remaining soldiers were awed and humbled at the incredible physical strength and ease that Luffy had when dealing with their leader. This was the man worth 600 million in the eyes of the world government. My goodness, Luffy-sama is so terribly strong. Shuroshi put her fingers on her cheeks in a shocked expression. You are amazing, Straw Hat Luffy. So this is the power of these world-famous pirates. The public cheered on, being awed at the amount of power displayed. The pirates that were in awe were so caught in the battle that they missed the missiles coming in their direction, and with a boom most of them died, leaving only a few stragglers left. He is truly amazing, Ottoheim said after seeing what ludicrous physical prowess Luffy had. The sound of chains was heard as Ottoheim looked up, seeing the Noah. The ship had 3 large chains, each with a monstrous size. They fell towards the ground, dragging the earth with them, causing large-scale destruction across the landscape. The shadows cast by the ship reached the square, darkening it. Luffy looked up, clicking his tongue. Huh, what's that? The square got dark all of a sudden, the citizens said, and looked into the sky, their expression going from happy to shocked and fearful. The ship was already above the Fishman Island. It was already pressing hard on the bubble, trying to break it. To rip the bubble apart would cause tremendous damage to the kingdom. It would do irreversible damage not only to the structures, but to the ecosystem if water rushed in too quickly. Water pressure difference would make the surface of the island explode. What the? Isn't that Noah from the Fishman district? Why is Noah floating above Fishman Island? It's heading straight for the plaza. That ship could obliterate the entire kingdom. Who's actually moving it? No one. Noah has no means of moving itself, does it? XOX. Meaningless blabber reached Luffy's ears as he regrouped with his crew. What is that ship? Nami said, sweating a bit as she swung her staff, breaking the head of an unfortunate soul. Noah, Jinbei said, picking up a pirate by his shoulder and crushing the shoulder and lungs with one squeeze. Frankie Shogun, who stopped his rampage, approached them with big robotic steps. His auto-missile launchers and auto-cannons stopped firing. The golden hatch in the middle of the giant metal monstrosity opened and Frankie peered out from it. Chopper-san, what is that? Brooke said, swinging the blood off his cane sword. It's huge, Chopper exclaimed. I don't know what's going on, but if that thing hits us, we're doomed. We can't survive the water pressure like the Fishman can, Usopp said, screaming in fear. If it flattens us all, will the sea be dyed red with our blood? Robin said, not giving any emotion in her face. As always, the words that came from her mouth were pretty morbid. Luffy turned around to his crew and got into captain mode, putting orders out and discussing and reassuring everyone. While the heated discussion was going on, the citizens riled up even more. Everyone, evacuate. We must evacuate the island, a citizen said as the people started running for their life. Flee to the water outside the island. Luffy and Robin went back and forth as she nodded every once in a while. He also switched to Frankie and Nami, bringing the discussion to them. All of them smiled at him as the discussion ended. They believed in his words because of his charisma. He truly deserved his crew. Zoro looked towards the ship. A bleeding pirate raised himself from the ground and attacked his flank with a blade. Thinking Zoro was distracted, however, the master swordsman was never distracted. Not in battle. With a swing of his Sandai Kaitsu, it blocked the swing of the enemy's blade, cutting through metal and decapitating the fishman as the head shot off far, flipping in the air, giving the dying fishman a nice view of his body before the inevitable death a few seconds in. During this, Zoro never stopped looking at the ship. Sora stepped on an enemy's back, crushing the spine, lungs, and heart. Her ears picked up a scream and her eyes witnessed a body falling out of the sky. What is that? Shuroshi asked, looking at the sky. A body fell, screaming. The body screamed as it continued to fall. Something else is falling, a citizen said, looking back. Ichiwaga, the thing exclaimed as it fell headfirst into the plaza, spitting blood from both the mouth and nose, as its eyes bulged from the impact, causing a crater. It's you, Deken's subordinate, Wadatsumi, Zio, the last remaining survivor of the executives, said, if you didn't count Hayuzu the poisonous octopus. However, he wasn't even an executive, he was just a contracted mercenary. I slipped, Wadatsumi said, holding his massive head bruise. Captain Vander Deken, I fell down, went boom. Stop dashi at Piwias. The way that the creature spelt their language was a bit aggravating. The wrong spelling plus the nasal tone made it very hard to enjoy listening to the creature. Deken, everyone exclaimed. I don't want to die, Wadatsumi said, screaming to the ship. So that guy is still alive, being skewered by that queen's spear. I've got to commend his willingness to live, Luffy thought, remembering the fool Vander. His observation picked the man on top of the giant ship, but his observation told him that Vander was a lot stronger than before somehow. Perhaps he also has those pills, he thought. XOX, what is the meaning of this? Hodi asked. His voice boomed throughout the plaza. Captain Hodi, are you okay? Is this a new part of the plan? It looks like Deken is riding that ship, one of the few stragglers said. Shut your worthless mouths, Hodi said as his left hand destroyed the rubble on top of him. He tried to get up, however only his left leg moved. His right was paralyzed, he couldn't move it. First my right arm, now my right leg, Hodi thought as he saw that his calf muscles were completely removed. A giant wound that spurted more blood. He couldn't leave it that way. He popped more pills inside of his mouth. It was a stopgap for the bleeding. Damn that infernal straw hat. Huff huff, he said with wrath running through his veins. He dragged his useless leg with sheer power instead, yet he still was very disabled. That guy is made of tough stuff. He got up from 3 blows from me. Well, Luffy looked at the non-existent right arm. The huge purple mark on the skin of Hodi's abdomen, denoting a large internal bleeding, and finally a torn leg. Well, he might be tough, but he is on a death timer, Luffy thought. XOX, there is no way for you to be saved, Wadatsumi. Well, too bad. You should have slipped, you fool. You are going to join this kingdom in the biggest watery grave of the century. No, of the whole history. The ho-ho, Deken said over the den microphone. He was in the deck of Noah. On a bubble, his body seemed even more muscular. His hair was now completely white, and his whole eye, even the sclera, was red. His clothes were torn and bloody. He carried an axe full of blood 2 times his size as if it was nothing. His skin had seen better times. It was now completely covered in the corruption of the spear. As nodes and bubbles started popping out, he looked like a complete monstrosity. Now to finish off, Shuroshi, Deken said as he waited for the ship to completely smash the kingdom. That man, I dislike him so much, Ottoheim said. Holding her corrupted spear, she said with a frown unbefitting of her gentle face. All those years of isolation for her daughter, just because of this man's obsession. He said, Shuroshi. So he threw the ship as he threw those letters and weapons, Jinbei thought, closing his fist. XOX. A giant earthquake, blasts of wind and a sound like thunder invaded the plaza. As people were knocked out, it continued for 50 seconds until it stopped. What was that? Jinbei asked, as people panicked over what it seemed an explosion. So you come to me, Shuroshi, Deken said as he looked to the sky. Wait, where is Shuroshi? Jinbei asked. I'm right here, Shuroshi said, near the top of the bubble of the kingdom. The giant blast of wind came from her beating her tail to swim in the air. The earthquake came from her hitting her tail on the ground, completely destroying half of the plaza. Luffy looked at her physical prowess in awe. Truly a world destroyer. He had to work for his physical power, and she could do similar but weaker feats than him with just her sedentary strength. It was truly inspiring to see, and enforced that no living being is born equal. Shuroshi stood in front of the massive ship, threatening to burst the bubble, her hands outstretched and a determined look on her face. Princess Shuroshi. Princess. When did she? The citizen looked to where she were, and only a massive crater was there. Mermaid Princess, Brook said, surprised. Shuroshi, what are you doing up there? Nami asked, yelling at the skies. She was worried about the princess as everyone else. That ship is targeting her. I shouldn't have let her out of my sight. Jinbei said, to think she would be stronger than a giant warrior. I bet she never did training all her life, and to have this kind of strength since birth, she truly is a world destroyer. Those were Luffy's thoughts as he saw the crater she formed with one swing of her tail. Ottoheim just looked to the sky, worried. To think my beloved would come for me, Deken said with a crazy smile. Your target is my life alone, is it not? I cannot allow you to endanger the lives of the people of the kingdom. You can take my solitary life instead. I am right here, Shuroshi said, determined. Ottoheim couldn't hear any more. She tried to find a sponge so she could form a bubble and help her daughter. Princess, no, she's giving herself for our sake. Princess Shuroshi, is there no way we can help her? That's my Shuroshi, beautiful beyond compare in both body and mind. Your kindness is without limits. You would try to protect your own country by giving up your life. What a riveting story. Bahoho, Vander laughed. XOX. On the destroyed walls, Hodi raised himself, dragging his useless right leg. Crippled as he was, he wouldn't let his dream die so soon. He munched on another stack of pills, making his body grow 5 more inches. As he became even more stronger, so that crazed fool thinks he can destroy the entire island with us in it. He has betrayed our pack. The fool betrayed me, Hodi said, gritting his teeth. You will die, so your beauty may be immortalized forever, Vander said as he threw a knife with his right hand, aimed at the princess. It hit its mark as it nicked the skin out of Shuroshi's shoulder and drew blood. The knife didn't have sufficient hold as it could pierce deeper than the skin, so it flipped and fell to the ground. She cried in pain, tilting her head to the side. Even hurt, Shuroshi still looked like the most beautiful and graceful person in the world. How dare he hurt a woman? How dare he hurt Shuroshi-chan? Sora said with wrathful vengeance in mind. Princess, no is turning off course. It's going for Princess Shuroshi. Don't do it. Swim for your life, Princess. Hoshi-chan. I ordered you not wander off. Luffy's voice, ever calm, reached everyone's ear, in a commanding tone that made everyone flinch. Even Shuroshi, who was in the sky, flinched in fear. However, she continued to swim upwards, crying while ignoring the command made by Luffy-sama. So, she ignoring me, huh? How dare she? Well, I guess I must punish her once this is all over, Luffy thought with a frown as he saw the beautiful Shuroshi pass the bubble. He never even processed his possessive attitude. Captain Hodi. Hodi-san is gone. Look, up there. There he is, right underneath Noah. On the chains, Hodi held the chain with his left hand, as he only used one of his legs to climb and scale. The other was completely useless, only used as a balancing tool for him. In his back was his sharp red trident, now a bit small for his 20 feet size. That tough bastard is already there, huh? Luffy thought with a frown. You really did play me for a fool, Vander Deken. Huff huff, however, this gives the chance I need. Huff huff, Hodi said, scaling the ship as it went upwards, following Shuroshi. Ottoheim. finally found a sponge. Turning her scaly legs into a tail, she produced a bubble around her hips and swam to the top, following her daughter as fast as possible. Sora, who was pissed at the wound Deken gave Shuroshi, was preparing to go too. However, Luffy stopped her with a hand on her small shoulder. "Wait, Sora, I'll go. You guys take care of the stragglers," Luffy said. Sora looked at her captain. Sure. He could swim, even with 2 devil fruits in his body. However, he would still be weakened, and with here being 10 kilometers in depth, the pressure was too great. However, one look at her captain's stormy eyes, she gave off a smile. "I'm leaving dear sweet Shuroshi-chan in your hands, Luffy," Sora said, grinning at him. Luffy nodded. "Yeah, leave it to me." Luffy gave a toothy grin, showing a nostalgic side for her. Luffy made a weak jump at first to get a 20-foot vertical. Then he jumped again using the air as a foothold, using the same technique as the CP9. When he gained some altitude, he really kicked strongly, sending a blast of wind down. It was so strong the wind was white in color, as well as some circular sonic booms as he tried to reach the chains. XOX. Shuroshi swam faster. She passed the first bubble from the island. Popping the bubble on her hips, she cried in despair as she couldn't swim in the air anymore. However, she didn't give up. She flapped her tail again, imitating Luffy-sama and Sora-sama. The kick to the air was more than enough for her to continue going upwards and finally passing the second bubble into the wide sea. This was her natural habitat. She dominated the seas. Being a Sea King mermaid made her the fastest, the strongest for just being born. Nothing could compete with her in the sea. She flapped her tail, traversing 1 kilometer in just a few seconds, as the ship pointed upward to follow her. XOX. Luffy passed Hodi as he pushed the air as a foothold. Soon he passed the first bubble. He grabbed on a chain as he faced Hodi. The ship was going too fast. Soon they would be in the water. He needed to get rid of Hodi fast. However, with Shuroshi accelerating faster than he expected, soon they crossed to the sea. The pressure of 10,000 meters hit him like he was lifting 1,000 ships with a finger. That type of pressure. He did everything to hold on the chains. As Hodi came faster than Luffy gave him credit, swimming in the deep sea as fast as a cripple could, in a world dominated by the sea. A human like you who can't even breathe underwater, can never rule the ocean. You will beg for mercy, Straw Hat. Hodi faced Luffy, who was helpless in the deep sea. Luffy faced him, a hand holding the chains as the ship went upwards. He faced Hodi with his stormy eyes, full of repressed rage. XOX. Shirahoshi Behohoho. How does freedom taste, baby? No more shell tower walls to protect you. No longer they will protect you like they did for 10 years. Will you die being skewered first by my blades? Or will you die being crushed by the ship? What's it going to be? Vander said, drawing 10 daggers. These ones were special, made from a sharper metal. Shurahoshi's endurance might be high, but her skin and muscle won't be able to block these. He threw 5 daggers at her. I'll give you one last chance, Shuroshi. If you say yes, I can guarantee your life. Just marry me. Shuroshi. Deken yelled at her. Please forgive me, Deken-san. You are not my type, she said to his heartbreak. And I'm in love with someone else, Shuroshi said cutely, trying to hide her blush. Seeing her blush like this shattered his heart. The flap of her tail knocked the daggers off with water pressure, making him angry. He picked one of his axes and threw at her with all the remaining daggers at his disposal. However, Ottoheim arrived. Using her corrupted trident, she knocked them all off, blocking and breaking them. Don't think you can kill my daughter, Vander. This is the last time. I'll send you to hell personally, Ottoheim said, her eyes becoming steely as she prepared to face him. He chugged the final batch he had of the pills and started transforming into a bigger monster, reaching 17 feet. His skin became a deep purple, blending with the corruption. His sclere turned black as his iris turned white. Slit pupils became red in color as his clothes were completely ripped off. His teeth grew in size as all bullhead shark features disappeared. So the mother-in-law appears, Vander said, picking up another axe of his, preparing for a confrontation. You are mad. You only gave my family grief, Ottoheim said. HMPH, there is no need for grief. If only you'd let her marry me, Vander said. His voice was raspy. He had difficulty to talk now, however each word out of his mouth carried a heavy killing intent. You don't want to marry my daughter, you just want her power. Humans tried approaching her for her body, for her position, and for her beauty. However, you only want her for power, don't you? She said, her voice becoming emotional. Don't be so harsh on me, mother-in-law. I just love everything about her, he said with a sickly smirk. Ottoheim made a sad, stricken with grief face. Her tears joined the sea as she started. You don't know anything about her. You don't know her likes. You don't know her dislikes. You don't know her dreams and aspirations. You don't know anything. You don't love my daughter, you just want Poseidon. Vander said one word, echoing through the sea. It shut Ottoheim up. Her mouth quivered with emotion. He knows. Ottoheim thought with a shiver. I know what she is, my queen. My ancestors have searched for her all their life, and I have found her finally, to accomplish the dreams of your family. Such joy, he said with an open smile. True, I don't know anything about her. I don't know her likes. I don't know her dislikes. I don't know her dreams and aspirations. I don't know anything, however. He closed his smile and made the biggest smirk. You don't know anything about your daughter either. Isn't that true? Ottoheim. Vander hit on the sore spot. Ottoheim started weeping as her cascading tears mixed with the deep sea. Her sorrow was conveyed as her heart clenched. She needed desperately to fix her relationship with her daughter. She just wanted to return to those days where she would hold her baby daughter and shower her with love. However, both Vander Deken and Hodi Jones took everything from her. She would not let this go on any longer. Even with all your charisma, all your experience as a ruler, you just can't win against me at a discussion. I'm tired of seeing you weep. It's disgraceful. Come, enough talk. Now I have the power to beat you, Vander said as he prepared his weapons. Her tears finally came to a close. As her determined eyes opened, she faced him and unleashed her powerful haki. This wasn't to make him submit. It was just an expression that she would use her all in this fight. With this in mind, she faced the monstrosity who ruined part of her life. Ottoheim knew the monstrosity could not survive outside of the bubble on Noah's deck because of his devil powers. So she rushed to pop the bubble. However, before she could attack the bubble, Vander appeared on the other side as he jumped, almost instantaneously closing the gap. He raised his axe on the other side of the bubble barrier. The arm passed the bubble into the sea, dragging the axe in a crescent moon shape. She dodged it in the last instant, amazed at his speed. However, the strike cut her shoulder. She swiped horizontally at the same time of his strike instinctually. It was not a conscious move, it was muscle memory. The crescent moon strike was so fast, so strong, it created a water blade the shape of a crescent, traveling kilometers and kilometers. It even hit a sea beast on the way, cutting it in two, finally reaching the roots of the tree. However, the water blade barely nicked the continental-sized roots. Meanwhile, her attack, reactionary as it was, she wasn't expecting such speed from Vander at all. So her swing only grazed his chest. However, it reacted with the corruption, making it more like an ugly parasite across the skin. Both of them returned to their stances as Vander fell back, the hardwood of the ship supporting his foot strength. The reaction with the corruption was to cause untold amount of pain to the victim. However, to a monstrosity overdosing on a power drug, the pain couldn't even register in the nervous system. The monster had already passed the stage of feeling any pain. The power drug acted one last time, making his muscles bulge and grow even more. Nothing came out of Vander's mouth anymore. The drug overdose destroyed any sanity left. He was like an animal in waiting for the queen to make a move. XOX, thy straw hat, Hodi said, preparing a strike with his left hand. Luffy, holding his breath, thought of the possibilities. He right now was as weak as a tiny little termite. He could barely hold himself on the chains. Luffy activated his power over exponentials, boosting his strength, speed, endurance, all of his physical prowess by the power of 100. It was the hard limit with his bracelets on. He put a finger on his mouth and bit it to release his blood. He put the bloody thumb on the ruby on the first bracelet. The gem glowed as the sea stone bracelet unlocked into 4 pieces. The 4 pieces got separated faster than any living being could follow. Being pushed by an electrical discharge, slightly violet in color, the pieces traveled at the speed of lightning to all sides. One got thrown west, missing a sea beast by millimeters. One got thrown south, cutting a part of the chain. The other got thrown north, hitting a giant angler on its way. The other went straight for Hodi, piercing his left collarbone, making a giant hole in his shoulder. The power unleashed by unbinding Luffy's power for just the first bracelet made the ocean around him boil and form giant bubbles. It also made the pressure differ too much, making it whiplash right in Hodi's face. The captain of the new fisherman pirates got blown away severely. The pieces of his bracelet returned with the power of electromagnetism, linking the 4 parts together with the ruby in the center. The parts formed a giant circle behind his body. Not touching him, it formed a metal halo behind him, like he was a god in a painting depiction. Again, Luffy increased his power by using the fruit of exponentials, now over 1,000. However, this was to get back to his original land strength. He was too weakened on water as it was. Hodi returned with a vengeance. This time he swam with a blade attached to his fin. Luffy turned the chain to the side to make it easier to strike Hodi, but Hodi passed Luffy, going up towards the ship. Luffy tried to follow him, however Hodi cut the chains off at a higher point, making Luffy stuck. He tried to swim. However, his body wouldn't let him do anything at this pressure. Damn, he cut my way up the ship, Luffy thought angrily. He prepared his finger assault series. Crash bolt. He aimed to finish off Hodi. His observation told him where the fishman was, and a bolt of lightning traveled instantly. However, it couldn't hit Hodi. In fact, because of the water, the discharge spread out and it went off course, hitting the back of the ship, making a huge explosion on a tiny part of the continental-sized ship. It blew splinters of the hardwood as they burned underwater. Damn, it went off course, Luffy said, swimming in the superheated plasma exploding all around him. He sat stuck on a few hundred meters, top of the Ryugu Palace bubble. XOX, hand upwards. I must swim upwards, Shuroshi said as she continued to swim. Ottoheim huffed in pain as her body was filled with cuts and wounds, bleeding on the ocean. She looked at Vander. He too was filled with stab and cut wounds. Their battle had gone for more than a while now. She wasn't all that tired. Her body was just frail. She could continue this fight and win. However, before she could continue, an individual entered the deck. Entering the bubble, it was Hodi himself, brandishing a red trident. He was also riddled with wounds, and he had a terrible bleeding on the collarbone. Vander, Jaha. To think you would betray me, Hodi said, approaching him. Vander brandished his axe, preparing for another fight. What will happen to the ship once you are dead and gone? Well, Vander, Hodi said with a mocking expression. Vander roared. All sense of camaraderie and alliance was gone. It was time to face off. Soon they rushed, matching blow for blow as Ottoheim waited for an opportunity. There was no talking anymore. She was completely focused on killing them both. The infight was brutal. Hodi had carelessly made the mistake of letting Vander touch him with his left hand, so his body was riddled with piercing weapons. The area that Luffy originally kicked was cut by Vander's axe, showing a giant gash that spurted blood. The wound was so big organs and muscle cloud be seen. His right shoulder was bitten, with Vander's jaw still sticking there. Vander didn't go without serious wounds. His left arm was now gone. Bitten off by Hodi, same with 2 of his 6 legs. They were skewered and then bitten off like someone would in a shish kebab. He had 2 jaws from Hodi biting his shoulder and left side. 10 minutes later, the chance came when Hodi put his back to the bubble. Ottoheim, with a ludicrous swimming speed only beaten by her daughter, approached him from behind and skewered him on her trident, making him drop to the ground. As corruption sprouted from his back, Ottoheim looked at Vander, waiting for another attack from the man. However, the time finally came. The corruption was too much and he tumbled. The ship was already vertical, so Vander fell towards one of the giant doors in the deck, getting thrown in one of the many stairs in the back, and his body laid on a room. Hodi looked down to the fallen Deken as the ship started to descend. You're the one who betrayed me first, Deken. When I saw the ship cover the sky, I felt terrified. Jaha, that's it, die Deken. With you gone, your power will die with you. The ship now is above the kingdom. The island will perish, but those in the Fishman district will remain. Hodi didn't realize then that there are no living fishmen left in the Fishman district. It was completely wiped out by Deken himself. He didn't know that trying to drop the ship on the kingdom would completely annihilate the merman and fishman population, with the only remaining members being slaves and Marigois and pirates above the sea. This ship will once more plummet down towards the island, destroying every trader in it. This is perfect. I can get rid of all the straw hats right here. My remaining subordinates might die, but I can get as many slaves as I want afterwards. Hodi felt his body a bit sluggish because of the damn poison Ottoheim put on him, so he felt some difficulty getting up. The fact that he missed his right arm and had a useless right leg also didn't help. Damn, that bitch fight cowardly like this. With poison, she'll regret this, Hodi thought, gritting his teeth and frowning. He glared at the queen. She was sitting there smugly holding the trident with that understanding smile she always had. She didn't understand shit. She didn't understand their plight. She tried to break the racism with weak plans full of naivety. Don't smile at me like that, you whore. You don't know anything. You think some pretty words are going to cure our plight. Humans will never accept us. You opening your legs for the straw hat will not change anything, Hodi said as he prepared to rush her in the open sea. His dorsal fin equipped with a blade was ready and willing to cut anything. Ottoheim focused on him. She would ask something she already had the answer to. What are you? You're perpetuating this vengeance against humans and the wrath of fishmen, and you are taking it all out on my kingdom. You had planned to take over my kingdom and rule over it, but now you only seek the destruction. You want to erase it from existence. You are throwing away all the lives of your comrades from Fishman District, people you grew up with, people who are your friends. Ottoheim shed a tear. You hate humans more than anyone else. However, your overwhelming rage, where will it lead you? What happened in the past? What did humans ever do to you? What happened for you to be this way? Nothing, Hodi responded. And like 2 peas in a pod, Ottoheim and Shuroshi started crying. They were truly mother and daughter. They wept in pity for him. Ottoheim now fully understood him. She couldn't help but understand. We need to create a world with understanding. If we cannot understand each other, there will be no peace, only eternal suffering, Ottoheim said, smiling at him. A benevolent one. Stop being stupid, bitch. Only by showing how much we suffered, only by reciprocating our pain will they understand what we've gone through. Only when their leaders feel the chain around their necks will they understand about our suffering for 800 years. The age of pirates. Those bastards only came here to kidnap our women and children. Yet you can't keep your mouth out of Monkey D. Luffy's cock, can't you? You praise him like he is a god who's going to save you. Yet he is selfish like all humans. He will never save your pathetic people even if you beg when you spread your legs like an obedient bitch, Hodi said, degrading her and putting down all of her views. Hodi Jones, I understand you very well. There are many who shared your view, yet they were as fervent as you were. So let me ask you something, can you understand me as well as I understand you? Ottoheim asked, shrugging of his degrading words. Understanding. I can't help but understand. I understand everything about you, Queen Ottoheim. Jahaha. For example, the two Ryugu brothers you were promised to. One shared your views, one was the war hawk. You were fiancé to both of them, yet one died, and the other was your husband for a long time. Yet you didn't really love them with all your heart, did you? Something was missing from both of them, since you sought peace for your people since your birth, didn't you? Hodi continued as Ottoheim remembered both past lovers. Something was always missing from them. The older brother would never gain support from the people, he was too flimsy. The younger was a charismatic warrior who would never truly support your dreams and walk together with you. Am I not right? Hodi said with a smirk. You never loved them. You only cared for them. You resented Neptune deep down for not supporting your dream besides you, didn't you? He always stood in the backseat, like a lazy king. I understand your view very well, Ottoheim. I understand everything about you. That's why I hate you. I hate all things about you. We shall never see each other eye to eye. Ottohime. Hodi charged with his red trident now in hand. I see. Ottoheim truly lamented this. Two opponents who understood each other so much. However, their views were so polar opposites that they couldn't stand each other. They couldn't help but hate the other with all their might, because they understood each other's view. They couldn't be swayed, wouldn't stray from the path they'd chosen. No pretty words would stop them now. I truly am sorrowful. However, I shall protect my kingdom, my daughter and sons. In my dream, Ottoheim said as she charged. Both closed the distance and encountered in the middle of the sea. Both struck, with their respective tridents. One blocked the other as the underwater war of ideologies started. This time not with words, but with their actions and powers. XOX. Beware, the creature cried and cried, left on the plaza to die. Captain Vander Deken Shama left me here alone. The voice was so nasal, and the mispronunciation grated Sora's nerves. Hey, large bald head monster, you must have misheard your master. This is what Vander Deken said. Take care of the plaza for me, Zio said, masterfully manipulating the creature to his whims. Is that true? Yumabazu asked. Of course it is. Now hurry and swallow this. Zio threw a pill at the monster's mouth. It made an instant effect as its skin darkened and his sclera turned red. Wuarg, Yumabazu roared, as his strength multiplied several times. Its angry eyes squared over to any enemy it could find. It found Jinbei. Da many over Dara. It clenched its fist. It aimed for Jinbei and the giant fist descended, waiting to kill Jinbei. Watch out, Jinbei, Nami said, worrying for her new friend Jinbei. Jinbei blocked the attack with a left roundhouse kick. Using the fishman karate, the impact trembled inside of the Yumabazu body, making it fly away and hit a wall. Wadatsumi lay down on his head. With another giant bruise, the pill's effects disappeared from his body. The creature cried as the pain computed. The wind blast of the creature crashing down made Nami lose her footing and fall. Nami-chan, Sora called her in worry. And in an instant, she supported Nami before she could fall on her ass. Sorry, Sora-chan, Nami said, smiling towards her. However, Sora's hands were in inappropriate places. One was slid down her jeans, the other hand was inside her bikini. Sora noticed her actions and smirked. However, one need and one moan pushed Nami to the edge of irritation. She took off from Sora's grasp. Fixing her bikini, she pushed Sora's cheek as punishment. Sora-chan, you shouldn't do that in public, you know. Actually, don't do that ever. Understand? But Nami-chan, you liked it, didn't you? Of course not. Nami pinched harder. But if it were Luffy, would you like it? Sora asked with a scheming smirk. Nami squinted her eyes to show her irritation. However, the massive blush from ear to ear did nothing to hide her thoughts. I knew it. Luffy could fuck you anywhere and you'd like it, Sora said with a smug smile. Nami was shocked for a few seconds but gave a smug smile back. I bet you want him to fuck you, and you are just hiding your sexuality, Sora-chan. And no, I am born for women. I am a tool of pleasure for all women in the whole wide world, Sora boasted. No, I am not doubting that you like women, Sora. But perhaps you are hiding that you are bi. Perhaps being turned to a woman made your hormones haywire, don't you think? Nami teased. Not. I don't like men at all. Sora denied it with exaggerated motions. Her blush increased. Are you telling the truth? Nami tilted her head in a smug expression. No, anyway. This is not the time. First, Sora said, walking towards the Yumabazu. Passing Nami, Sora gazed at the fallen Yumabazu. Fury untold burned within her. She kicked the ground and vanished. She appeared on top of Wadatsumi as she glared down on the crying creature. Biwa, I can't fight the fishy shark guy, the creature whined. Sora stayed silent on top of the creature's cheek. Who are you? Are you enemy? Wadatsumi asked. As I thought you're a child, huh? You should be here, Sora said. Her compassionate side appearing. Was it? The creature asked. Despite your size, you are still not even an old child. Tell me. When were you born? 4 years ago, Wadatsumi. He's too young. We can't kill a child, Sora thought. Her blue eyes looked to the creature in kindness. The creature was big and hairy. But that was just his species. The creature was dumb, but that was because of age and lack of education. So Sora wanted to resolve this issue. And except for that guy Hodi and the giant kraken, this kid was the strongest thing here. Sigh. I feel a bit of a giant slayer. I only fought big things today. She referenced her one-sided slaughter of the kraken. And now this kid, she thought as she walked towards his forehead, evading his fist without difficulty. It was too winded up, and nothing would pass her observation anyway. She reached his forehead and stomped down with her left foot. Concussor, Sora murmured softly, finishing her attack on the Yumabazu, giving him a strong concussion and putting him in a coma that would last for a week. Wadatsumi's head hit the ground, and he passed out. His arms fell and it cracked the ground. His eyes turned into swirls as he entered a coma. Sora jumped off Wadatsumi and walked past Zoro. Why didn't you kill him? Zoro asked. He is just a child. Sora responded. You are too soft. Zoro responded, cutting another enemy down. Well, sorry for not being as bloodthirsty as you are. You talk tough, but you would never kill a child either, Mosshead, Sora said with a bit of bite. Zoro didn't respond to the accusation. It was true, and he couldn't respond to that. Sora gave off a smug smile, and I feel like our captain would also choose not to kill a child either. None of us are that cold-hearted, she said looking at the sky. HMPH, Zoro mocked her. Don't you HMPH me, Mosshead. Want me to kick your ass to Kingdom Come? Whatever, shitty cook, Zoro said, not looking at her anymore, and clicking his tongue in annoyance. You are going to regret this, Sora said. Bring it on, both said at the same time. However, Frankie's voice returned them to normal. It was no time for disputes. XOX, Hayuzu. The 8-tentacled swordsman started slicing like crazy. His blades cut through a group of his own allies, drawing their blood and their death. The blades hit stone, corals, and other things. The man rampaged like never before. His comrades cried at him for betraying them, however Hayuzu did not care. He only smiled, his red skin hiding his drunkenness. He hiccuped and burped out loud. His body was almost jelly-like, denoting his traits as being an octopus merman. On his rampaging path was Robin. She used her ability to break the necks of another group. She looked at the octopus merman coming ever so closer to her. Her face was blank, however her hidden bloodlust spiked. It was a strong opponent conveniently coming towards her only to be killed. You will be my next. I just want to slice people. Hick, he said as he winded his blades. Robin looked disinterested. She crossed her arms in the usual position to activate her power. Flower petals encircled him as 2 robins sprouted, one from the back and one in the front. The one from behind grabbed his mouth, putting her fingers and blocking the teeth. The second robin, the one in the front, put her sharp fingers under his jaw, pressing his skin. He tried to swipe his blades, however arms sprouted from both Robin's shoulders. They grabbed his arms and tentacles. More limbs sprouted to impede his every move. From behind, 2 hands flexed the index and middle finger. She then clawed both eyes from him, making moist sounds. Red globs of blood filled the empty sockets as he started crying blood. Crimson liquid spurted from his face. He screamed in agony, releasing venom from his body. Yet to no effect, it needed to enter the bloodstream of the enemy to affect them. Limbs pulled the gauze off his chest, seeing the wound that Luffy gave him earlier. and as an almost literal salt to the wound, the limbs excavated their fingers in the stomach wound, opening it up in such a big way. 2 arms pushed the wound open as 2 more arms entered his body from the large wound, digging through his organs, making sadistic squishy sounds. The hands grabbing his mouth pushed the jaw down with so much force, so the fingers pressed on the underside pierced the skin and entered the mouth, pressing the tongue to the roof. Another set of hands from the front started clawing his throat. Another from the back started clawing the side of his neck. He screamed in pain and thrashed around to no effect. Even ramming himself into the ground didn't affect the Robin clones. They just smiled at him full of blood. As the slow clawing of his throat and the piercing of his tongue continued, he coughed blood. As more and more limbs grappled his joints, cracking one at a time, 5 hands pulled, and finally removed 1 tentacle from its socket. It was like losing a leg as it spurted blood like a geyser on the ground. Both grappled him again as the extra limbs continued their slow, methodical work of removing his throat and tongue out. The Robin from behind finally reached the carotid artery, puncturing it with her nails. More moist blood covered both. As they finally cut off his tongue, it was an arduous process. The fishman Hayuzu was almost dead now. Just a little push. With both her hands, the front Robin pushed his neck. Robin from the back pulled his neck towards her. The strength and pressure put by both Robins made the last disc of the cervical curve give and split out of its socket, paralyzing Hayuzu's whole body. He couldn't breathe. His heart had stopped and he uncontrollably bled from the carved neck, jaw and stomach. He keeled over like a dead fish. The last sliver of life gone. He couldn't even swing a single strike against her. All of his limbs remained immobilized. Both Robins, full of blood, dissolved into a storm pink flower petals, stained by blood. The storm calmed down and in the distance revealed the original Robin, pristine and with no blood or other gunk staining her like her clones had. She just gave a short smile as her bloodlust was sated. XOX, oi. There are some groups of pirates escaping the plaza, shouldn't we go after them? Frankie asked. Oh no, they are going to attack the civilians, Chopper cried in worry. The Straw Hats started worrying about it as Luffy warned about how an army can still cause untold damage even if they were on the losing side. Groups of pirates rushed out of the plaza, reaching the civilians who were evacuating. Hey, why aren't you doing anything, Zoro? Sora, Nami asked them, yelling. Zoro didn't respond to her. He just sheathed his sword. Sora, can't you do something? Nami asked. Zoro, do something. Chopper pulled on Zoro's leg. However, he was unmoving. Jinbei, Nami asked. However, the honored fishman just stared at the entrance to the plaza, without any emotion passing on his face. Nami rushed to Sora and grabbed her small shoulders. Sora, do something please. She begged her to do something, however Sora just petted her hair. No, Nami-chan. It seems we don't need to do anything, because, Sora responded with a smile. The mermaid ran. She ran, seeking to get out of the island. The people had finally scaled down the walls of the plaza where they viewed the amazing show that the Straw Hats had put. Seeing them defeating the villains made her very happy. When the pirate age began, countless pirates arrived in droves on her island, always looking to enter the new world in search for the One Piece. However, in their mindless cruelty, they started to hunt their race for enslavement and profit. Her own mother was brutally assaulted and enslaved. She was only 6 years old at the time. My wealth and treasures. If you want it, I'll let you have it. Look for it. I left all of it at that place, a man with a curved mustache said, before being executed with a smile. Those words spelt doom for her people. To be honest, she hated the man who spoke those words. Gall D. Roger. He brought misfortune towards her race. The terrible, terrible slave trade. They were only saved when Whitebeard came and claimed their kingdom as his territory. It stopped most people. However, the slave trade still happened from behind the curtain, with mermaids and some fishmen disappearing without a trace. Those cases were rare, only happening occasionally. However, their queen always tried to find the culprits. Having such a driven queen had saved more than thousands of lives from unfortunate slavery. Queen Ottoheim. She always asked for help. She always asked Whitebeard to help her find those missing people. However, the pirates were always ineffective, often giving faulty information and looking where they wouldn't be found. Most of Whitebeard's crew was uncooperative. The man himself. Whitebeard tried and tried. However, it wasn't enough. He knew most of the bulk of his crew didn't care for them, but he tried. In the end, it was the cooperation between the Sun Pirates and Ottoheim, as well as Neptune's army, that got the job done, saving victims of their race. However, if they just had an effective cooperation with Whitebeard, she felt it would have saved more lives from slavery. There are still thousands missing, never to be found. Queen Ottoheim cried and cried for those who she couldn't find, blaming herself. For the world above them was vast, and the trade would continue no matter how hard she tried to stop it. The mermaid started huffing as she lost most of her stamina swimming in the air, carrying her child in her bosom. She looked up at the shadow approaching the island. Doom fell upon her race once again. She thought of the Straw Hats again as she stopped walking. She didn't exactly trust them. They were humans, however. She trusted Monkey D. Luffy, as Madame Charlie and Queen Ottoheim said. He was their savior. And he was not a human. He wasn't a human, so she could trust him with their future. He was a god, not a human or fishman or any other race, so he would never discriminate between them. That's why she believed in him. Get out of the way. If you don't, I'll kill ya, a pirate said as he approached from behind, running with a sword. A group of outlaws behind him as he led them. She turned around with a frightful face. She crouched, holding her baby protectively. XOX. They abandoned their mission. Killing the Straw Hats was impossible. Their comrades, the people they grew up with, were either permanently damaged or dead by their hands. The pirates couldn't cry now. They needed to escape. Hodi had left them down here to die. Deken betrayed them by trying to destroy the island with them in it. Like hell they would stay down here just to die. However, the whole population of the Ryugu kingdom tried to evacuate. They had nowhere to run, it was just too crowded. They needed to make a route towards the exit, and if they had to kill people to make that route, they would. A merman with a suit stood over and embraced the mermaid. The man glared at them. It was probably the husband protecting the wife and child. It wasn't like they wanted to kill a woman and a child they had to live. It couldn't be helped. Get out of the way. The pirate had winded down the sword, ready for a slash. However, before he could strike, he was hit in the face by a giant fist holding a golden trident. The pirate flew over several meters before crashing to the ground behind the group of pirates running. They stopped in shock as various silhouettes encircled the remaining pirates. They revealed themselves. TT was Fukuboshi, the crown prince, bruised and blood yet holding strong, as his dignified atmosphere washed over them. By his side were his brothers, and behind him was the Neptune army, full of determined soldiers. Beaten and weak, however, their eyes had a flame that would be extinguished. Two people walked close to the crown prince, each arriving by his side. They revealed to be the ministers of the right and the left. Arrest all of them. Do not let any escape. Arrest all outlaws that were defeated at the plaza. Minister of the left, get some soldiers and give order back to the people. Make an orderly evacuation so no one gets hurt. Minister of the right, I'll leave the command to the bubble turret to you. We need to stop the ship at all costs. Now men, carry your orders. Fukuboshi ordered them out. Like a true general, he put them in charge of stopping this terrible crisis. His speeches gave morale towards the soldiers that the minister of the right could never give. He truly was fitted to be their commander. Yes, Your Highness. They responded as the majority of the soldiers pressed forward to defeat the tiny pockets of resistance. The minister of the left picked the best soldiers and went to organize the population. Stomping and suffocation were serious threats. In a panic, they needed order in the evacuation so there wouldn't be any victims. The minister of the right went to the rooftop of a building to communicate better with the soldiers who were in the turret so they could stop the ship. A giant bubble would do. XOX. Luffy was stuck in the bottom of the sea. Above the palace, Bubble thought hard on a power that would make him move in these extreme depths. However, before he could apply the new power to the test, the ship arrived right in his face. It was falling too rapidly for his taste. He blew bubbles with his mouth as his lungs could sustain him here for more time than he could care to count. He put both hands on the floor of the ship, pressing his hands so hard the wood splintered a tiny hair of wood. Wow, to think my full force can't even crush the ship. What is this wood made out of? Well, no use to thinking about that now. I need more strength. I feel too weak underwater. More. Wait, should I really be increasing the value of the fruit of exponentials? If I surpass the limits, won't it affect my fruit of God too? Luffy barely trained with the fruit of exponentials because increasing its strengths was just too dangerous for the world. However, after seeing the strength the new world had, and the threat this insignificant guy called Hodi posed, he gave up on his fears of increasing his power over exponentials. The ship started pressing against Luffy's hand as it fell. Damn, this thing is so heavy. Luffy's muscles strained. His muscles started to be more and more defined as Luffy competed with the strength of the ship. It weighed more than 800 million tons. He gathered. Is it because of its size, or the material used? Man, this weighs more than a mountain. I guess I should increase my strength. Luffy increased his physical brawn with the power over exponentials to over 2,000. The ship became easier to hold. Its descent started slowing down. 35-31. TCH. So this is the limit right now. Damn, still not enough. If I was on land, with a push of my hand the world would implode at this point. But water really brings down my powers. I can barely feel stronger. Perhaps only twice as strong? Damn. 4670. By sheer willpower he increased the limit by so much as he tried to stop the ship. His hands carved into the hardwood. He began feeling tired. He should have been increasing his limits so abruptly. However, it was a necessity. 5431, 6791, 8309. Hee. Damn. At this point it would be strange to say I could destroy the solar system with a flicker. Just by moving I might fuse atoms, bringing them to ludicrous temperatures and creating black holes as I walk. But here, surrounded by water, I only feel thrice as strong. I feel kind of cheated. Luffy couldn't bring himself to raise his limits any longer. He was too tired. He only hoped his powers over exponentials would not have such a terrible effect on his powers over God. It would be disastrous if a light electrical discharge had the power of the sun behind it. He pressed again as the ship came to a complete halt. He beat his legs to support his body in his position. He blew another bubble as he thought of what to do next. Should I destroy this thing? No, my attack might hit Ottoheim-chan and Hoshi-chan up there. Luffy turned to the side, his observation picking merman life on a turret far away. He blew bubbles as he thought of a new plan. He smiled. XOX. Because cavalry has arrived. Finally Sora smiled as she saw the army combat the threat and organize the populace. It seemed that the threat down here was finally over. The Straw Hats were grouped near the ship as a friendly discussion started. They just watched the soldiers go to business, arresting the people they defeated and carrying the bodies to two different floating ships. "Oh, Brook, you're back," Chopper said. "Hi, Chopper-san. I was just dealing with a troublesome enemy," Brook said, sheathing his cane blade. Brook remembered the invisible purple guy he had to fight. The man thought invisibility would mean victory. Guess he hadn't thought that the cold wind surrounding Brook could reveal his silhouette. Zio, prideful as ever, died from a vertical cut, freezing his entire body. The frostbite spread through the whole body, turning tissue darker and darker. The gravity did the rest, cracking the ice that was his body. Chunks of his cheeks split off from his body, crashing to the ground. The head fell off next. The neck couldn't hold its weight, just like a stone statue. The head fell off first. Then the arms by the shoulder, then the legs couldn't hold the weight of the torso any longer, and the man called Zio crashed to the ground into little frozen pieces. "Yeah. A bit of trouble," Yohoho Brook said with a quieter laughter. "Ma. I guess he couldn't handle the coldness of death," Brook thought. XOX. Their bout continued for more than 10 minutes. Hodi tried to gain ground and slash her in the chest with his blade fin or red spear. However, the sheer speed displayed by Ottoheim and the skill she had with her trident really helped ward him off. Both were not gaining ground with their incredible attacks. Even after all the stab wounds she gave Hodi, he still came back for more. He didn't feel pain anymore, which was unfortunate since her spear caused a time death and incredible, debilitating and stunning pain. If it was a normal human or any other species that felt pain, they would be able to even move after the first stab of her corrupted spear. It was really that painful. But this man let harmless stabs in non-dangerous areas and completely blocked stabs and slashes in critical areas. His method of fighting was reckless, so reckless he felt invincible. That's what probably was passing through his mind. She couldn't relent her defense because there were too many instances of him trying to pass her and try to kill Shuroshi, who was standing behind her. However, one moment of carelessness for her gave her a wound she disliked. Hodi bit her tail near her thighs. If she was a human, she stabbed him in the shoulder, and he released her. However, the jaws still stuck on her tail. She removed it with the butt end of her trident and threw it at him. Her body warned her of unbearable pain. However, her body still functioned like the wound wasn't there, like she wasn't losing a ton of blood on the sea. "I need to finish this somehow," Ottoheim thought with a grimace. Hodi held his shoulder wound to stop the blood. Both of his shoulders were now busted. One even had a collarbone missing, courtesy of Luffy's bracelet blowing a hole in it. Hodi fished another batch of pills. His stack was now very diminished. He had at least 3 more helpings of it. However, he didn't care. He popped them in his mouth. He laughed as he transformed again. His skin paled even further as his body increased its mass significantly. His bones elongated and his muscles bulged. His back hunched over as his arms became bigger than pillars. His hands were almost the size of her deceased husband. His eyes, which were previously narrow, became round as the sclere turned to a wine color and the white pupil became a poisonous green. His hairline receded as his forehead grew in size. In fact, his whole head grew with him. His jaw became a mess, his lips bulged and turned a sickly purple. His mouth opened became more and more like a lamprey as his teeth became even sharper. He was now almost reaching 30 feet in height. She needed to finish this fast. Hodi came with his all. As a cripple could, she blocked his trident with her own. Immediately transformed her tail into legs. Applied armament to it and kicked him in the chest. Both traveled towards the ship's deck, passing through the bubble. Hodi's body rolled and bounced off the hard wooden floor. He was about to fall because of the verticality. However, he plunged his hand down and grabbed the hard wooden floor. Ottoheim stood on her feet slightly angled, applying the force towards the floor. However, the splinters that broke off pierced her feet. Hodi smiled at her. He made a nodding motion. It was enough force to curve the blade fin behind him, causing a crescent wind blade that spanned across the top of the ship. The crescent blade hit the bubble, forcing it to pop. As water rushed and it caught her leg off balance. A problem that Hodi didn't have as they became submerged once again. She tried transforming her leg into a tail, however Hodi closed the distance and head-butted her. She blocked it with the hilt of the trident, however she still affected by the force, knocking her back and forming bruises on her forearms due to the power behind it. Blood seeped from the wounds in her arm as she trembled to get her balance back. Your feet are weaker underwater than your tail. You gambled on fighting me on the deck of the ship where there was a giant bubble. But newsflash. We are creatures of the sea, my queen, he said, mocking her. To think you wanted me to fight like those humans. He said the word with such contempt that she physically cringed. I won't let you use your tail anymore. You are finally done for. You little whore, Jahaha. Ottoheim could do nothing but show a bit of fear in her eyes. This person wasn't the same as he was a few seconds ago. He was so much stronger and so much scarier. Her trembling eyes focused on his green, sharp pupils. The whole seafloor now felt his killing intent. His hatred, his drive, and his will for revenge. She brandished her spear nervously. Her eyes regained courage. Her armament haki started pouring on the trident, turning the purple corrupted monstrosity into a blacker, much more scarier spear. Dozens of black tendrils and tentacles surged forward, slithering around in her spear. Her blue eyes became more and more focused. Her perception increased as her body pumped more and more adrenaline. It was time for her final fight. XOX. Vander opened his black eyes. He crawled in a lower room of the continental ship. He could still move. He wouldn't die so easily. Ottoheim might have thought that she won, but he would never give up. He crawled and crawled until he reached two of his special-made axes. Ones that would actually hurt Shuroshi and kill her. He touched them with his right hand, passing all of his malice and hatred, all of his obsession and ambition of his family into those axes. The drive was so intense, and the power behind him given by the pill was such that the axes turned into a pure black, accidentally giving those weapons armament haki, a thing he never used or trained in. It was a product of fate, or perhaps coincidence. Vander could only smirk maniacally. She ho she he said after regaining what little sanity he had. The power drug clouding his mind gave a bit of breathing room. As the weapons floated because of his power, aimed at the princess, he laughed. It was time to end her life. As Luffy continued to deal with the massive continental ship falling, Ottoheim was struggling against Hodi in her battle. The power drug was a marvelous product that could increase tenfold the power of the fishmen that used it, and Hodi had consumed piles of it by this point. He should have been dead but was moving by will alone. In another section, the injured Vander Deken was mounting his final attack towards the princess. And now, Ottoheim blocked another attack. Hodi didn't give her enough time to transform her feet back into a tail. He returned, gathering a bit of distance, and swam, closing the distance. Yet he was aiming for Shuroshi. Ottoheim cut his path and slashed his abdomen in half, making his internal bleeding escape from his stomach. The monster tried to pierce her with his own trident. She dodged. However, in the process she was punched hard in the neck. Both fell, floating underwater as Ottoheim moved her neck. It was a terrible dark bruise. She cried, making bubbles in the water. Her hands reached her neck and started scratching the bruise reflexively, making her scream in pain. Mom, Shuroshi cried out. She tried to go help her. However, she was stopped by her mom's voice. Don't come near, Shuroshi. He's still alive. Ottoheim stopped the scratching and stopped screaming. However, her tears still flew out of her eyes. It was unbelievably painful. Shuroshi felt useless. The ship was falling, and she couldn't help anybody. She was just a burden to her mother as she defended her from Jones. Damn, huff huff, ew. Hodi managed to sport himself. He held his stomach as water rushed into the wounds. His head was now bleeding, courtesy of the rubble he had on his body earlier when he fought Luffy. He grasped his red trident strongly this time. He gazed at the black trident being held by Ottoheim, full of corrupted tentacles. If he wanted to kill the most troublesome person for his plans, Shuroshi, then he needed to kill Ottoheim first. However, she was very stubborn, and even after having eaten so many power pills, she still equaled him in power. In the recess of his insane mind, Hodi rejoiced that they had the vision to steal and mass-produce the pills, because if he were his normal self, then he couldn't beat Ottoheim or the Straw Hat. These pills gave him a path to match up to the power they had. Hodi roared and charged, his mouth opened like a lamprey as she focused on him. However, this time he cartwheeled using the blade fin as a weapon, was able to finally parry her spear. However, the tentacles on her weapon were free to stab him and send even more corruption down his body. He went for a kick, yet she met him with one as well. However, hers were coated in a metallic substance that he'd seen the Straw Hat use. Die. Why don't you drop down and die? It's for the future of your people, you bitch. I am the provider of guidance and benevolence for my people. I cannot die here. I have to guide them towards a better future, one without hatred. Both clashed their opinions again as Ottoheim managed to push the hulking monster back. She rushed him and hit his head with the handle of the spear. She went to slash his throat out, yet he managed to block the trident with his pillar-thick forearms. He roared right in her face and went to bite off her head, yet she flipped and hit him with a coated uppercut with her leg instead of her punch. It concussed him and she went for a kick drop right into his chest, collapsing his left lung and ribs. The kick with both legs dragged both bodies into the Ark of Promise. Noah, in a flurry of bubbles. XOX, 20 years ago. Noah's mission. Neptune's voice resounded in the throne room. Ottoheim asked her husband what the purpose of the ship was. She was a bratty 12-year-old. In her hands was a giant bundle. It was her first son. Ottoheim had short golden hair, a frowny face, a small body, and rebel blue eyes. She wore trendy clothes instead of the more expensive ones she was supposed to wear. Yes, she was the definition of bratty. Listen well. The Ark is no mere historical monument. It sits on the floor of the ocean, waiting to fulfill a promise. I don't know what that promise might be, however. I know that it was made by a great man in the past. Great man? Ottoheim asked, confused. I don't know the full story since I wasn't paying much attention back then. It was a mystery passed down from generation to generation in the royal family of Ryugu. It was a mystery perhaps more fantastic than Poseidon. But Ottoheim already knew the story of Poseidon intimately. It was a ship that had yet to fulfill its purpose. Even the methods of constructing it were long lost. And because of its massive importance to the world, Noah was to be protected by the royal family for generations upon generations of kings and queens, and the Ark could not be harmed until it one day fulfills its promise. Ottoheim looked down at her son. She cooed as Fukuboshi tried to reach her with his pudgy cute hands, an action contrasting her rebellious nature, which made Neptune chuckle in his mind. That story, it needs to be passed down. If I cannot do it, then you must bear the responsibility to teach our future children. My wife. We shall see. Neptune. She dismissed herself from the room without her husband's permission. Neptune sighed. Putting up with her attitude at her age was tiresome. XOX. Present time. Come in, hurry. 3 men, soldiers of Neptune's army, proudly named in memory of their greatest general and king, entered the cramped bunker outside of the kingdom, near one of the roots of the mangrove. They started the engines to produce a bubble big enough to envelop the ship and hopefully stop the massive ship. We will shoot out all the air in the tank into a bubble, quick. They started using the complicated panels as fast as they could. As a bubble formed in the cannon turret, it was rapidly filled with air from the reservoir. It needs to be big so it can envelop Noah, a man said, opening the valves on the upper layer. Damn, the bubble has no buoyancy here, another man said. Looking at the display, he put his hands on the handle to control the aim of the turret. The air could not lift Noah. The ship would continue falling down, but it wasn't causing despair yet. But it will slow down the ship a lot, the man controlling the target said. So, we can't do anything but believe the Straw Hat and our queen. Yes, we must follow our orders. The Crown Prince put his faith in us. Monkey D. Luffy, Fishman Island is in your hands. All of them screamed Luffy's name, and the 3 grasped the handle and aimed with their hearts at the ship. XOX. A few minutes earlier on the forest of the sea, all the whales and fish are fleeing from the forest, a muscular merman said. He had long, curly fair hair reaching down below his shoulders, with a long and hooked nose points downward, a mustache and a dark, long, pointed goatee complemented his face. He had tattoos resembling four-leaf clovers on each of his arms. He also wore a wide-brimmed hat on his head and safety goggles on his face. He has an earring on each of his ears and a beaded necklace around his neck. Much like his brother, Tom, he carried around a bag full of tools attached to a belt around his waist. Just below it is tied a light cloth, somewhat similar to an apron. This was Den, Tom's brother. He was working with Frankie to coat the ship again, but they had to leave due to a threat. He crossed his arms. This is serious. Something must have happened to the island. Den commented with worry in his voice. Nayu, if it were a fair fight, Jinbei and the others would waste them. But Hodi won't let that stop him. What do you mean? Kami asked. It concerns what old Captain Tiger said in his final moments. Hatcheye started speaking. XOX. The Straw Hats all sat on the ship. As they watched the soldiers wrap up the confusion in the plaza, they carried off thousands of resigned criminals to the flying ships. Now we only gotta wait for Luffy to wrap things up, Usopp stated, pulling a card from the deck. Yeah, Nami said, her eyes sparkling as she smelled triumph on the game. The group played a card game while waiting. Of course, betting on money, after all. They were pirates, and of course, the only one to actually win and rack up debts from her crewmates was Nami herself. Sora and Chopper, as well as Robin, didn't participate. They just watched as Sora served up desserts for all the women. Zoro nonchalantly asked for his sake and Sora just yelled at his face to get it himself. They continued to laze about, anticipating their captain to return. XOX, Fukuboshi. The Crown Prince gazed at the sky. He was the overseer of the imprisonment of the fallen culprits. He marched toward the square to verify bodies. A lot of them were annihilated by the Straw Hat team. After the dust had settled, they could see the lakes of gore made by their combat, bodies charred or eviscerated being hit by missiles and cannons, piles of slaughter flattened by hard alloy from the robot fighter, bodies full of rapid cuts by the skeleton, and worst of all were the victims of the dark-haired woman called Robin, the blonde-haired woman called Sora, and Luffy himself. They were the cruelest in his opinion. Their attacks were aimed to maim, dismember, and debilitate their opponents. Even now he could see human slaves and fishmen pirates alike suffering on the ground, with their bones piercing their own organs. Broken backs made them shriek in not just pain but also the anguish of never being able to move ever again. Loss of limbs made them quiver as they tried to stop their bleeding. Some tried to get up but their legs wouldn't move. Some had internal bleeding, others had caved faces or chests, yet they still lived with deformities due to the wounds. All of these wounds would kill them eventually. Even so, those three made sure to let them live for a few more days, because they knew that these men committed crimes punishable by a capital offense. Why bother having a back or having a limb if you are going to be summarily executed later on? That was, possibly, their reasoning. He couldn't fault them for thinking that way. However, he still disagreed with this method. This was still needless cruelty in his opinion. It would be best if they were given a swift death, instead of suffering while waiting for their head to be chopped off later by his mother, the Queen. However, this was not the time to think about this kind of situation. He picked up the communication transponder snail that connected to all speakerphones in the kingdom. We were too late, right when the age of pirates began. We lost the hearts of the citizens of the Fishman district. They became the breeding ground for the darkest sentiments of our race. Cut off from the rest of the populace, deep in the lawless region, down on the seafloor, a horrifying hatred built up. He spoke with a gentle voice, yet his voice still cracked up with emotion. The needless crime, the kidnappings, the racism against their people, it all concentrated on that lawless district unchecked. There they started hating humans with all their might, and we pretended not to see it. We focused only on outward appearances, and pretended to make progress. He remembered the incident where Ottoheim stopped the fishmen from killing that single human. That word noble. He remembered her words. I know it must be hard for you, but you must hold back your hatred for the humans. Don't pass it on to the children. He looked at the sky as tears fell. We were too late for them. They are what mother and father feared most of all. Everybody paid attention to his cry, to his speech. Even the Straw Hats who were lazing around turned to hear. Well, most of them. Nami and Zoro didn't care much. One was sleeping and the other was just writing in her journal. We should have started by fighting inward. Our father was murdered. Our mother was driven away in shame, all by the hatred of Fishman Island. I suspect both knew that this might eventually happen. Whoever the culprit is, don't let hatred consume you. Those were her words as Ottoheim almost bled out from the gunshot. The last words before she went insane for the murder of her husband. Those words Fukuboshi still followed to this day. Or so he thought until now. Somewhere in my heart, I held that hatred of humans. The sorrow of the dead belongs to the dead. Hatred is an illusion that the living crafted in their mind. They amplify this thing all on their own. We happened to overlook the hatred for humans that was building in the Fishman district, and by the time we noticed it, that hatred was a power beyond our control. XOX. Luffy heard everything as he held onto the ship. He was the last line of defense. As if it wasn't for him, the ship would have already crushed the kingdom below. The bubble was launched in his direction, but it moved slowly and off the path from the ship. Hatred, huh? I cannot accept your words. Little Prince, there are some people in this world that I hate with all my heart. No. The bubble is not going to reach the ship. Damn, what do we do? The guards in the bunker cried. The tank was empty. There wasn't anything left they could do. They failed. Their prince voice still resounded from the speakers all over the kingdom. At this rate, Fishman Island, the Ryugu kingdom, will destroy itself with its hatred of humankind. Please, Straw Hat, we do not need our past. Reduce our past to nothing. Fukuboshi finally yelled, crying his heart out. They did not need their past. The past would only cause more hatred. This was a plea to the young god. Vanquish these ghosts that distance us from the sun. With your hands, reduce Fishman Island to nothing. Luffy heard everything. He reached for his back pocket. He drew a similar transponder snail that connected to the kingdom. It was given to him by the queen before the conflict started. You are the queen's son, right? Luffy's voice resounded in the kingdom. Like a jolt, the Straw Hats stopped playing around. All were listening attentively to their captain's voice. If you say, I'm free to do what I need to do. The Straw Hats jumped off the ship, going around the kingdom, offering their help. There is no need to worry anymore. From the moment we landed in the square, we decided that we would save this kingdom. All of them started helping areas affected. Chopper was vital as he treated various injuries for the citizens. The heavy muscle helped with the areas that were destroyed. There were many people that were hurt in the evacuation. Robin, Zoro, and Brook helped get the bodies off of the plaza to be buried. Sora made emergency meals for those who needed it. Chopper also helped alleviate the pain of the criminals who were still alive. They would regrettably die. However, he couldn't ignore the needless suffering they were in. All of the Straw Hats smiled at Luffy's next words. From the man who will become the future king of all seas. Leave this kingdom in my hands. Luffy made a full-blown smile. The smile wasn't seen by anyone, yet the words conveyed made everyone see it. It was the power that Luffy carried, his unending charisma. XOX. Ottoheim launched him into the deck. And finally, she could transform back her legs into a tail. Everyone here couldn't hear Fukuboshi's voice, nor Luffy's voice. It was just too far away to hear. Even from the speakers, she was floating above the Ark of the Promise. As Hodi, tired of being thrown back, flipped in midair, blocking the momentum of her kick expertly, Hodi landed on the wooden floor, cracking it with his massive naked feet, and crushed the floor of the deck with his fist. He held his hand sunk into the thick wood of the Noah. He grasped the ship to stop the momentum from Ottoheim's cruel kick. He vomited blood as his left lung was reduced to paste by her attack. Blood didn't stop coming out of his orifices. He took the knit sack that contained the rest of his drugs and binge ate them through the crimson liquid, being careful not to choke on his own fluids. It was disgusting, but this was also he wouldn't die. He needed to keep going. His thoughts were jumbled, as his body couldn't hold any longer. His insanity made him crumble mentally. No. I need, kill humans. Trash. Traitors. Humans. Fishmen need killing. Why no kill? Humans bad resetterable evil. Evil. O T O H E. His last words were spoken. Ottoheim just looked at him with her eyes focused, her mouth open showing her teeth. Her posture was harsh. Her body suffered terrible injuries, and yet this was going to be the last strike. However, Ottoheim's plan wasn't to be. Hodi's last mistake of his story was holding the ship for dear life. In that instant, as Ottoheim was going for the final blow, an incredible force was felt. It displaced reality itself from her perspective. The ship was completely thrown away to the side, like a little toy. A force so great to move such a weight in these incredible depths. She couldn't believe her eyes as she stayed in place before being blown back by the whiplash of the waves and currents form. She held an eye open as she viewed that Hodi still held onto the ship, and was consequently moved away with the continental arc. Her daughter was right behind her, also scared out of her mind as the ship moved to the side. Both looked on stunned as the waters settled. XOX. A few moments back, on the bottom of Noah. I will definitely save it. Luffy closed the call and put the snail back into his pocket. He put both hands into the hull of the ship. He was tired of holding the entire thing on his own. He flexed his muscles, crashing the water molecules as his powerful and terrible strength manifested. He sunk his hands into the hardwood, grasping the entire ship. The ship the size of a country itself. Luffy pulled it hard to the side. He then threw the ship aside like one would throw a box in anger. Luffy aimed his throw right at the bubble that veered off the path. The ship broke the water, causing shockwaves and low noises that were felt across the ocean floor. The arc moved, no longer being in course to hit with the island. The ship itself blended with the empty island-sized bubble, veering off course. Luffy focused on the ship and Hodi, who was on it. He put his hands on his back. His palms started heating up as plasma formed in his palm. Utilizing the heat of his lighting, he heated the water with it, rotating it, forming two whirlpools as he propelled forward at unimaginable speeds. It was the best way to use his lightning to make him move 10 kilometers underwater. Luffy moved with two formed typhoons behind him, a few moments before Noah was thrown. As for the rest of the people in the kingdom, they stopped evacuating. True, the news of a colossal vessel falling on your nation might be scary. Still, they stopped running. The princess chose to guide it away. Their queen relinquished everything to guard them. Their prince's speech, and Luffy being viewed as the savior of their people, they chose to stay. Despite the fears, despite their terrors, they chose to believe in the man donning a straw hat, and at that moment they looked up in the sky. The ship moved. The ark, half the size of their country, was thrust to the side. No longer it would fall on top of them. No longer they would have to fear for their lives. The emotions heightened as tears began to drop. "Thank you, Monkey DLUFFY." All of them yelled their gratitude as the kingdom celebrated. They were saved. XOX. Vander opened his black eyes. He crawled in a lower room of the continental ship. He could still move. He wouldn't die so easily. Ottoheim might have thought that she won, but he would never give up. Hodi would also pay dearly for betraying him. How dare the bastard try to fight him when he was so close to killing Shuroshi? He crawled and crawled until he reached two of his special-made axes. Ones that would actually hurt Shuroshi and kill her. He touched them with his right hand, passing all of his malice, bitterness, rage, venom, and hatred, all of his obsession and ambition of his family into those battle axes. The mental drive to kill was strong. The power behind him given by the pill was such that the axes turned into a spotless black, accidentally giving those weapons armament haki, a thing he never used or trained in. It was a product of fate or perhaps coincidence. Vander could only smirk maniacally. She raw ho she he said after regaining what little sanity he had. The power drug clouding his mind gave a bit of breathing room. As the weapons floated because of his power, aimed at the princess, he laughed. It was time to end her life. However, at that moment, he was thrown to the wall, breaking it and exposing him to the sea. Nothing to protect him. He lost his body. He couldn't move very well. Even so, his two armament-coated haki battle axes still were thrown by him, and would reach Shuroshi and kill her. However, he wasn't done. He picked up a dagger, black shine dripping through the metal, coating it with his will. He threw the poisoned dagger. However, this time, he caught it in midair. The throw still held its speed, even while he was being dragged by that piece of metal. The dagger still tracked Shuroshi even if Vander was holding it. The dagger dragged him forward even beneath the sea. He only focused on surviving and controlling his body. He couldn't swim, but he was still a fishman. He could still breathe underwater. This was someone driven to do something even if it kills them. He could not swim. Yet even then, that did not bother him at all. He was single-minded in his pursuit, to kill his beloved. Ryugu Shuroshi. XOX. Luffy-sama. Shuroshi saw everything Luffy did. She saw him propelling towards Noah so he could face Hodi on the deck of the ship. However, the unthinkable happened. Hodi got up again, picked up his red spear with his only leftover arm and charged out of the bubble, screaming and roaring in preparation for battle. Luffy traveled forward, not caring about meeting Hodi in the middle of the sea. "Luffy-sama," Shuroshi cried in desperation. Not seeing Luffy doing anything to dodge the spear, Hodi thought nothing. He couldn't be conscious anymore. He was just a puppet, a marionette, driven by a single resolution, to kill all the traitors of his race and to kill all the humans. They converged in the heart of the sea. Luffy did nothing to block the strike. Hodi, with incredible strength still left in his hulking body, impaled his spear through Luffy's left chest, although the ramming speed wasn't able to drag Luffy with him. In fact, all momentum was stopped as a sea of blood came out of Luffy's wound. His lung and heart burst like a balloon full of water. Deep under the sea, weakened by the water, he couldn't use haki at all. so even if a normal strike wouldn't hurt him on land, here in the depths, a massive blow from an enhanced Hodi that his haki could normally block was different when water enveloped his body, weakening his defenses. Shuroshi and Ottoheim, seeing the man they fell for receiving a fatal blow, made them cry. The most affected was Shuroshi. Why did the world want to take her beloved from her? Why? She did nothing wrong. Why take his life? Why? However, Luffy wasn't dead. A flicker of hope came when Luffy confidently grasped Hodi's only remaining arm with his hand. Luffy gave a smirk. His eyes were burning in excitement. He had his heart shattered. Yet he was still alive, still never near death. The smirk he gave off and the confident stare was perceived by all parties for only a second, before Luffy twisted both him and Hodi and drove both of them to the bubble enveloping the ship. Before passing the bubble, Luffy deactivated the power over exponentials. If he suddenly passed from water to land with the strength to fuse atoms, it would be bad news for the world around him. Both fell into the deck of the ship full of air. All strength Luffy had on land returned in an instant. His haki returned, his powers returned, his normal physical prowess finally came back. He could feel it, because he increased his power over exponentials and its theoretical limit by a lot. His natural body received a large, perpetual boost. Nevertheless, they were trivial compared to the true trait of his natural body. The spear who was still lodged in his chest broke apart. The sharp tongues that were sticking out of his back broke and fell off. The handle itself cracked and with incredible force was ripped off, revealing the hole in his chest that pierced his heart. A part of the metal was still inside as the wounds closed instantaneously. The lungs and heart reformed themselves in a matter of seconds. The gory pieces of his ribs, old heart, and lungs were cannibalized by his natural processes, and his incredible body broke down and metabolized every piece of metal still inside. Yes, it wasn't his incredible physical prowess, nor his speed, nor his height. The true trait of his body was the high-speed regeneration he had. It could be called almost instantaneous, in fact. It was what enabled him to survive eating 2 devil fruits. This regeneration appeared after the War of the Best. He couldn't pinpoint when it appeared, but it definitely appeared before Rayleigh's training. He could see its early traits when he invaded Marineford the second time to give out his message. It's time to finally finish this. Hodi, Jones. Luffy slightly frowned at the hulking monstrosity while pronouncing the name with his deep voice. XOX, right after Luffy threw the ship. Seeing Luffy hurt scared Shuroshi. She wouldn't know what to do if Luffy died. She just got out of her isolation, being hurt for years and years, supporting this unbearable weight on her shoulders. However, a vortex of bubbles made its way to her ears. She turned to look down, where Noah was previously, and 2 pure black axes rotated towards her. She gasped and tried to get out of the way. However, they were too fast and were about to reach her chest when a body blocked Shuroshi's view of both axes. Blood spread through the ocean as Shuroshi's eyes widened. The second stalled as she saw blonde, golden hair being marred by blood. The 2 axes carved their blades and stopped. They carved through the tiny waist of the golden-haired woman, stopping midway, but nonetheless, the damage was done. The woman couldn't block both axes with her trident in time. So instead, the golden-haired beauty used her own body to protect her child. Shuroshi's tears started to fall as the golden-haired mermaid limped. Shuroshi's giant yet soft hands enveloped the smaller golden mermaid as the axes detached from the woman's waist. They sank into the depths of the Black Sea as a cloud of red stained the water around them. Why, mother, Shuroshi screamed as her hands trembled, holding the body of her mother. Why did she protect me? Shuroshi's thoughts came to mind as she held her mother. Again she held her mother. Just like 10 years ago. Again her hands knew the feeling of her mother's blood. Again she had to experience this unbridled despair that clouded her heart. Why? She wasn't worth protecting. Her life. She had done nothing over the course of her life. Her mother was more important than her. Her mother was the queen. She ruled over everybody in Fishman Isle. She was the one who mounted rescue operations, search and destroy missions from slave trades. She negotiated with pirates for their protection. In contrast, Shuroshi just spent all of her days locked up in the tower, doing nothing. Shuroshi. Are you all right? Ottoheim said, coughing blood. Laying limply at her daughter's hands, Shuroshi stared down crying. You're alive. You're alive, the princess said, murmuring low as more tears fell. She started sobbing and crying in earnest, yet Shuroshi controlled herself. She couldn't activate her terrible power, or others would pay the price, and she didn't want that. I'm not going to die from this. However, I can't move. The pain is too much. I'm about to pass out, Ottoheim said. gulping down the blood that accumulated in her mouth. Shuroshi looked down at her hands, finally seeing 2 massive gashes on both sides of her mother's waist. It was so bad that she could see her mother's red, bloody muscles from the cuts. It was a wonder that her organs didn't just spill out. Shuroshi wasn't worth protecting. That's what she told herself. Her mother abandoned her to a life of misery. She ruled over Fishman Isle, ruling with benevolence. Always willing to help, always aiming for peace. Ottoheim just didn't have time for her. She was of no importance when compared to the kingdom. That's what she told herself every night. She was not important compared to the weight of her mother's responsibility, and the misery and loneliness she felt were products of selfishness, so she pushed those feelings down. She gave up on herself, only having a pet for company, and when Mom would visit her every few months, she would be a bundle of joy. However, those visits were brief. Soon Mother, her elder brothers, whoever would visit her would leave, and she would be alone again for months on end, with a guard delivering food as the only outside contact. I am not worth being saved by you. Shuroshi spoke, her words broken by her sobbing. Ottoheim stared at her in shock. She? Rahoshi, what are you talking about? It's not safe up here. Go back to the island, please, Ottoheim said desperately, not understanding what her daughter was saying, all while she held her bleeding torso. The wound was awfully bad. You always try to protect me. When your life is more important than me, you never cared about me because you are the ruler. You need to take care of the people. It's hard, isn't it? Shuroshi asked. There is no need to protect a useless girl like me. Shuroshi made her feelings felt to her mother. It was a product of neglect, a self-sacrificing nature, and the shy disposition of Shuroshi. She rationalized the abandonment in her mind, thinking it was okay because she wasn't important compared to the kingdom, never realizing that the neglect was caused by Ottoheim's own fault. The blame always lied with her. She forgot that her daughter existed for months on end, and even when she visited, her mind didn't realize the reason why her daughter became more and more depressed and antisocial. As the 6-year-old grew into one of the most beautiful women in the world, the 16-year-old was saved by none other than Luffy. In hindsight, it was obvious that Shuroshi would form a close bond with him. It was the first that someone actually cared for her, actually listened to her deep desires of getting out of that horrible tower, that he pushed her forward to be a little better than she was. It wasn't a wonder why she latched onto him so hard and fast. His charm and presence, as well as his physical appearance, certainly contributed, but it was his personality and what he stood for, as well as what he made her do, that pushed the emotion of love to the forefront of her heart. Yet Shuroshi, who rationalized her isolation, couldn't grasp the true reason. It wasn't the kingdom. It wasn't the responsibilities of her rule. It wasn't her other sons that grabbed her attention all the time. The fact that she rarely visited her daughter was because of a small shame hidden within the depths of her heart. Ever since she killed that man, that human who assassinated her husband, she felt shame. Everything she stood for was in shambles at the time. Why should she preach about peace when she murdered a human and took revenge with her own hands, even though the man himself, the criminal, the bastard that murdered her husband, was on death row already? It was a matter of time before they would decide to cut his head off. Yet she went and killed him beforehand, in the most brutal way possible, one that left his cell walls stained with his blood and gore. And even to this day the marks remained. She wasn't the same person anymore after the spear made contact with her husband's back, the poisoned spear that took his life 3 days later. The same spear she now wielded. She changed back there, never to come back from that. She left with no warning, even missing her husband's deathbed, missing his funeral, and losing all memories of those 3 months, only to find herself in North Blue. She tried to come back, yet every time the calm belt blocked her. The Sea Kings were primed to kill. She couldn't fight against those gods of the deep sea. In her time there she killed a lot of people. She surfaced, now with legs instead of a tail. She walked and lived amongst the humans, witnessing many tragedies and becoming one of the most dangerous warriors to ever live, even rivaling her husband when he was at his prime. Now armed and ready she returned. Yet the shame that encompassed her heart was but a small ember now. She returned and implemented a new rule to her kingdom, one that many praised. Development came fast, and everything was going great. Even Jinbei, one of her most prized citizens, she couldn't admit it, because he was still a pirate, brought in protection from an emperor after Whitebeard's death. Big Mom was a name to be feared. She was one of the most powerful women in the world, certainly the most powerful woman that Ottoheim ever met in her lifetime. Instead of taking monetary compensation, A factory was created. The previous artisanal sweets her country produced now were factorized and produced faster, and then imported to Big Mom's territory. Everything was well. Yet her shame blinded her to the hatred stewing in the lawless area of her kingdom. Fishman District. After all, why should she preach about compassion and understanding when she herself went on a blind rage fueled by cold revenge? She couldn't face her daughter for the longest time. After all, Shuroshi was the embodiment of her peaceful ideals. Shuroshi was the purest thing in the ocean. And she, Ottoheim, was stained by murder. There is no way a hypocrite riddled with guilt and shame could ever look in her daughter's eyes again. That's what led to neglect. She felt as if she wasn't a worthy parent to Shuroshi. And that led to her own daughter's depression and trauma building for 10 years, since she was 6, from such a young age. She, Ottoheim, was the biggest failure as a mother to her youngest. And even to the oldest. Both Manboshi and Ruboshi wanted to be warriors, and she respected their dream and even taught them how to fight, so they could be knights of the sea. Yet Fukuboshi, her crown prince, she never respected his dream of being a general like his father. She always pushed the responsibility of him being the next ruler, always grooming him to succeed her, unconsciously denying his own dreams of the future. That he had to succeed her when he reached 25 years old was something she herself invented. She wanted to get out. She didn't want to rule anymore. Because the shame had always been there hidden. She didn't want a hypocrite like her leading her people. So she wanted to push the responsibilities towards her son when he matured enough. Now she saw this as a mistake. She was also completely shaken by the fact that it wasn't the human she killed that assassinated her husband and almost killed her. It was another fishman by the name of Hodi. The man certainly stewed in the hate for humans as he grew on the district. Yet, she, naive Ottoheim, didn't do anything to better the lawless zones, even before the incident that took her husband. Don't say that, Shuroshi. Daughter, look at me, you are more important. I will die 1,000 times before seeing you hurt. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry for abandoning you. But you had no choice. You had a kingdom to rule, you had lots of responsibilities. Instead of trying to stay with a useless girl like me. Don't say that you are not useless and never will be. You are my precious daughter. And I want you to know that I love you so much. Shuroshi. Stop trying to rationalize it, your loneliness, your depression. It's all my fault. I couldn't face you in the eyes until now. I was shameful. I don't deserve to be your mother. A hypocrite like me, Ottoheim said. Her tears never stopped falling from her eyes, mingling with the deep sea. Shuroshi had a shock. Shuroshi fully understood. She understood, now, that her mother abandoned her, not for a grand reason, but for a more selfish one. The deep resentment surprised. Her hands started trembling as rage built up within her, yet her self-sacrificing, benevolent trait pushed it down. She felt silly and guilty to ever think that way. Her mind worked and worked. She finally knew what her mother passed through. She now stared in the baby blue eyes. Identical in nature, she saw all the suffering that her mother passed and all the shame and guilt hidden deep within those eyes. At the same time, Ottoheim saw the resentment, realization, resignation, and guilt. Finally, she saw love. Her heart, still beating, lurched in happiness. It was the same eyes that stared at her before the incident. It was the same innocent, unconditional love that a daughter had for her mother. Ottoheim, in all of her guilt, resolved herself and gazed back at Shuroshi. Finally meeting her eyes again, it took a lot of courage to do so. She smiled and reciprocated the love. Stop, you aren't a hypocrite, mother. You are the most amazing person I've ever met. I've always wanted to be like you ever since I was young. Even though I resented you when you returned from your journey, I admired how you became a warrior. I've always thought how cool you were, rescuing both humans and fishmen from slavery. I've raved about you to Megalo all the time. Both talked, their emotions heightened, one forgiving the other for their mistakes. Oh yeah, what a great reunion we have here. Mother and daughter bonding. Time, Shuroshi gasped and looked as Vander arrived. Aiming his dagger at her, he traveled fast. Her mother in her hands looked shocked that he was still alive. Shuroshi looked into Vander's deep black eyes and felt his bloodlust. Her body shivered, and she started a cold sweat. Her eyes dilated and contracted. She was having a full-blown panic attack. Haha, Shuroshi. Release your mother. The queen will die today. You shall die as well, Shuroshi. Bahoho. Then again, she isn't much of a queen. When I slaughtered all of the Fishman districts, I took a sizable chunk of your citizens, didn't I, Ottoheim? What followed was a brutal description of what he did at the Fishman district. Almost 400,000 dead. All innocent, children and elders dead without discrimination. To tell this to two people looking for peace all their lives. It was too much. Ottoheim cracked. Her weeping voice permeated the ocean floor as Vander laughed. He was completely insane. Shuroshi also couldn't handle the things he discussed. She got withdrawn. What was this person even saying? Why did he want to kill so many innocent people? Was it because of the drug? Or was it his intention all along? Shuroshi wanted to know. Yet at the same time, she was afraid of the answer. Afraid that someone would kill so many, including babies, just for the fun of it. He kept taunting her. Taunting her mother. They couldn't protect their citizen, not one bit. Ottoheim's mind reached peak stress. Coupled with the bleeding made her finally faint. She took too much punishment since she arrived in the plaza. Her emotions overwhelmed her. And she finally closed her eyes, passing out. Her final thought was the regret of leaving her daughter to fend for herself as the monster approached. She only hoped Luffy would come and save her. However, that was too optimistic. Shuroshi had the end of it. This was too much for her frail mind. This man was the sole being responsible for all of her suffering. If he hadn't threatened her life since she was 6, she wouldn't have to grow so isolated, and having him destroy so many lives. When she and her mother, the royal family, worked so hard for peace, made her innocent mind feel rage for perhaps the first time in her young heart. She wanted this person gone, permanently from her life. Yet there was nobody around to help her. She turned to look at the sides, in a plea for help, but nobody would come. Luffy-sama was facing Hodi in the ship. 50 or 60 miles from here. There was no way he could help her. Her brothers were very badly injured from surviving their execution. She was alone. She tried to wake her mother. To no avail, she was here alone, as Vander Deken approached, trying to kill her. The dagger in his hand approached her left breast, trying to pierce her heart. He was not far away. As gasps of a nervous breakdown started to form in her lips. "Die, my beloved Shuroshi," Vander spoke as he got close. Only a few meters until he reached her heart, however, at that moment. His body collided with a tail, a large tail with pink scales. The smile turned into an expression of surprise for a brief nanosecond. And he finally died. The impact was so great that his body became a red blotch. As the remains were thrown to the side at incredible speeds, organs and broken bones, as well as a red mist. That's what was left of him as his remains were launched into the roots of the tree. Shuroshi screamed as she moved her tail. She cried very loudly as her voice was heard throughout the ocean. She attacked Vander. In the spur of the moment, hitting him with her giant tail. The strength and speed of the strike were thousands of times greater than being hit directly by a marine warship. It resplashed the water and imploded the water around her with a temperature close to the sun. Her hands protected her mother. Like sonic booms, shockwaves around the water. It killed Vander immediately and made him turn into a lump of gore. She had reached her limit and had done something so unforgivable. This was the day Shuroshi killed, drenched her soul in blood, her first kill. She cried, protecting her mother. She made the decision to end Vander's life. It was so easy. Why did mother have so much trouble with these people? When a simple sway of her tail was enough to end their lives. She asked herself this. Yet she couldn't find an answer. She did not know this, but she was born to be a weapon that could destroy the world if she wanted. That's why she was born with such strength that dwarfed even the most glorious giant. Why did she have to do it? Because there was nobody else around, and she was sure Vander Deken would try to kill her mother after he killed her, and that she couldn't allow. She wouldn't be able to handle her mother's death. She felt so guilty of actually going through and killing him. She sobbed hard as she saw her mother sleeping, her face troubled. It was for the best. Now she knew that people like Vander Deken and Hodi Jones wouldn't ever listen to reason. They wouldn't give up on their mindset. Shuroshi learned this today. There are people in the world that would never be able to convince. No matter what you do, there are people too set in their ways to ever listen to her. It was a sobering realization, and a grim one. Could she accept herself? When she had killed a person, out of necessity, her mother had done the same thing. Shuroshi also had the flames of revenge guiding her as she killed him. Now she knew exactly what her mother passed through. It made her understand the queen even more. Her young 16-year-old brain tried to process all of this. She needed to think hard about what she wanted to do. And what did she want to accomplish? In life, she wanted peace, world peace. Now how could she achieve it, with the taint of murder upon her soul? Before Shuroshi's heart could stew in more guilt and regret, a hand grabbed her thumb. It was a tiny touch for a giant mermaid as her, being closely and genetically related to sea kings. Yet the touch was warm, even in the deepest sea. Shuroshi looked down and saw her mother touching Shuroshi's fingers. Even in her troubled sleep, it made Shuroshi smile. Her mother didn't hate her. She didn't hate her for choosing to kill Vander Deken. She accepted that decision as to the correct one. Now it was time to seek help. Her mother's wounds weren't life-threatening, but they were still serious. XOX, HRM. I hate you and everything you stand for, Luffy said with grave contempt. Hodi. A monster born from his own environment. A monster born from just words, not actions. He gathered like-minded individuals, spawning hatred upon hatred, living off of the fear of their elders and comrades' hatred being forgotten. Living in fear that their anger at the humans someday might vanish. They live in the hope that their crusade is right and just. That all humans are evil as they portray. He desires blood. He doesn't want peace. That was never his intention for this kingdom. The kind of hatred he bears has no experience nor will. He is empty. There is no substance to him. A monster born of words, not actions. This is so unpalatable it's a joke. You are not the only monster born by words to exist and will probably not be the last. I will remember this well. A weakling bug such as yourself at least taught me something. Hodi picked the remains of the spear. It was still sharp, even with the broken tips. Hodi threw the spear with all of his force. Yet the spear could only bounce off Luffy's skin when it hit. Hodi stared like he couldn't comprehend. Didn't the spear pierce Luffy when they were in the sea? Why wasn't it working now? Don't think for a second that my skin is so soft that you can just use a normal weapon to harm me. You just had the advantage because I was weakened in water. It won't happen again, Luffy spoke. Hodi's heart pumped and palpated. His life was basically at the dead end. He was looking at the precipice. He could only laugh in insanity. The flicker of consciousness only thought back. XOX. Hodi, age 7. Humans are an inferior species. Never forget that, Hodi. Their existence is evil. An old fishman said that to him and his small group of friends. They were very young. He heard all these talks the past year, of people hating on something called humans. What are humans? He thought. He asked, and the old man told him what they were. The man said with the utmost hatred and contempt. Hodi's young mind just grabbed every word and imprinted it into his mind. XOX. Hodi, age 8. With the beginning of the age of pirates, people die every day on Fishman Island. A hurt man said, brandishing his sword in the dark depths of the district. What is this age of pirates? What are pirates? And as usual he was answered. He absorbed the hatred of the man's words again. XOX. Hodi, age 9. The humans have gone mad and abduct young people left and right. Why do they need to abduct? And so he was told about how valuable they were to the human slave market. About how they didn't care for fisherman freedom. What are slaves? Again, he received enough hatred from the man's speeches. Enough to vomit blood. XOX. Hodi, age 9. We are on a crash course with death. Fishman Island is ruined. What is wrong with the royal family accepting pirates freely into the country? What is the royal family? He asked again. They were the supposed protectors of the kingdom. The ones that ruled everything, yet they still allowed everything to happen. XOX. Hodi, age 10. Why did the government let the humans do crimes so freely in their land? Why did they not bar entry? Why did they allow kidnappings to occur? Why did they let others lose their freedom and be sold like cattle to the humans? Those were Hodi's thoughts as he made to 10 years of age. The first embers of hatred burned deep. XOX. Hodi, age 10. He blew up one of the slave ships on the surface. A man, criminal and thief, rejoiced as they joined the central street of the district, near Noah. Yeah, he made the supreme sacrifice to accomplish it. Another praised the man as they erected a huge photo with the deceased hero's face. It was an improvised funeral. However, the size of the photo spoke volumes on this hero. The people around raised their glasses of beer. Cigars were distributed, swords were raised in praise. But he too ate humans with him, the same fishman said to the others. He murdered 8 humans as he attacked the slave shop. To them, it was an accomplishment. This hero was no hero. He was a murderer. And yet he was praised and idolized. It was a bloodbath. There were limbs and guts everywhere. Praise the hero who killed those humans. Never forget his death. Let's celebrate his death. A toast. Cheers, they yelled, raising their mugs of poor beer. Hodi and his friends in an alley heard everything. They just stared at the photo. They were wearing poor clothes and rags, yet they were still in living conditions. They didn't starve. But, so that's a hero. So cool, much, Ikaros said. Heh, eat it, humans, Hodi said with a punk attitude, smiling and crossing his arms. XOX, Hodi, age 11. Arlong just sunk a human pirate ship. Yeah, all of the denizens of the district cheered. Hodi and the others gathered near Arlong. He was sitting in a nearby rock with a knife. He wore a bandana over his forehead with a star pattern together with square patterns as well. He had earrings and had a white tank top, which showed manly muscles that Hodi was inspired by. Arlong pointed his finger at everyone gathered near to hear a story. This is a holy war. Long ago the scum known as mankind feared and envied the superior fishmen who had been granted great natural strength. He pierced the wooden table with his knife with a thud sound to make his point. So their answer was oppression. These human worms, choking on the lands above, used their only advantage over us. Their sheer numbers. They drove us underwater, to the bottom of the sea. Listen close, boys. Hodi was lapping every word. This guy was just the coolest. You must curse the humans. And that was how Hodi met his role model. XOX, Hodi, age 12. Nayu, I've known a human named Rayleigh for years. He's a strange one, never shrunk back in disgust because of me. Hodi was listening to Hatchai's story together with big sister Charlie, who was Arlong's little sister. She was 2 years older than him, he thought. And a few other kids he didn't know, however. He sighed and walked away when Hatchai started praising humans. What was wrong with this octopus being chummy and all with humans? Hodi, Hatchai asked. Seeing Hodi walk away from his story time, Charlie looked at him. I don't like your stories, Hatchai. He glared at Hatchai with absolute disgust. They make me sick. XOX, Hodi, age 13. The humans are terrified of the day of judgment they know is coming. For our moment of vengeance. The teen just smiled, full of unbridled evil running through his thoughts. A dark shadow was cast upon his form. XOX, Hodi, age 15. Don't forget our history. Imagine the anger of our dead brothers. Inherit their fury. A drunken man said at the table during a game of darts. He held a bottle and cried his heart out to Hodi. XOX, Hodi, age 17. Terrible news. Our hero Fisher Tiger, freer of slaves, has been killed by those fuckers. Those damn humans. A man entered the bar. He cried his heart out, revealing the news. What? A man near the table screamed and cried in frustration. Hodi and his group left the bar in a somber mood. So Tiger wasn't our chosen hero, either. Zio lamented a bit. As they wore disguises, they put on masks with a dark uniform. Their group of terrorism was born from their disgust. It was not only them but a bunch of like-minded individuals following Hodi's leadership. They moved to the main island, undercover from the night. Closing in on a house, they knocked on the door. Who are you? Get out of here. The man with a family said. Hodi grabbed the man's throat. PL, please let him go. The wife came rushing in trying to help her husband. However, she was grabbed by them as well. The men invaded their home and dragged the children out. We hear you gave blood to humans, Zio said with contempt. He was dying. I had no choice. However, the husband wasn't given time to talk anymore. A spear thrust in his stomach, impaling him to the house wall. The men went inside and spread flammable gas. Daddy, please, the wife begged Hodi. However, the pleas were not heard. They grabbed the wife and raped her until all of them were satisfied. They threw her body next to the husband and impaled her alive in the wall with another spear. Being impaled and watching his wife being brutally raped until death took a chunk of his mind. The children just cried like little brats. They couldn't escape because they had their tiny feet or tails smashed by the superior force of the terrorist group. So they did the same to them, impaling both children next to their parents, and just put fire to the house. They watched as the house exploded and caught fire. Eventually the fire reached the family and the group just heard their screams of pain until they died being burned to death. XOX, Hodi, age 18. This country is mad, from the king down. It wants to forgive the humans for what they had done to us, Hodi said, wearing the army uniform he was gifted from passing the training. He got a red spear as a weapon. He also found another white spear. However, that was guarded back in his home. Did you hear about Jinbei? He's one of the 7 warlords now. The Arlong crew's the only force trying to keep the proper balance between species, Zio said with hatred. XOX, Hodi, age 22. Hey, the island's in a huge panic. The royal family is critically injured. A man arrived with news on the streets of the district. Who? An old man asked. All paid attention to him. Queen Ottoheim was critically shot, and Neptune was poisoned. They were attacked by a human. The man with the news said as he started releasing his anger and frustration. You see, this is what humans do. Queen Ottoheim and Neptune only wanted peace with them. However, The humans won't even show mercy to kind souls like them. The humans are truly evil, a man said with crossed arms. All of them raised their blades in rage and anger for the humans. If the royal family won't show some pride and strike back, then we can't trust our kingdom any longer. We don't need this worthless country. On a nearby empty bar. Yeah ha ha ha. And now the worthless King Neptune has been taken straight to hell. If you're evil enough to mingle with humans, you deserve death, Hodi said in their corner of the empty bar, cheering on the destruction of the royal family with his friends and comrades. XOX, Hodi, age 30. He presented a bag to his friends. He opened it up. Inside were many pills. Their coloration was red and blue. We must have our vengeance. The time is now, finally. The heavens have chosen us and given us power. All of them were surprised by the pills. They could feel the importance of them for their next ventures. However, the fact that all of them knew exactly what this was gave them a newfound respect for their leader Hodi Jones. He managed to steal it because he worked on the palace as a soldier still. Kaya, what is this? Daruma. The little red shark fishman asked, now wearing a proper pirate outfit instead of the dregs they wore in the past nor the terrorist costume they wore for subterfuge. Is this what I think it is? Much, the legendary drug, much, Picaros asked. Surprised? He exclaimed his question loudly. He now wore a helmet with round earrings. How did you get it, Dawson? Dawson asked. His anger showed in every word he spoke, however. He wasn't angry because of his friends, he was just angry all of the time. Can you manufacture these? Hodi asked Zio. He smirked as he made the question. I'll give it a try. Zio responded with confident caution. Now we can unite the Fishman district against the goddess of the sea, Hodi said. A bit happy that the hopes of his mates were rising, it was time for a new brighter future for all fishmen. By the way, nice design on our symbol Zio. Hodi stared at the wall of their hideout. The symbol that they eventually tattooed on themselves. And on their pirate flag was of a giant flaming circle, representing the inspiration from the Sun Pirates. However, it wasn't filled inside. Instead, there was a stickman figure with its head chopped off to the side, representing a human. A slash across diagonally complemented the racist design against humans in general. They were going to drag all humans to the depths of the sea, towards a place scarier than hell itself. XOX, Hodi, age 32. This is a holy war, the righteous and valorous crusade that will be honored for millennia. Begin the preparations. Preparations to kill humans for as long as you draw breath. That is, Hodi said to his massive gathering of his brethren. They had lived together, grown together. They shared his views. He was right, the queen was wrong. We have been chosen to undertake our righteous vengeance. The day of judgment is at hand. XOX, as the three halos of metal circled his back. Luffy opened his gray, stormy eyes. Enough. I had enough of your face, Luffy said, as he put his palm as if reaching for the sky. Hodi, now a mess of a being, a hulking ugly monstrosity, with a haunting appearance, charged forward. Nothing else came from Hodi's lips. His sanity had reached an end. On Luffy's palm, countless discharges of lighting started conglomerating, spinning, being formed in a flash, then disappearing. It was a presentation of lights. Unlike anything ever witnessed, the countless discharges of lightning in his palm was also loud. So loud it was deafening. I hope you pay attention to this. Humans and fishmen alike, they can try all they like, they can try to reach it, but instead they get burned badly, Luffy said as the lighting started to spiral, forming plasma, as it broke like a yolk liquid-like substance and started raining down on the floor, melting and burning the wooden planks, the bubble around them. The bubble the size of an island started to wobble as the inside started blazing. You are too hasty to reach the sun, Hodi. Engrave this sight as your final memory. The plasma in his hand broke and broke until a blinding light illuminated them. The heat exploded parts of the deck where they were sending torches of splinters, burning stakes of wood everywhere. One even pierced Hodi's stomach. The plasma formed a sphere in Luffy's hand. So radiant it illuminated all of the ocean floor. The ball was the size of a marble. The temperature was too incomprehensible, reaching 15 million Celsius. The small sphere was as hot as the core of the sun. It wouldn't be wrong to call this a small star. It was as if Luffy picked a piece of the sun and brought it to the planet. Now it sat on his palm, yet it didn't burn him. In fact, he wasn't even sweating. Hodi ignored everything and charged forth into the blinding light. Not afraid of getting burned, it stroked to Luffy as very symbolic. To have an overwhelming drive to even face your final end. without having any look into the consequences. Even though he was just a weakling being temporarily boosted and kept alive by an enhancing drug, the fact that even through the light, Luffy could tell that Hodi was smiling made Luffy give out a bit of respect. Hodi, you are truly something else. I thought you were just a weakling, but you gave me a tiny surprise until the end. That respect wasn't overshadowed by the hatred of what Hodi represented and wanted to achieve. But Luffy could at least let this small bit of respect leak just a tiny bit in the fishman's final moments. Luffy winded up and closed his palm, blocking out the tiny sun on his hand. Yet it made his fist around glow as a bubble was formed around his fist. As a stopgap of heat, 15 million degrees was too much. He couldn't let the tiny sun explode. It might destroy a good chunk of the sea. So this would have to do. An outer layer of heat to end this fight. If it was going to explode, it would kill everything around. So it was best if the attack was severely reduced in its potency. And he could erase the tiny sun afterward, glaring at Hodi. He released the Killer Conqueror's Haki. It constituted as an attack. So it made sense that his powers over exponentials would affect Hodi as well. This time the power over exponentials made a cruel rule. They heightened Hodi's mental and sensorial perceptions by the power of 2000, making him see and feel things faster than light. To Hodi, time was stopped. He couldn't move, yet for Luffy, time continued normally. Hodi felt the pain of his wounds, trillions, quadrillions, sextillions of times worse, and more slowly than before. This was the absolute punishment. There was nothing that Hodi could do anymore. From his perspective, Luffy hadn't moved at all, or rather, no light had reached his retina as his brain processed things faster than light could. His eyes picked things faster and faster. His sense of touch was too much for him to bear, and would cause him to die of shock, but he was suspended in time. Unable to die, on the other hand, from Luffy's perspective, Luffy charged forward, bringing the sun with his closed fist ready to punch Hodi out of existence. The superheat made the ocean floor look like daytime, blinding everything around it for thousands of miles. Luffy's muscles tensed all around, showing the ripped form that he achieved, and the smile on his face was full of bloodlust. This is your end. Goodbye, Hodi. At that moment Luffy felt, with his observation, that Shuroshi had extinguished Deken's life. On her own, Luffy was a bit worried. Omni series. White Dwarf, Luffy excited, laughing as he swung his fist down near Hodi, making 80% of his body immediately vaporize. The rest was carbonized and fell off the ship. Yet the attack didn't end. The bubble around couldn't handle the heat. As it wobbled, because of the change in pressure, the wooden floor evaporated, leaving a hole too big to be fixed. Luffy looked down, and he could see hundreds of floors with hedges blacked by the burning, scorching heat. The bubble finally popped as water started to rush in. The heat was dissipated by the pressurized water rushing in, making contact with his body. The little sun still clenched in his fist was revealed, and Luffy took a bite out of it, consuming its own energy. Soon the sun was completely eaten by him, and was absorbed back with the help of his fruit of God. Well, he was Indra, the king of heaven, so he could control heavenly bodies as well, such as the sun and other stars. It wasn't weird that he could produce such attacks. This attack was in homage to his brother, a sun that would never extinguish. A white dwarf, continuously illuminating his path forward until the end of the universe. The strongest attack in the Omni series. There were 3 distinctions between his lightning attacks. Assault series was full of discharges of common and complex lightning attacks. Omni series utilized lightning to create superheated plasma, one not seen in normal life, and then utilizing plasma as an attack. And there was a rank above, the Singularity series. Well, those attacks were too dangerous. They were just too lethal, too world-ending. It wasn't even a joke. Then the Fruit of God also boasted of 2 transformations. They were the avatar form, when the spirit of Indra would descend onto his mortal body, creating an avatar state, and the full transformation into a god in astral form. These 2 transformations gave him a boost in everything, especially in his lightning abilities, turning his normal stormy blue lighting into more dangerous discharges. But until now he had no reason to use them at all. He looked back as water crashed on his shoulders as the bubble ripped apart, cooling his fist. He looked at the 3 halo-like structures circling behind him. They were the bracelets that the Kyuja gave him, seals to his power, made from concentrated sea stone. It was almost metallic in appearance and had the color of silver. They were circling on his back by the power of his electromagnetism affecting them. The halo made a lot of sense, since he was, in fact, a god, after he ate the red blood apple fruit on the ruins underneath the calm belt. Soon the electromagnetism strengthened, and the pieces joined together like a jigsaw puzzle. And they bound again to his muscular biceps, being held together by the red rubies in the middle. Luffy smiled. The conflict was over. Now he had to deal with the consequences. And of course, the celebrations, nothing like a good feast after a battle. His smile turned into a smirk. Now should he let the ship fall onto the sandy seafloor or should he try to move it? He wondered. This thing seemed important and he felt bad for making a huge hole on the deck. It would be a hassle to fix it. Well, as a passing gesture he put a hand on the wood and activated his powers over exponentials, boosting the durability of the ship permanently. The ship could still sail if they wanted to. Shuroshi stared at her beloved darling from a distance. As the ship fell, no longer having the protections from the bubble, but it was already off course, so it wouldn't fall again on Fishman Isle. And the screams that she made when she killed Vander attracted the Sea Kings. Obedient to her, they came to drag the ark where it could belong. Shuroshi was surprised that they communicated with her as she traveled faster towards the ship. Luffy-sama must have no way of returning home. And being flooded by pressurized water, the levels of 10 kilometers deep must take a terrible toll on his body. She worried about him. And she worried of what he might say. She killed someone. Would Luffy-sama still accept her? Would her mother still accept her? She earlier scoffed at the idea of killing right in her mother's face. She hoped that they would forgive her hypocrisy. She lead her subjects. The Sea Kings behind her as they reached the ark. She saw Luffy sinking. As he looked a bit thoughtful, she was surprised by the fact that he could survive so much time here without breathing. She remembered that humans couldn't breathe underwater from her mother's tales. Luffy-sama, are you all right? Luffy tried to speak but only formed bubbles. He fished the tiny coral that he had and made a bubble on his head. The water was nice and cool. He wished to experience a moment of weakness here before they returned. Ooh, Hoshi-chan. You are here. Is Vander dead? Yes, Vander Deken-san is dead. Suddenly she blushed. He called her that nickname again. She was so happy she could die, and she gazed at Luffy's muscular body. There was pearly red blood staining his left pec. He was hit there, yet there wasn't a wound there anymore. It had healed so fast. He was so dreamy that even his blood was so pretty to look at. She started huffing as she stared at him with a bit of an obsessive gaze. Her mouth was open as she stared at his face, at his eyes, at his scar on his chest, at the scar underneath his eye, at his long and muscular legs, and thick thighs that could probably crush a man with a kick. She couldn't help it. After the danger had passed and the fact that he saved her, as well as the kingdom, the hero worship started to bloom instantly in the depths of her mind. Luffy was looking at the Sea Kings passing them to grab the chains of the ship. He never seen them act so organized. Even those he hunted, they didn't actually protect their young whales and dolphins did. They were very strange animals that could grow indefinitely like a lobster. Some even reached hundreds of kilometers. They were the most dangerous things in the sea. These ones were pretty big as well, each the size or even surpassing the size of Noah itself. It was best that he'd let them go their way. He wasn't in the best position to hunt one of them for breakfast. And they were in their natural habitat. My, what a human we've encountered here. A voice reached both their ears. Luffy grabbed his head as if an annoying headache appeared. What? Who's talking? Luffy said as he was put on Shuroshi's hand, next to Ottoheim as he put a hand on her shoulder to support as she was badly injured. He looked around. There was only Shuroshi and a bunch of Sea Kings dragging the ship away. As for Shuroshi, her obsessive streak wasn't over. Having Luffy sitting on her hand was almost too enticing. Her hand was sensitive, so she felt his entire body, and she was afraid to say it, but she enjoyed feeling Luffy's muscular butt. She felt so perverted for thinking that way, but she couldn't help it. It was just so toned and muscular, and she needed to stop that line of thinking. What a mighty little man. I am glad that he held back on his incredible attack. That little bring orb could have destroyed not only the ship but the whole sea for thousands of kilometers. He could also have destroyed the ecosystem, but to create the sun, even if it was smaller than a pearl, and illuminate the sea floor with it. What a feat of power, never before seen. Well, we are glad that the ship is safe. Though it received a bit of damage, it was a very good thing that Princess Shuroshi called for us. What? But I didn't do anything but cry and scream, Shuroshi said, completely understanding their weird speech. Returning back to normal, her voice became shockwaves, transmitted calmly over the sea. She now knew what it took to interact with them, Luffy on her hands looked at them and sighed. So the ones talking are the Sea Kings. So Shuroshi can talk to them. Well, I doubt I can speak to them, but I can at least hear them or their garbled speech. This is weird. I can see it in your eyes. Your cry for help was guided by the will of both your mother and the mighty little human. Their strength now became yours, and their will shall guide you into your fate. Haha. Just as the little man and your mother tried to save your kingdom, you too wanted to be of use to them. In your heart, you wished to be a source of strength for him. The little mighty man, our power is also your power. As the Queen of the Sea Kings, we will be yours to command in the future. You now understand very well how to use it, don't you now? Shuroshi kept silent as they moved away, disappearing to the deep sea. Hey, Hoshi-chan, let's go back. Ottoheim is still injured and losing a lot of blood, Luffy said. A bit worried for Ottoheim's health. He knew she was strong and tough. But still, it would be best if Chopper were to treat her. Yes, Luffy-sama, Shuroshi said, as she beat her tail and she carried both of them in her giant, but caring hands. XOX, as the Sea Kings carried away the Ark. A conversation struck, so she was finally born. Our queen, the one with the power to destroy the world. Yeah, was it my imagination? What? That human with the hat seemed to hear our voices. That can't be. But that did happen once before. Rayleigh. Did you hear that voice? With a cape billowing behind him. They survived the unbearable cold of these depths. The problem was the mate darkness covering the outside. He walked towards the rail of the ship. He was a man reaching 9 feet tall, with a very stylish mustache if he said so himself. Hear what? It's dead silent down here in these depths. Are you okay, Captain? Rayleigh said, facing the man who would become the Pirate King. Goldie Roger. Who's talking out there? Come out. Roger's voice boomed on the depths of the ocean, but no sound was to return. XOX. The Straw Hats aided the kingdom as best they could. And finally they could leave the rest to the army and the social workers and volunteers. Now they remained on the ship. As Sora finished with the dessert, Zoro was already napping again. Nami and the rest took to playing gambling games again, as Brooke played a joyful guitar. Robin was petting Chopper on her lap. As a point in the sky was made apparent, people pointed at it and soon enough it was Shuroshi. A few tears still rolling down her cheeks. Please, please. A doctor, please save my mother. She won't stop bleeding. Please, please, Shuroshi cried, showing Luffy and Ottoheim, failed and bleeding pretty heavy. Luffy was the only one managing to stabilize the Queen's condition, however, even if he was taught first aid and some pretty advanced stuff. He only used it on himself and he was an amateur with no experience with these medical skills. It was just a piss-poor stopgap and he knew it. The only thing keeping Ottoheim alive was her vitality. Her body just wouldn't die, and if he was seeing correctly she would survive this without treatment, but still this would take too long to heal without medical help. Her vitality was so strong that he would be surprised if she could just walk and swim with these wounds. If she wasn't knocked out from the initial pain and the shock from this stress-filled day. Chopper. Bring out the operating tools, we'll need it. Luffy on top called for Chopper to help. They landed on the plaza and Luffy carried Ottoheim over, scaring the population and putting fear in Fukuboshi's mind. It wasn't fear of Luffy. It was the anxiety of seeing their queen and mother so damaged by those monsters. They knew it wasn't Luffy's fault, the hatred of humans being left behind by the people watching. Chopper immediately armed a makeshift operating room in the middle of the open plaza. It would have to do. Putting her in the makeshift table, he helped Chopper with the anticoagulant. Luffy, we need blood. She's a rare S type, Chop said, however. Luffy was giving his all with sewing shut the wound and reconnecting the organs together with Chopper. He couldn't let Chopper do the surgery alone. And him being the second most knowledgeable person about biology and medicine, he had to help. Damn, that's 1 in 100 million. Sora raged about the rarity of this special blood type. Anyone have an S blood? Chopper yelled loudly for all the kingdom to hear. However, the people looked down and despair set in. Nobody had that type of blood. They looked at one another, not finding any hope. Fukuboshi and the other princes started having panic attacks. Jinbei looked down. He wanted to help so badly, but he had an F type. See. Can't my blood be used? I have SSS type. Will it work? It is red like hers, won't it do? Shuroshi said, crying a bit. Yo, you, how were you even born? Chopper said, murmuring, however. Then he raised his voice. No, SSS type and S are extremely incompatible. They are almost poisonous to one another. But the thought counts. Just stay there. Chopper affirmed her. Chopper. Use mine, Luffy said, finishing the hard part. B. But Luffy, you are type F. Would you believe me, it changed when I got surgery 2 years back. It's now S-type, Luffy said, walking and cleaning his arms. B. But changing blood types, isn't that close to impossible? D. Did he have a bone marrow replaced or something? Chopper reasoned. W. Wait. The act of giving blood between is prohibited by the kingdom. It is a law that was passed down by humans who did not want to soil their blood with fishman blood. Straw Hat. It is a crime. Fukuboshi hesitated in his speech. It wasn't as if he was denying Luffy's generosity. The Crown Prince's warnings were just so that Luffy wouldn't be considered a criminal. It wouldn't do for the one that saved them for this crisis to commit a big crime and not know about it. Fukuboshi's kindness was bigger than the immediate drive to save his mother. He couldn't let Luffy do this without knowing the repercussions. Although looking at the kingdom's citizens, nobody seemed to give a crap about this law anymore. It was a dirty, hateful law in their minds. Nobody would want to enforce it. They just wanted their queen to be saved. Fukuboshi knew it. But he still had to tell Luffy before he could make the decision. Luffy glanced at the prince and grinned. Pirates don't obey the law. Luffy eyed him confidently, while giving the Crown Prince a happy and a bit of a challenging smile. To the rest of the kingdom there was a big, unknown chemistry between the two. Merman, Crown Prince, and the captain of the Straw Hats, to everyone around. There were some seeds blooming of deep friendship between the two, which was weird since this was the first time meeting. But Straw Hat, you, the minister of the left, called him, in a last-ditch effort to safeguard Luffy's status as a clean, spotless person in their country. Let him, minister. There is nothing wrong with what he needs to do. Fukuboshi smiled solemnly. Happiness welled inside of him as he saw the human trying to save their queen with a grin on his face. The old laws are a curse on their own. I'm sure that my mother will remove those laws in the drop of a hat. Let him be, Fukuboshi said. A few tears escaped him. To think the day would come where a human would willingly give his blood to a mermaid. The history was not kind. Humans often rejected fishman blood, even while being treated in the kingdom's various hospitals. It was so bad that people died of blood loss without clear donations, and even fishmen didn't want human blood if the rumors about Fisher Tiger were true. And for what was spoken by the Straw Hat crew with him while they helped the kingdom, Fisher Tiger couldn't accept human blood in his last moments. Luffy walked up near Chopper. Do you believe me? Do you believe that my blood type has changed? Luffy looked at Chopper intently. His words were spoken with such a charming voice that even the people next to them couldn't help but nod, even though they weren't the medic specialist. This was the charisma that a person like Luffy had. It was almost close to mind control. You couldn't help but agree to his words, even if they were inherently wrong. Chopper mumbled and nodded. A bit bashful, Luffy gave a little scratch under Chopper's cheeks before he sat next to Ottoheim. His massive and muscular legs sat in a lotus position. It was the first time Chopper took a look at how massive Luffy really was. His legs were long and thick with rippling muscles. His torso was also tall. His muscles were lean, not too bulky, but he had a massive abdomen, chest, shoulders, and back in comparison to the men in the crew, which was well fitted for his massive size, almost reaching 7 feet tall. Even sitting down, Luffy's chest reached more height than the operating table. It was that jarring and foreign feeling that passed through Chopper at seeing how different his captain really looked. And then Luffy flexed his arm to promote blood flow. Chopper then went to work, done admiring the slaughtering machine that was Luffy's post-adolescent body. If he remembered correctly, Luffy killed somebody by just running his massive frame towards them in the fight while being distracted by the new tank weapon Frankie unveiled. It was absolutely insane. How could that happen? To kill someone just by walking into them. It was almost worse than being run over by a full-speed water train. Luffy picked the needle for the blood extraction, sterilized. He tried to pierce his skin, but before he could reach the arm, he stopped and thought that even this sharp metal would be able to actually make a hole in his body. It wouldn't be able to pierce the skin. So he applied a coating of armament, making the previous platinum color turn shiny black. And he stabbed in the correct spot, with his armament on the needle. It was possible to hurt his incredibly tough skin. He sighed in relief. Only because finding another blood type equal to hers here would be a hassle and most likely impossible. He looked to the sky, seeing the light rays transmitted through the roots of the tree. The mangrove Eve, extracting the blood from his captain. Chopper continued the rest of the operation. As the suspense stilled in the population, finally Chopper linked both tubes. The light seemed to momentarily blind the people. As their vision returned to normal, all they saw was crimson. brilliant red, filling the empty tubes, as man and mermaid were connected by the blood at last, and the red blood continued to flow. Slowly and slowly, the lives here witnessed the moment. As the emotions spelled high, their tears fell as their hearts tightened. Their hearts hurt to see the act of kindness that Luffy gave them. Yet despite the hurt, nothing could give them more elation. A person who could have easily destroyed them willingly gave his lifeblood towards the most adored woman in the deep sea. The kind-hearted Ottoheim who lived her life, full of heartbreak, full of disappointments and dead ends towards her dream of peace. Those that watched here today finally understood. The 5 million citizens finally understood what Ottoheim, the brave mermaid warrior, wanted. Her hardships, her achievements, her joys, her sorrows, everything was transmitted through the tube of red blood that joined their queen and their savior. Luffy looked up, amidst the cheering for his name. As Jinbei sat down beside him as friends, his crew joined him as Chopper worked fiercely. Truly, Chopper was a medic to be awed by. He couldn't compete with the level of diligence and knowledge that Chopper had, nor he could ever reach the tremendous amount of empathy that went into his work and patience. Truly, he had great comrades who could do things he could never do. He affirmed himself that there is no way that he could ever reach his dream without each and every one of them here with him. And he then affirmed his other dream, his dream of protecting his comrades' dreams. It was the only way he could reciprocate their support. He would do anything for that matter alone. As he looked to the side, he saw the one he wanted to have adventures with. He looked forward again and closed his eyes serenely. "Hey, Jinbei, come and join my crew," Luffy said. His eyes were closed, a small smile on his face. Jinbei widened his eyes in shock. An explosion of feelings overcame him. He didn't know how to feel from this monumental invitation. He was about to respond when Luffy, Ottoheim, twitched. She started waking up. Soon her eyes opened, and those baby blue eyes which glittered with the hopes of their kingdom opened. Seeing the queen awakened and not in critical condition made everyone cheer for her name. Finally, their queen was awake. It was the same feeling when she returned from Marigio eyes and when she returned from North Blue. Ottoheim turned her eyes to meet Luffy's stormy gray eyes as they opened. "When I saw all that light enveloping the sea, I thought you didn't like us and wanted to erase everything. Well, from your perspective, that attack is pretty jarring to witness. Of course, there is no real way to witness it since you'll be temporarily blinded by the intense light," Luffy said, smirking a bit. "Don't you have less flashy attacks?" Ottoheim said, smiling serenely. Of course not. After all, lightning is nothing but flashy," Luffy joked, and she gave all of them a full-blown grin. The same she gave them as they arrived on the island, the same goofy and happy expression. Luffy thought that this was her true happy face, one before all of the tragedies that befell her life. It was a truly beautiful smile. "Ottoheim, your dream is a road that leads toward the sun," Luffy said, in a loud and pleasant voice for everyone to hear. "You may not want to hear a poor advice from a 19-year-old, but," Luffy smiling goofily, making everyone else around him ease, like an expert politician would do. He then turned into a serene, with wisdom in his eyes. Ottoheim was quickly enraptured. "Never hurry, you are on the correct path." Luffy combed her hair, her wavy and frizzy blonde hair, with his fingers. "If you hurry, if you go too fast towards your dream, towards the road to the sun, you may find that the sun itself has burned and singed that road. It may even burn you as well. Just like my cruel sun burned Hodi Jones' dream," Luffy said, expertly putting everyone's hopes down, and also putting morbid thoughts in everyone. It was the shrewd mind and sheer manipulative talent that he inherited from his mother. It was in his blood. And it was why he was such a prodigy in the political arena, like Rayleigh told him. He just never used it because he doesn't really care about the consequences of his own actions. However, he cared about Ottoheim's actions, and the consequences to her actions. He couldn't help but care. She was just too lovable, too precious to let herself get burned and not know where she did wrong. It doesn't hurt to walk in that road at a slower pace. It doesn't hurt to take breaks. It doesn't hurt to look back and drag those that are walking tiredly behind you and give aid to them. It doesn't hurt to look to the sides and invite other pilgrims. You are not alone in your dream, remember this. Luffy spoke in difficult metaphors. Yet the meaning was not lost to Ottoheim. She understood what he conveyed perfectly. There was no need to rush headlong into her dream. If she did, she would only get burned. Looking around, she found a lot of faces staring her, full of hope and support. She smiled. It would be meaningless if she was the one running while they could barely follow behind her in her dream. They would eventually get tired, and it was her duty to support them and take breaks in the long road. She could not just go headlong, expecting everyone to naturally follow her. Everyone had a different pace. She would also need more comrades, not just down here, but above the sea. If she could get strong support, then her kingdom would have a louder voice above, where the sun rays touched their skin. After thinking about what Luffy said, she smiled at him, not hiding her blush. That was a great advice, Luffy. Baby steps, huh? Ottoheim said. As the clouds passed and the sun was setting, the surgery continued unimpeded. As Ottoheim stared at Shuroshi and both were lovingly talking to one another, it seemed that they made up, which made Luffy smile. The wounds of neglect would heal with time. It was his sincere hope that they did. Luffy closed his eyes to take a nap while sitting in a lotus position. It wasn't because he was tired of the battle or anything. The monkey family just loved to sleep. There was nothing to it. Soon a snort bubble formed as he dozed off to the joking frustration of his friends. The dust had settled. As Luffy took the nap he so needed, Chopper was finishing the surgery. Next would be the antibiotics treatment. The Straw Hats all worked to help the kingdom, providing aid and food to the people, as well as Zoro and the others clearing out the rubble. Seeing Zoro chop down giant pieces of stone and coral into tiny pieces was impressive to look at. He had a small gathering of construction workers, picking up the pieces as he advanced like a machine. Robin worked with the princes and the army to apply sedatives to the captured criminals. Creating hands with the medication in hand made the process very fast. They were in the flying ships as they were hauled to the palace's dungeons. The citizens then went to their normal life, settling back and letting the adrenaline high wear off. As Ottoheim and Shuroshi looked at each other, they knew in their hearts that they needed to resolve the situation on the Fishman district, and Ottoheim needed to, unfortunately, execute all those that went against the crown today. It was the unfortunate law of the country. But to execute more than 300,000 criminals on her own, it was a cruel and grim fate, one that she had to follow. She grit her teeth in pure cringe. XOX. Hey, what is troubling you, Ottoheim-chan? Luffy gave a look of apparent worry, only denoted by the seriousness in his eyes. She couldn't have known. He was an expert at hiding things from her. After all, her color of observation didn't pick up on anything other than an endless sea of blackness. It's just sigh. She looked at him with a bit of sadness leaking through, and a bit of worry. Having said that, she focused again on Luffy and smiled sadly. Hodi Jones was one thing. A very bad news, however. Vander Deken, the monster that was obsessed with my daughter, the queen's eyes widened in pure and absolute terror and sadness as she spoke the next words. He said he killed everyone back in the Fishman district. She choked on her own words, disbelieving herself. The district doesn't only house criminals, Luffy. It also harbors veterans and old folk, as well as dozens of orphanages down there from the unwanted. It's how the district was formed in the first place. Ottoheim couldn't bear it anymore and just hugged Luffy with all her might, as Luffy tried to do his best to console her. Don't worry, I'm sure he couldn't have killed everybody. To kill an entire city, even I would have problems killing everyone. I'm sure a lot of them survived. Listen, we'll drop you in the palace, as well as the others, and I'll mount a team with Jinbei, Chopper, Zoro, and Brook, as well as a few soldiers, and we'll go down there to find survivors. Luffy gave an optimistic smile. It was a true one. In fact, Ottoheim had to wonder how mysterious and unpredictable Luffy actually was. A killing machine in one moment and an optimistic hero in another moment. It was truly hard to grasp what Luffy's true nature was, or if he was just a chameleon. Luffy, I need to go, Ottoheim said, putting her hands on the deck of the Sunny, as her tail swished around, like a kicked puppy. Looking down, he gave a stare that told her to stay in the palace to rest. Her wounds, while healing steadfast, still needed proper care. Ottoheim looked at him, a bit frightened, like a girl who had just been scolded by her dad. What was she? Why did this man have so much control over her actions? Why was she so submissive towards him? She summoned all of her existing courage and shook her head. No, Luffy, I need to go. I need to see this through. Please, take me with you. Ottoheim, like a little girl trying to disarm her dad, tried to put her happiest charming face. However, the pure tears and terror running through her eyes made it a bit sad to watch. Luffy had doubts whether or not she was ready to see what would be down there. Luffy's lips curled down. A bit angry his order was denied. Luffy grabbed her cheek in a claw grip, putting his hands on her soft lips. It was a frightening position to be in. Luffy's eyes held a threatening, dangerous, and wild look. His fingers played with her cheeks and chin, as well as her lips. His fingers entered her mouth and started playing around, while his stormy eyes held a cruel laughter behind them. A small sadistic smile made its way into his face. Ottoheim felt hot. She shivered in excitement as she was turned on by being in this position. Her eyes, which previously held terror, now held something else. Unbearable lust. His dominant presence made her instantly wet. His fingers playing with her face like they owned them made her twinge. Again she was reminded that she was probably a masochist for enjoying this. Her body automatically licked his fingers, which were playing with her tongue. She started sucking on them as her eyes were glazed with lust. To her, those fingers tasted better than any food she ever tasted. Soon, however, he pressed both hands on her cheeks and he got close. His eyes were but a few centimeters from her own. His intimidating, conquering gray eyes stared right into her soul. She felt like a helpless little girl, being looked at with magnifying glasses, her every thought being exposed. She felt completely naked under those eyes. The frightening part is that she didn't care. She actually loved this feeling. "I will take you," he said, smiling, however. His face got serious again, but prepared to be punished. "No one disobeys my orders," Luffy said, staring at her baby blue eyes. With his own hard, demanding and conquering ones, she nodded like a little child. Once again she was reminded of who this man was. He was one of the strongest people she ever met. His charisma was through the roof, and he was wild and unpredictable. One moment he was humble, the other he was more demanding than a celestial dragon. However, his authority wasn't hateful and dislikable like those of the celestial dragon. His power and authority was like an addicting honey, sweet and vicious. It would make you completely dependent and happy to be of service to him. This was the power of his charm. Even when disobeying his commands made people accept his punishments like they were the most natural thing in the world. It was a weird and honestly disconcerting feeling. However, that feeling was felt in only a small part of her mind, and that small part was dying faster and faster. She was falling faster and faster into his honey trap, as well as the rest of her kingdom. It wouldn't surprise her if worshippers started using him as the idol of their faith. It was that bad of a feeling. The fact that he was a literal god might help that part even further if she were honest. XOX. The next few hours passed numbly for Luffy, gathering a small team of hardened soldiers, as well as some old souls on his crew with him who could handle tragedy if it hit them in the face. He ventured into the district. His main worries were Ottoheim, who was with them, and Chopper, who was the doctor accompanying them. He was there for simple reasons. If there were survivors, he would treat them. If there weren't, Luffy would be worried about Chopper's mental state afterward. Luffy looked at the land, deep beneath the sea, covered in darkness, only lighted by streetlights and other things. It wasn't a total matte black. However, it received less light than Fishman Isle. However, it still received some light from the tree. It wasn't enough, and it only made the district look like a permanent night zone. At least he left most of his crew along with the princess at the palace. This wasn't something they were ready to see yet. Not this, a killing floor of innocent people, of children and babies, of caring old people and more. It would be too much for them. He couldn't risk it. Luffy released a sigh, denoting his worried heart as they approached the town. This wouldn't be a fun experience for him. The Queen, Zoro, Jinbei, Brook, and Chopper who came with him, and the hardened soldiers. In fact, he believed this experience would be vomit-inducing for most of them. It was with a bit of a heavy heart that Luffy approached the killing ground, hoping that his observation picked signs of survivors. Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.